He snapped his eyes open and the world slammed into him as if he'd woken up inside a kid's body, cooing out little cute sounds of his own, and the moment it hit, he realized, great, I've been reborn again. First, he demanded they wait for him. Then he decided that in this world, he'd become Lex, a kid raised in a totally ordinary rural family. People probably stared in shock like, how can a kid talk with that arrogant voice? Because he's not just a kid at all. He's been reincarnated, reborn into a whole new life. Lex was the hero back in his old world. He carved through enemies and demons alike with the deadliest sword around, and when death tried to end him, he refused to stay down, getting reborn with the same immortal fate that's happening all over again now. Why would he say it again? Reborn for the second time like fate just hit rewind? Back in his first life, he'd been a sage who could pull off any kind of magic, so when people started calling him a sage, he's still baffled like, why me? Even when people showered him with praise for being a sage and a hero, he still carried a mountain of problems on his back. So yeah, now he's finally going to live a quiet, normal life in this world, and all those legendary titles he once wore, like sage and hero, are completely gone. It's fine this all happened, sure, but it won't haunt him, and he'll still get to live, to breathe, to enjoy his life. That's exactly why people call it a symbol of freedom. And from here on out, he'll live low-key and carve his name as an adventurer. 15 years later, the main character popped back as a teen adorable, smiling wide, and he kept a sword on his side at all times. In this world, once you turn 15, everyone treats you like an adult, and the kids don't linger with their parents. They bolt out to find work. The main character sat down with his parents and declared he'd become an adventurer, and to his surprise, they didn't argue. Dad said his name and made it clear this life was his, to choose whatever he wanted, while Mom urged him to look after himself, promising that no matter what went wrong, they'd always be relieved to still have him right here. The main character's face burned with embarrassment over what he blurted out, but then he grinned like he'd won, and tightening both fists declared he was out of here. His family yelled that he was the best Paco and to stay sharp, but their smiles stayed warm the whole time. Lex spun around, waved, thanked them, and then said he was out of here. Believing his old life was finally over, the main character clenched his right fist, lifted it high, and declared, it's time I'm becoming an adventurer. As he pushed deeper into the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that even the nearest town 2 guys away was way too far, and he figured it would take him about half a day to reach it on foot. He spent the whole morning at the coming-of-age ceremony, panicking because he feels like he's running behind and he can't wait to finish registering as an adventurer, ASAP. Right then, he raised his leg and, with urgency burning in his words, chose to cast magic on his leg so he could surge forward even faster. Then he launched into the air, convinced he could soar free of any limits, and shot higher and higher until the sky swallowed him whole. Then he whipped his head around, trying to figure out where to fly next, and boom, he spotted the city with his own eyes. Right then, the main character snapped to the idea of using teleportation magic, then something weirdly threw him off. He suddenly got this wild idea to go hunting, because adventurers don't just travel, they hunt monsters. Then, from above, he spotted a dragon blazing across the sky, and sure enough, it was just a plain green one. But if he wanted to live in peace, chasing that was the best move. He grabbed the sword and the know-how from his past life, a blade packed with a massive dose of eternal magic so that Green Dragon was basically walking into an easy win. The main character snapped his sword up in one decisive move, and a grin lit his face. Then he declared he needed to end this dragon fast. Lex snapped up the pace mid-flight and charged straight for the dragon, fueled by one brutal thought he'd end it in a single deadly strike. As he shot closer, something felt horribly off. Then it hit him that dragon wasn't hunting at all, it was keeping an eye out for someone. Still, the main character figured that it didn't matter anyway. Then he screamed as he charged forward and the other guy snapped his head toward him. Lex crushed the dragon's head with a single savage sword swing, like it weighed nothing at all, and as he basked in that rush, he yanked out a magic bag. He popped it open and declared it was time to grab the loot, this magic bag he'd crafted with his own hands. That bag just looks ordinary, but magic swallows the space inside anything he stuffs in. Slips in perfectly, no matter what it is, and especially not something as precious as this. So with those thoughts burning in his head, he shoved the dragon's body right into it. Then he grinned and swore everything was settled, everything was done. Now he had to get out of here before the night swallowed the sky. He snapped back into magic and shot upward into flight, racing the dusk. And yeah, he'd better register as an adventurer fast. Then he caught a wave of rustling, whipped his head toward it, and couldn't tell if it was just his imagination or something real. Right then, the mystery man snapped into panic, convinced something monstrous had struck them during the trip, until he realized the threat wasn't just any beast, but a green dragon. The kind that even the best royal troops and an entire army couldn't stand against. So, just saying strongest isn't enough to describe this monster's horror night screams that the dragons are hunting their horses and they've got to use them fast and bolt for their lives. He snapped his head toward the others and ordered them to retreat first because he knew that in a place like this, losing even one horse meant doom, yet It was their only chance to survive. The knight begged Vulcan for forgiveness and swore he'd never let him face death alone. He'd trade his own life for his right then. The main character launched himself straight at the dragon. The man stood frozen in shock as the young guy casually crushed the green dragon, the one they'd been terrified of. The main character didn't even look their way. He just blurted out that it was excellent. Right then, the man and the horse stared in stunned silence. And the moment it finally clicked for him, everything was already over. Right in front of his jaw-dropped face, that teen pulled out a tiny bag that gulped everything, then swallowed the dragon's massive body too. Right in front of him, an odd scene unfolded, and all he could think was, this has to be some kind of magical object. He was still in shock, straight up denying it because there was no way a teenager could possibly have something magical like that. Right when the knight turned toward the main character to grill him with a few questions, he suddenly took off straight into the sky, leaving the man scrambling after him as he shouted. But the knight ignored every word. The knight couldn't even process what he saw, like the world blinked and it was all real, one split second after another. This cursed bag clamped down and swallowed the dragon, and fear hit them like thunder, because it was all over in the blink of an eye. In a heartbeat, the dragon was cleaved into 2 pieces. Yet right then, the man snapped back to the princess, and pure panic exploded across his face. One of the knights told everyone, "Don't panic, she's out cold, but the princess is safe." The man let out a breath and said it was a job well done. Leo is relieved the princess is safe, but his heart sinks anyway because that dragon fight nearly pushed his old, broken body over the edge. The man admitted he had zero clue what was going on, yet somehow they lived, because he turned straight to his horse. But that night refuses to fade, and the young man in front of him keeps begging the same question. Who is he really? At last, the protagonist burst into the city of Tugai, thinking he still had a shot to register as an adventurer. After a while, he started marching through the city streets, weaving past crowds chatting non-stop, until he finally set his mind on one mission, tracking down where the Adventurers Guild was hiding. Almost instantly, he spotted the right building and shot inside, only to find a bunch of people clustered in groups. A thunderous burst of noise filled the room as everyone jabbered over themselves, and the main character lit up. He couldn't stop thinking they were all real adventurers. I can't believe this place, there are adventures everywhere, and I never saw this coming. Even he started to get a little worried. Then he jerked to a stop, realizing he nearly threw his main goal out the window. He had to reach the reception desk ASAP. He scanned the area, and it looked like he'd finally found the right spot. Then his stomach dropped because an insanely long line stretched out in front of him. The guy ahead of him whipped around and demanded, "Is this really your first time here at this hour?" And Lex's fear hit him like a punch. Then his words tangled up. He blurted out that it was his first day, and the man just grinned, calling him a total newbie. The stranger grilled him about whether he'd shown up on his first mission with nothing in tow, then snapped, "So, you're here to register as an adventurer?" And he answered, "Yes." This good-hearted guy told me everyone was already done with their work, and people were only rushing in to report the mission was finished, so he didn't think many folks like him would still show up to register. He fired a question at the protagonist, demanding where he came from, and the protagonist answered without hesitation, saying he'd grown up in the village of Zengi. The man swore he'd never heard of any village like that, and asked where it even was, so Lex snapped back that if he wanted to reach it, he'd first have to cross the mountain west of the city. He swore it caught him off guard. This main character was so pumped to become an adventurer that he talked about it like it was effortless. And then he grinned and said he knew a shortcut, and boom, everything went faster, just like that. The main character beamed and whispered that the road ahead looked empty. Then the guy grinned and said, "All right, I'll go." The girl told everyone the next person should come to her, then waved Lex over and declared, "My name is Elma. I'm the registrar." After that, she leaned in and asked if Lex was really ready to register as an adventurer. He shot back an immediate yes, then leaned in and asked how she'd found out. She grinned and said Garand himself had talked about it, like he couldn't stop talking. Then Elma pushed the idea of registering Kaim, asking him straight if he could still read and write even if he couldn't. They'd jump in to help. But the guy just shrugged and said he could handle it all on his own. He couldn't help thinking, back in my past life, I was a sage. Then the girl shoved a questionnaire into his hands and told him to fill it out. Lex snatched the questionnaire and started smashing answers into every field. Then after a little while, he slid the completed document straight to the girl. Elma grinned and promised she'd check his info again. Then she leaned in and praised his gorgeous handwriting. She kept praising his handwriting again and again, then suddenly told him they were recruiting people with beautiful handwriting too. Lex's jaw dropped at what she'd just said. Then he clenched his fist like a promise and declared he needed his own record as an adventurer. So the girl beamed and said she got it, but he should think it over once he's retired. Elma calmly told him, "Next, they're setting up a practical exam just for you." At that exact moment, a man lunged up beside him, hooked an arm over his shoulder, and said this wasn't a pretend fight. This was a real test to find out if he had what it takes to be an adventurer. Lex snapped his head toward the man, and the way he carried himself screamed, "I'm the coolest guy in this whole building." Lex could tell he was built like a beast. Then, right then and there, the man asked Elma if he could run his exam. The girl's eyes widened at his words. She pressed him again for what he meant, then hammered home that he was an A-rank adventurer. The man winked and told Lex he must be a real shot of an adventurer to show up to register at a time like this, then said, "All right, let me teach you what you need to know as a candidate." Then the man leaned in close to the girl and started whispering the exact reasons behind his shocking decision. Elma let out a heavy sigh and apologized, but then she cut in. His exam wouldn't be run by a guild employee, it would be run by Org-san. She admitted he'd sometimes lose his mind, but since he's an A-rank adventurer, he can dish out better advice than any of those guild members. The main character bowed and begged him to look after him, and the old man grinned and promised, "Don't worry, I've always loved that same diligence in you, and I'm still the same old me." Right then, the crowd shouted that they were wrapping up today's material shopping, and the protagonist realized he had to deal with that dragon. Then the man leaned in and asked if he truly wanted to sell anything. Lex told me he had to cover his room and food, and then he'd sell the materials from the monster he'd been hunting because right now he's flat broke. The man burst into laughter and said that right after this exam, he'd have to rush off to Elma because while he tested, the others were busy judging his goods. The protagonist snapped his gaze to him and blurted out thanks, and suddenly he felt that relief wash over him like the org song really got him. Right then, he started rummaging through his magic bag. He then spread the dragon's remains before him and demanded the guild judge his work. Right then, every single person in the guild froze in stunned disbelief. The protagonist admitted the dragon was so huge he'd drop it straight onto the floor, and the poor prey took up nearly half the guild's space. Lex grinned and told everyone to grab the green dragon, jabbing at it with his hand like it was pure treasure. Next, the main character marched up to Org-san and begged for forgiveness for keeping him waiting, then swore he was ready for his test until the man slammed his hand up and cut him off. Org pushed him. "So, you're really hunting for this?" And the main character shot back, "Yeah, I came for it on the way here." The man started grilling him about whether anyone helped, and he shook his head no. Then the man asked if he had a way of his own, and he said, dead serious, that he'd chopped his head off with a single strike. San said, "When I look at that dragon, I can feel its wings are built like armor." And Lex snapped back, "It's a green dragon." San nodded hard, insisting, "Yep, green, not some wyver." Right then, the main character leaned in and quietly urged the man, "So why don't we start the exam already?" Org-san shut his eyes and blurted, "You're already through the exam?" While sweat poured off his face. Lex was left completely stunned by what he'd just heard. He claimed they hadn't kicked off the fight, and the man snapped back that everything was fine. This was just a test to see if they could take down monsters or bandits. If he's the one who caught that monster all by himself, he doesn't need to take any exam he passes, and it's done. Then he praises him, calling him an adventurer. Lex spun toward Elma and said the man claimed it was past. Then he grilled, "Is everything okay?" And Elma nodded, saying it had to be true since the examiner said so. He grilled her again on what he had to do next, and she beamed back sweet as sugar and congratulated him for passing the test. He lifted his hand again and burst out in pure joy, yelling that he'd finally become an adventurer because from that moment on, his life was all in on being one. After a while, Alma thrust the item into his hands and told him, "This is an adventurer's registration card. He's got to hand that card to Stan just to get missions. And once he finishes them, he flashes it again while every adventurer starts F rank and climbs higher as they rack up achievements." As his rank shot up, new missions flooded in, and he knew he couldn't slack off, so he vowed, "I'll do my best and I'll climb that rank." Elma told him, "If it's you Kashin Majari K's, then you won't have to haul through all those missions." And when he didn't get what she meant, he pressed her to explain again. Her answer was simple. "Don't worry, everything's fine." Then she leaned in and told her the truth. This dragon wasn't coming back easily, and pulling it off would be a brutal fight for them. Right then, she dropped the bombshell. There was no buying this dragon off, he didn't see it coming at all. The main character froze in shock and demanded answers. Why would she choose something like this? He figured the market was packed, and their value had already started to sink. Org-san pushed, asking what she meant, then pressed even harder, wondering how she could claim she couldn't buy it. The girl gushed that this dragon's body was insanely beautiful, and then one of the hooded men snapped that there was no other escape. Of course, that was the only way out. San turned back to the girl and snapped that she was getting a little too dramatic. Now she just needed to lay out the reason for them. Elma shot back that she figured everyone already had it figured out, that the dragon had pulled in expedition after expedition. If that dragon's strong, both countries will claw and bleed for their lives. Plus, even if the expedition pulls it off, the dragon's carcass will take hits, so it's totally normal for the materials to get damaged too. She told him that intact body parts do exist, but they're so rare they might as well be legends. She told them that if anyone stared at this dragon close up, they wouldn't find a single dent besides a few spots. Everything still gleamed, even every scale. And right then, the crowd was stunned by the clean cut. No messy damage, just perfect work. Then Elma said, with iron in her voice, "That's why this whole dragon is destined to become a treasure. People say dragons waste nothing, and this one is the strangest there is. But the truth is, their budget can't stretch far enough to buy the material. The girl said they'd haul it to the capital and sell it at auction, then turned to Lex and asked if he trusted them enough to leave this dragon with the guild. Surely they'd get him a fair price. Lex nodded and agreed. Elma told him, auction it, and you'll rake in a fortune. And she even raised her voice as if it could make the money appear. At that exact moment, the main character realized he had zero money. No food, no place to sleep, and when he turned around, the org sand behind him was frozen in shock. He snapped into explaining to Lex that they were chasing super profits, and once it was his, he'd live in pure luxury for the rest of his life. Sell it at auction, or he'd regret it every single day. And he made it clear he needed the money right now. Just like that, the man shoved a handful of coins into his hands. Then the main character blinked, stunned, and asked if everything was really okay before thanking him. The man only shrugged and said, nothing's wrong, take them. Then Lex blurted out that he needed to thank him, handed him a gift, and begged, please take it if you don't mind. Of course. The protagonist yanked a dragon scale from his bag, apologized, and shrugged that it was just a small one. And the man, plus everyone standing behind him, went dead silent in pure shock. Lex insisted there was nothing wrong, but he still pushed to thank him only for the man to wave it off, then double-check one last time if Lex was truly okay with him accepting it. Then Org-san burst into joy, swept the main character into a big hug, and promised dinner was on him, so go ahead, order whatever you want. After a while, they finally said, let's hit the streets for food and drinks, and they stuffed themselves until they collapsed into the next bar, because there wasn't a scrap of space left for anything else. After the bar closed, the main character rented a room, stumbled inside, and flopped onto the bed, grinning as he pictured Org-san and his crew bursting with energy like real adventurers, and honestly, it was the most fun ever. Lex stared at the night sky, convinced tomorrow would finally light the fuse on his adventurer life, and his heart was so full of emotion that waiting felt impossible. The very next day, he stormed into the guild, ready to hunt down whatever quests were available. Then he spotted the board, pushed through to it, and still ended up saying he couldn't find what he was looking for. At that exact moment, a mystery guy shouted to him calling him Dragon Guy and demanded to know if he was truly hunting a quest. The main character shot back dead serious that he wanted to take an F-rank quest first. Then the guy's whole mood flipped, going, wait, people like that even exist, and wishing him luck right after. He said, try anyway. And Lex shot back that he would only for the guy to feel weird about how those words tumbled out of his mouth. Then he turned around and hunted for a job for himself. He hunted for ages before he finally stumbled on a daily quest for an F rank where the job was simple, go out and gather herbs. Staring at that price, the main character figured, alright, I can take this now. 10 herbs cost 3 copper coins, and since this quest runs every day, the more you haul in, the more money stacks up. Then it hit him Org-sans had warned him if the quest went south, there'd be zero punishment. Most quests come with brutal time limits, or you have to match the client's exact demands, so if you grab a job that doesn't fit your rank and still fail to finish it, the punishment drops on you. For the first trial, you should stack daily tasks because they don't come with any punishment. Sure, you'll still ignore some of them when they're not worth your time. The protagonist figured, this is exactly what the man taught me because he didn't just hand him money, he dropped real helpful info too. Total generosity, and before any of this, the man had already gathered herbs back in his own village. Right when Lex was about to take the task, another guy cut in and barked, so you're really gonna accept this quest? He flashed a sweet smile and said he was going to gather herbs, and the stranger shot back that even kids can collect herbs around here. The guy said Lex was already an adult, then leaned in and asked if he was an adventurer just like them. The hero squinted and swore that the guy looked like a warrior of light, while the girl beside him screamed, marauder. The girl in the hat reeked of a magician, and the glasses-wearing guy gave off monk vibes. So he asked, you're one of them too? And they nodded back, loud and clear. That guy tells everyone, my name's Gyro, then steps up as the leader of the Dragon Slayer team. The magician snapped that she had warned him not to use that name, but the guy shrugged and said it sounded perfect, and the monk nodded like it was totally right. Then she leaned in and told Gyro that this name is nothing but shame. At that moment, the main character flashed a grin and said he thought it was awesome. Jiro nodded like he finally got it. That smile was so rare it felt unreal, but yeah, he could be his friend. He said, since I became an adventurer, I've got to party like a grown-up, no excuses. Jiro kept driving through his lecture, saying that if he stuck to herb-collecting quests only, his rank would barely budge. Right then, the guy leaned in and laid out his plans. He swore he'd beat the rumored Dragon Slayer. The protagonist brought it up again, and Gyro snapped, I heard it yesterday. I even went straight to the guild and asked him to sell me dragons in perfect condition. Flex chewed on his words, convinced someone else had made the same move too. Maybe it was all rumors, but this mystery guy probably tore into the dragon with way more grace than Flex ever did. Gyro said the dragon's defeat had been so clean that the guild couldn't reclaim it, so they decided to auction it off in the royal capital, and if he was a man, he'd better step up and do the job the same way as him. He said they'd take quests to wipe out monsters, but If he was still stuck doing jobs like gathering herbs, then he'd rather hunt for something tougher. And just like that, he promised they'd see each other again. The magician apologized and told him, "That guy blurts out whatever pops into his head," then shrugged. "Yeah, he's crazy confident, but he's nowhere near a bad person." After a while, the main character slipped into the forest to finish his herb collecting quest, marching deeper as he kept thinking, "It has to be around here somewhere." Lex figured this was normal village stuff until he realized it was probably adventurers doing the whole thing, and he couldn't wrap his head around why everyone treated it like something special. Then the protagonist dove into the shadows to hunt for herbs, and right? Then he stumbled onto exactly what he needed, a plant made mostly of leaves. One that will keep sprouting again and again as long as you leave its roots alone. Lex gathered the herbs he needed, then kept moving because he was chasing a mountain of them, and he snatched them up with surprising ease. The protagonist scanned the area and realized, wow, there were herbs everywhere. But he felt bad that the quest progress wasn't even shown here, and he also knew he'd soon be able to hand Orgsan 5 coins back. In his village, they hunted herbs every day since there were no shops at all, so selling herbs became his first move, and honestly, it turned out to be a blast twice over. Turns out that's what pushed him into becoming an adventurer. The main character grinned, raked his fingers through his hair, said he'd already gathered plenty, and that meant it was time to bounce. Then he finally listened and caught the rustle of trees and other strange sounds drifting from one direction. So he nodded to himself and blasted his shoes with magic again. He shot into the sky, already convinced he had to check everything from above then. Out in the distance, an enraged boar barreled down the road straight at him. They call it the forest devil, pure brute strength. Faster than a horse, with skin that's nearly invulnerable. And when it shows up a lot, it tears through nature and hits people hard. But the real nightmare is this. They almost always come for you in packs. Lex can already feel their rush creeping through the forest with no sign they're slowing down, and if this keeps going, the city won't stand a chance. At this speed, the boars will slam into the city of Tugayan in an hour, and the protagonist can't shake the idea that adventurers must wipe out the danger because in the guild, your job is simple. Fight the monsters that are coming for the city, and that's exactly what this mission demands. When monsters crash into the world, the guild blasts the whole crew into action to smash them and shield the cities because every monster hunt is how adventurers win real trust from people across towns and countries. And there were tales of brave adventurers who stood between cities and monsters, generation after generation, so every kid grew up dreaming the same way. And if it was up to Lex, those stories would become real for them all. When the green dragon shows up, he ignores other materials, but he keeps one rule close: don't wreck the forest. Then a chill hits him. Maybe those evil boars are hunting someone. He finally clocked it. He wasn't charging straight for the city at all. Sometimes he couldn't even tell where his own footsteps were headed. Then it hit him. He was hauling himself after someone, closing the gap. And when he looked up, he saw it clearly. Those adventurers weren't heading anywhere. They were sprinting away from him. He figured they must have stumbled into boars' territory without even noticing. And if someone was really out there, using anything stronger than higher magic would have been suicide. The protagonist landed hard on the ground, convinced he had to dodge the wild chaos brewing in that forest, and if he wanted things to go right, he knew he'd have to switch to a completely different kind of magic. Then Lex shot forward again. Burning with one thought, he had to reach the pack's leader until he stared closer and recognized the fleeing adventurers as Gyro and his team. Right then, the monk caught his foot on a tree root and crashed to the ground, and Gyro snapped her name out loud. Then a whole stampede of boars surged straight at her and she froze, trembling with pure terror. Out of nowhere, the main character slammed down right in front of the girl, so even the boars froze mid-rush, cutting off their charge as if they'd just seen a ghost. Gyro and his team stared in stunned silence as Lex snapped, declaring that the boars were now his enemy. Gyro and his crew sprinted for their lives as a pack of boars barreled after them. Then he yelled so hard his voice cracked and swore he'd never forget how it all went down. The magician barked his name, swore it all happened because he promised they could go further, yet they didn't want to. Gyro snapped at her to stay quiet, like they wouldn't possibly track them down here then. Right on cue, the boars kept surging forward and the guy let out a furious curse. He couldn't believe they'd forgotten everything here, at least not at first, when all that crawled around were weak goblins and kobolds he'd trained to fight with a former adventurer. And weirdly enough, he was actually good from the start. They had a healer on their team, so if anyone got hurt, she could stitch them back together with magic, making him feel like if he picked this spot, victory would be basically guaranteed. But now everything went wrong, big trouble hit fast, and the entire crew bolted to escape those vicious monsters. Jiro stared at the ground, thinking he'd never once heard of them out near the city. Adventurers, guards, and knights usually rush out to hunt monsters, but here it's safe, the adults said. But nope, this place feels downright unsafe, because those huge, terrifying monsters are everywhere the moment he thought of it. He pictured an evil boar's head right in front of him, and right then one of his teammates stumbled. Gyro barked Norb's name, panicking the moment he saw she'd gone down. Then he spun around and realized the monsters were seconds away from reaching her. The moment he realized they'd get trampled, E swore he couldn't save her. Those monsters were brutal, deadly, and way too strong. Jiro figured he had to ignore her and bolt because if she got caught, he'd get crushed too, yet another part of him screamed that he had to save her. So he shoved those thoughts down only to realize it was already too late. Lost in his own head, he suddenly saw a stranger charging in, screaming like a banshee as he lunged straight at the boar's leader. Jiro stared in shock as the main character stepped right in front of him and his team, declaring loud and clear that he was officially an opponent of monsters now. He was stunned. Was he the only one who'd come to help them? And the crazy part? The guy looked his age, but he somehow felt impossibly strong. Right then, the main character swore he'd made it in time until he realized he had to jump in and help Jiro's crew. He spotted Norb's injured leg, and it was so bad she couldn't even move. He wants to cure her right now, but he's got to tread carefully. One wrong move and those evil boars could snap at him. He has to figure out a way to heal her without shifting an inch. Right then, power sparked in the main character's right hand, and he went for it, aiming at the girl as he unleashed a long-range healing skill. The girl gaped as this pain vanished, and Lex realized it was all working to trap them. Stay away from Norb, because the only way out is a long-range healing spell. The main character chose to corral the monsters and throw himself into the fight. He barked at the girl to get out, and she nodded and ran. Lex stared at the boars and knew one thing: no matter what he tried, they'd still charge him, smashing into everyone with their sheer weight. But Lex wasn't going to let them get away with it. Tree Grip is the ultimate binding magic. Once it hits, trees turn into living ivy and snap onto the opponent like they're trapped for good. This net is woven from trees packed with crazy, springy strength, and it's been enchanted too, so when the boars crash into it, they can't slip away. The magician demanded what kind of magic that was, and she swore she'd never seen anything like it then. Norb wondered if someone could pull off real magic without a spell, and Lex snapped that in a fight. A spell isn't what makes it work. He really believed his memories from his 2 past lives meant he'd be unstoppable in a fight until reality hit, because those past selves barely had any real combat experience, and that's exactly why he didn't know how to fight. Lex told him, "I've survived enough battles to know this, handle it smart." Then he yanked out his sword and declared, "This is the end." A beam of magic crashed down from the sky, and he had to yank that electricity straight into his sword, shaping a huge lightsaber that drank lightning like crazy. The main character clenched his resolve and ordered the boars to face their punishment. Then he slammed them with a lightning strike. This shapeless blade of lightning doesn't cut from the outside, it cooks its victims from the inside, and the enemy drops without ever feeling the strike, because that's the exact skill the master drilled into him from his past life. The one that finally unlocks the ultimate sword technique. Back then, he'd done this in front of his teacher, with a smug grin until his teacher shot him down. Over and over, saying it was wrong and this wasn't even close. Lex was sure he could end them without ever hurting a single bit of their skin. Then he flashed a sweet smile, told the guys it was over, and immediately asked how they were doing. The protagonist asked the girl if she was hurt, and she assured him she was okay. Her magic was drained, but at least she hadn't been injured. Lex quizzed her about the missing magic, then warned that without it, things could turn dangerous until they got back to the city. Yet the girl waved it off, insisting everything was totally fine. But he refused to hear her. Then he apologized and pulled out his mana transfer skill, leaving the girl stunned as she blurted, "What is that?" The protagonist leaned in and sweetly told her, "I gave you some of my mana." And then boom, she finally realized she could use her magic now. The girl gasped. She was overflowing, and that should have been impossible with mana in her body. Lex said, "If you're good right now, I'll take those boars for the moment." At that exact moment, Gyro shouted at him to hold up, so the main character snapped his head up and demanded to know if something really happened. The boy dropped his head and, with unwavering grit, thanked him for pulling them back from the edge of death. The main character told him, "Don't freak out, this is totally normal for an adventurer." And then the guy leaned in and demanded, "All right, what's your name?" Lex pressed him again, demanding an answer because, yeah, deep down Lex knew the guy was right. He'd learned his name, but he'd never once revealed his own. Lex shot out his hand and introduced himself, hoping they'd team up again someday. Then Gyro shook his grip, cheeks blazing with a blush. Lex stared at him and knew something was off, so he blurted out right then, "Hey, what's bothering you?" Gyro swore he knew nothing, understood nothing. He just thought he was unstoppable since he'd wiped out those goblins, and that reckless confidence nearly got the entire group killed. The guy said this is why his older brother showed up near someone like him, and now he can feel the man's temperament in his bones. Then the main character snapped back, saying he was just exaggerating. Gyro yanked the main character by the collar, and heat rushed up his face as he blurted, "I'm already in love with the power my older brother has." The boy dropped to his knees right in front of him and begged for one thing, "Let me be your disciple." The protagonist was stunned by how fast everything spiraled. He thought he'd finally landed his first student, only to realize he didn't even need him. After a while, Lex stormed back into the city. head full of questions because he still couldn't believe he got promoted to D rank just for completing a mission to collect herbs. He pulled off an F rank mission, his very first, and somehow climbed 2 rank tiers just by completing a single job at that level. The main character snapped back, remembering that he'd fought with that girl, so he demanded, "How is this even possible?" And she just shrugged, saying it was basically the same mess as before. Right then, Gyro shot up toward him and said, "Yeah, I expected this from my brother. He's already climbed to D rank." The girl snatched this guy by his collar and snapped that he was coming with her because they still had to report their missions to wipe out the goblins and kobolds. And Lex couldn't help thinking he looked exactly like a pet. He'd been a little nervous when he asked to be taught, but then when someone came up to him with that kind of honesty, it didn't feel so bad in his past lives. People had only ever approached him with ugly intentions. Sometimes they hailed him like a hero or a sage, begging him to join their cause, but other times they straight up tried to swipe every last piece of his research. Alma caught him staring off, completely lost in thought, and she snapped, "Did something happen?" But he just shook his head and said, "Nothing's wrong, everything's fine." She told him he'd earned 15 gold coins for hauling in 50 herb bundles, and right when she tried to add more, he cut her off mid-sentence. The protagonist leaned in and asked her to tell him why his name shot up the rankings. Butler to the Viscount's grimoire state, his lord is about to come back from the auction in the royal capital. But before that, he has one mission burning in his head: track down the adventurer who killed the dragon. He never thought he'd end up turning down a dinner invite, but once the guild won the right to protect their adventurers, the negotiations blew up and he had to sprint all the way here to personally talk with the adventurer. The girl greets John and points him toward the adventurers guild, but he can't help asking one thing: whether the adventurer's even here. She swears he showed up not long ago, but she's convinced he slipped out on a quest, like he couldn't resist it. What kind of dragon slayer is he, really? The guild stonewalled every detail, so now the whole world's waiting. Who's finally going to lay eyes on him? He can't hold back anymore. The Dragon Slayer has to be right in the middle of this crowd. No excuses. One guy leans in and asks to see his armor, and the second you lay eyes on it, it gleams like jewelry, proving right away this isn't just any ordinary suit. The man clocks him as one of them and blurts, "Give me a minute." But the guy cuts in, "Who are you?" The man tips his hat and says, "Let me introduce myself. I'd be happy to hear your name, if you don't mind." John says the guy named Org is working for the Viscount of Grimoire right now, and he's hunting for an adventurer who fits a specific set of criteria. Picture this: a tough fighter in armor so breathtaking he can instantly tell this isn't ordinary gear. It's crafted at a top-tier level, and even someone like him can feel how extraordinary it is. He grins, like the moment finally clicks in his head, and then he realizes that Master Gordo built this armor for a reason. And it's even crazier than he expected. It's forged from dragon scales. And John can't hide his shock. A dragon was just thrown into an auction, so everyone missed their chance to grab its scale, meaning he thought he could get it the hard way after the hunt, and now he's staring in shock like, "Wait, I actually have a dragon's scale in my hands." The man demands where he got it, and his mind races as he wonders what he'll say because the guy knows it all traces back to one quest, and he can't believe how lucky he is. Jack can't believe this lame excuse. He's sure it's just a cover because the guy won't show his true identity. And if Jack knew the real reason, he'd be able to control him. To land armor that good, he's got to grab it no matter what high-rank adventurer or nobody at all, and he agrees. John finally clicks. He's actually said it out loud, and now he's stuck admitting, "Yeah, I'm a dragon slayer." Then he shoots straight to the point. He asks if you want to meet his master, because he's hunting strong adventurers who can earn their way to becoming knights. If he's willing, they can hire him as a knight. So what's he say? He refuses because he doesn't want to stand out, and John presses him to make sure his lord takes care of it. He doesn't need to answer yet, so how about this grab lunch with his master first, then he'll reply. John tells him they're about to cook up a feast just for him, and the guy laughs, "I can handle that." John nods, realizing the negotiations actually worked. Now they just have to push him to swear himself as the lord's vassal. He figures it'll be a breeze to win over a man who only cares about muscles, and once the guy gives the okay, he slips out because they'll meet again when she's finally ready. He nods along, then watches the guy walk away while everyone around them is left utterly stunned. They realized Org had been summoned by the nobleman himself to become a knight, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it. He ignored so many others just to go running to a guy who never once bothered to train his eye. One guy begged the other not to say anything, but the other snapped back that he'd been hired because he wore dragon scale armor. And that pretty much proved how unimpressive this situation was. His brother swears they named Org after judging his skills. The armor only tipped the scales, and the one thing that really sealed it was the green dragon scale he handed over. Nobody would have guessed this was top-tier armor. Org just grabbed it from Gordo's own technique. And since it came free, it's basically only a prototype. He can't believe she can look that amazing. And honestly, it feels weird because he's terrified of just how dumb he can be sometimes. They were set to head to training, but nope, his brother almost forgot, so they'll smash through a couple of quests first because today is the day. Sword mastery training goes down. Someone shouts, "Let's start training right here," and right away there's this whole crowd waiting. Someone asks what they're gonna learn, and then does he actually have a secret technique he'll teach them? The girl snaps that he's stupid, refusing to teach the secret technique to someone clumsy. He blows up in rage, then suddenly reins it in and tells her to start with body-strengthening magic. He knows it, there's no way that guy can use magic. He's a warrior, and magic isn't in his skill set at all. Everyone's got mana coursing through their body. Some have more, some have less, but nobody's empty. And he's like, watch this, concentrating it in his palm before he swings. Then the boy slams his fist into the ground, crack, crumble, and all the students stare at him from behind in stunned silence. This is basic body-strengthening magic when their body gets wrapped in mana, their muscles surge, their speed spikes, and their defenses harden. It's a technique warriors use, sure, but magicians and priests lean on it too. He shakes the dust off his palms, leans in, and demands, have you seen it? It's gotta be simple, right? He pushes, then every single one of them shakes their heads. No. Body-strengthening magic sounds simple if you can feel mana. Yet that guy snaps back that it's anything but easy. The girl insists, he didn't use a single spell, so how in the world did he do it? And everyone just stares, clueless, thinking, maybe we can't pull that off, maybe we're not capable. Even if they call body enhancement magic, it's really just mana flooding his whole body, so he doesn't have to juggle spells to control it. You don't need any spells to pull off the real magic he can level up without a single incantation. And the girl totally flips out, asking why he talked like he already knew everything. She tries to focus this mana she can feel surging inside her, but every time she steers it, it fights back, slipping in the exact opposite direction of what he's trying to pull off. No matter what happens, they can already feel mana in the air, meaning they've been casting spells for years. And without that experience, they can't control mana at all. She stared at her own hands, certain she could sense mana, but she wasn't fully sure after all. Meguri was the thief who always trusted instinct, and somehow it felt like she could already feel the mana in her bones. Meguri will probably master body-strengthening magic first, while Gyro takes the next hit of training. He's already wiped out, but he still pushes himself, then he hammers the ground with his fist and drops like he got knocked out. He can't picture his mana flow, his hands are aching. So how do we train him smarter, with something that actually works? Then the three of them finally cracked the lesson the guy had been trying to teach, and once it clicked, they all proved it right there. They picked it up so fast that the girl gasped. She said it's insanely useful because she can go toe-to-toe in close combat the moment they get boxed in. The glasses-wearing girl leans in and says her defense has jumped way more than her strength, and then she adds, perfect, because I'm a stealth mission weapon too. Magic doesn't just boost power, it feeds on who you are and what you do, stacking your traits higher and higher based on your profession. Meanwhile, Gyro's tears hit the ground as he begs the guy to do it. He nods and promises he'll handle it because he practiced for ages to master that move, and Gyro can't believe what he's hearing. Gyro tells the guy he's amazing, and the guy's completely stunned. He blurts out what kind of training turned him into someone like that. He remembers that guy telling him, it doesn't matter how much mana you've got if you can't control it, your real key is your fighting spirit. And if he's got that fire, he'll finally be able to use mana without needing spells. He totally dropped the fighting spirit talk while he obsessed over the laws of the universe. And once that knowledge started flowing, everyone started calling him the Sage. The guy brags that he trained for this, digging into every reason, cause, motive, effect, and even the rules, because if he figures it out, he can recreate the result, but Gyro just can't follow a word he's saying. So yeah, he needs to finally grasp what mana even is, Gyro fires back, asking if he'll need magic talent, because normal warriors can't possibly understand it. But the guy insists on looking at Meguri, she's a thief, and somehow she pulls it off. He asks if he's seen Norb's healing magic, and he goes, yeah, this stuff is unreal. If it's just a simple wound, it knits back up fast and leaves not a single trace. When that gyro hits him, does it mess with him at all? Does he even feel it? He says he only feels a tiny softness, like the guy felt mana. It's just like healing magic when it goes off. Mana spills out, so picture the energy pouring into the air. We've got to make Jiro think he's feeling mana, but the second he jumps to conclusions, he misreads everything and he's dead wrong. Suddenly, the guy slams into the ground and the whole place shudders. Everyone freezes, staring at him as he lies in a crater, grimly worried for his life. Everyone crowds him like he's a miracle, shouting how he pulled it off, and then he turns the question around, asking if they should wait. They should worry about him exploding. The protagonist rushes in to apologize for it, but one thing stays true when he exploded. It worked, and he's convinced. Once Gyro finally cracks how to use mana, he unleashes a few more brutal strikes. He's grinning because it's insanely cool, and he never in a million years thought he'd pull off something this awesome. The protagonist thanks him for everything, and then turns around and wrecks nature anyway, leaving him to shrug that he's an excellent teacher, because he somehow managed to teach even Gyro. The girl swears they've jumped at least one whole rank, maybe more, while Lex just rolls his eyes and calls it an exaggeration. The girl in the hat demands to know why Gyro blew up earlier, and the guy fires back he'd packed his body full of mana, and he never shifted where it was going. So you stored that much? She asks. If they keep pouring water into a leather bottle, it'll split open and burst, same deal with mana. Body enhancement magic pumps a tiny stream of mana through the body to toughen you up. Jiro's in trouble because his body churns out way too much mana if it stacks up inside him. It'll rip him apart, so he has to keep letting that built-up mana out. The girl can't stop thinking, and the guy finally tells her the truth. This magic only works because mana gets reproduced inside the body. This is the theory of spending mana without casting a spell if they just unleash it. They can use magic on command, no incantations needed, and the girl suddenly realizes he can do exactly that to pull off spell work without ever casting. If they do that, they'll just dump raw mana everywhere. So if they want to use magic without casting again, they have to tag it with an attribute and process it first. She knows she'll cast magic without a spell because she's a mage from the moment she was born, and that power snaps into place fast. He's convinced there's something every wizard should know, so why isn't he teaching it himself? Norbert closes in on Lex, asks if she wants to learn magic with no repetition. Lex says yes, but before he can go further, she raises a finger and warns him that something bigger matters. Jiro's still sprawled on the ground, totally frozen. He's burned through every last scrap of mana, and this is what happens to anyone who gets too excited right after they learn magic. The guy begged for a moment of rest, and Norb's shoulders lifted with relief until she realized he'd just fallen and thought he was sick. She had no idea you could even fall from using magic, or that this special kind could burn through mana in a crazier way than anything else. The protagonist snaps that she's exaggerating, and then boom! An explosion erupts from behind just as Maguri crumples onto the ground. He scoops her up and they slam through jump after jump, and she keeps blurting apologies until he snaps, "Stop, don't apologize." Then he admits the truth. It's his fault for never warning them about what would happen. Suddenly, Mina drops to the ground, the protagonist blurts out an apology, and with 3 out of 4 people already drained of mana, he snaps that from now on they have to manage it better too. In Vikaut's house, Grimoire the butler gets face to face with the master. John wastes no time, tells him he looks amazing, then shoots. "So, did you manage to get what you wanted?" Even though it drained his pockets, Baron Goodsey kept hiking the prices higher and higher like he was trying to scare him off until he was stuck paying a huge, unnecessary fortune. Even with all that chaos, he still pulled off the dragon core Celia needed. And suddenly her foresight, sharpened like a blade John pressed him, was the whole point, boosting her accuracy. The man nodded and said, "Yeah, you can't manage a territory without foresight. Plenty of people in this world toss around fortune-telling magic, but she blows them all away. She's the real master. A terrifying expert known as Foresight. She's so sharp and exact, she micromanages even how the Viscount Germer's territory is run. While John's itching to figure out how dragon materials fuel divination magic, the Viscount has zero clue. He only cares about one thing, that it'll definitely boost Celia's precognition. And if she learns to wield it, then nothing else matters. What matters even more to him is where this whole mess stands right now, and when you hit John with that question, he's completely stunned. He exhales hard, tells the guy to calm down, and says he already reached out to the adventurer. Now it's just his master's turn to talk, and he asks straight up if he'll agree. He realized he wasn't any different from the power-hungry crowd. He craved a role with less spotlight, and either guilt gnawed at him or he was quietly hunting for someone to back him. The man shrugs it off like it's nothing, but John's stomach drops because now they have to face the disaster Celia saw, the exact same one she warned about earlier. Celia swore she'd witnessed something horrific. Her eyes caught his territory burning to the ground, and she claimed the blaze was made with someone's hands, but he couldn't believe a word of it at first. Then out of nowhere came a dragon, evil boars, and a dark block, every single one of them a nightmare that spelled real trouble. No way, there's zero chance all of this could have happened that fast, which means one thing. John just asked, right there on this very land, "Do you think something like that happens here too?" He's not about to let this adventurer end up in some other nobleman's hands. So get him ready for that dinner party ASAP and have him pressing for the adventurer's name the moment he can. A couple of days later, the dressed-up girl snaps her attention to her father, and he presses Celia for answers, so she has to spill what her precognition showed her, and then he grills her hard. Did she spot anything else? She nods, grips his hand, and thanks him for the dragon core he handed over, because now she sees everything sharper and clearer, and she can't believe it was worth every penny she paid. She can't stop thanking him because this one move turbocharged her predictions. Now they hit with way more accuracy than ever before. The man freezes in shock and demands to know what she saw. This time only for the girl to open her mouth and the father to stare at her, worry crashing across his face. She unleashed a pack of monstrous strangers across the land, and the whole place swallowed their terrifying presence in an instant. The guy's jaw drops, he whips his head to her, and he blurts out that since she said it, it's gonna happen, no question. Hiring an adventurer for these events was the smart move because after everything that just happened, he was on edge, so he went and brought one in. This isn't some run-of-the-mill adventure, it's the kind that blows your mind because Celia can't believe a man actually killed a dragon. The man tells her that the dragon forged thing he handed her came from that adventurer, and he got it by striking the dragon down himself now after the kill. She can't believe that same adventurer actually defeated it. John blurts that 3 wicked boars fresh off an auction were shipped to the capital, and one of them even got snapped up by the Lord. Then this same adventurer walks in and crushes them all by himself. leaving the girl staring in disbelief, because this isn't just any hero, he's the one who already defeated the dragon. That's not even the worst of it. Some dark, blocky curse slipped into the city, and an adventurer cut it down, probably the very same one, and the girl is zeroing in on something. She leans in and asks her father the adventurer's name, and he answers without hesitation. The girl says his name out loud, and it clicks. He's the one and only person who can save this earth. Right then, Orc sneezes, rubs his nose, and swears someone must have been talking about him. Yet the people behind him insist, nope, wasn't us. And today, the Viscount's Reimer's hopes are pinned on one specific adventurer. The whole group sprawls on the ground, finally dropping into stillness, exhaustion crushing them flat. And it's been ages since the girl last moved like that. As the rear guard, all they've got to do is slap a layer of magic over them. Body enhancement magic is wild, but if they lean on it too hard, it's going to bite them. The protagonist proposes they take a breather to refill their mana, and the girl shoots back, so we're really continuing after this. It's better to train when your mana runs low so your brain locks it in, because the minimum mana you need to fire body enhancement. Magic works exactly the way people do when they realize they're almost out of money or food. They stop wasting it and start spending it smart. He rose up, declared he'd recovered, though he wasn't fully sure, but after a quick break, the fatigue vanished. And suddenly he had way too much energy. A laughs and claims, after all, I'm my brother's best student. And the girl blurts, so what does that have to do with anything? But somehow it might connect. She presses her for the meaning, and she snaps back that Jero's built like a tank since he's a warrior, but even that doesn't fix everything, because he's still stuck, still not moving freely, and his stamina hasn't bounced back yet. So he swears Lex did something for him. But the truth is, that guy never actually taught him a single thing. The protagonist snaps to a realization, demands that Jiro slam on body enhancement magic, and Jiro immediately agrees. But he notices the ticklish feeling creeping in, and the main character realizes that this guy has some kind of magic attribute. He figured Nina and the other magic users already had a clue, so if he tagged colorless mana with an attribute, it could snap into fire magic or wind magic. Body enhancement magic supercharges you from the inside by flooding your body with mana. It runs on colorless mana to crank your strength up. Jiro's body enhancement magic isn't fed by colorless mana. It carries a specific attribute, and the guy gives a straight-up yes, because this is the next stage of body enhancement magic, a fully enchanted attribute. They press him again about the enchanted attribute. Jiro says it sounds awesome, and the guy snaps, hold up, because after that he can't use it anymore. Jiro grins and boasts that he's super cool, but the girl snaps at him to stop sprinting ahead of her. The protagonist explains how Jiro shoved Norb's restoration magic into master body enhancement magic, and then Jiro sweeps in with all that nasty thorniness like it's nothing. It's only a theory, but since he understands that feeling so well, he might accidentally twist colorless mana into holy restoration magic. So yeah, the magic of restoration isn't powered by faith alone. His whole claim is just a theory, and she can't wrap her head around how this could even work. The guy's magic upgrade locks in as healing enhancement, a recovery type spell like how flame enhancement is its own fiery cousin. The girl asks, so there's one for every attribute, and the answer hits yep. In magic, there are 6 total: earth, water, fire, wind, light, and darkness. And on top of that, you can slap on built-made powers like lightning or ice, and even crank up defenses with perks that shrug off poison. So yeah, there are a bunch of different attributes, and that's the beauty of it. You can mix, match, and use them however you want. So if he keeps training, does that mean he'll unlock body enhancement magic with totally different attributes too? That's insanely cool. The guys push to keep training, but the truth hits hard. None of them has bounced back yet. If they don't speed up, he'll shoot past them and get super strong before anyone else. Then he'll take down the same giant monsters his brother did, but the girl insists that's impossible. Suddenly, a brutal tremor hits everyone, whips their heads forward and freezes in shock, and the main character jerks back, heart pounding, thinking, what kind of terrible omen is this? They all trail that guy, then they finally see it. A damned viper, a massive snake, coiled and deadly. She asks, am I too big? And then just casually admits she towers over the evil boars Lex fought earlier. They press him hard and ask what kind of monster it is, and he finally snaps, telling them it's a monster straight from the demon world. Yeah, but this monster has no business being here, so massive that even summoning magic can hardly contain the damage. But Jiro shrugs it off and snaps, we have to beat her. Then he tells the girl not to be a bore. They've mastered body enhancement magic, sure, but the main character still wouldn't tell you to try it. True to its name, this snake is cursed, and when it strikes, everyone is left staring in pure shock. Step too close and those fumes will maim you on contact. This monster they call the Night Killer. And that viper's a monster, big body, lightning fast strikes, and it's brutal even without the curse. The girl asks how they're supposed to take it down, but with only 3 of them able to use magic, they bolt back to the city to report to the guild. If it's a monster from the demon world, that's an A-rank job. No way regular adventurers can handle it, so he'll step in and stop it himself. The girl warns him he's about to be cursed, and this monster is shockingly fast for its size. She then presses what he plans to do with the curse because she isn't strong enough to wipe curses away yet. And even if he begs the high priest, getting the monster's curse removed will cost a fortune. He's about to shock the whole world by showing off how body enhancement magic can wreck people in a real, live fight. Light erupts around the guy, a holy power wraps his body tight, and he surges with holy enhancement. This attribute doesn't just crank up your power against evil creatures, it brings a whole lot more to the table. It can bounce curses right back, and the main character braces himself in front of a towering, massive snake. Then he rockets off of the ground, blasting straight toward her with both hands raised high. She lands right in his mouth and somehow, right on the spot, fixes where he's stuck. The main character declares it's over for them and hammers the snake from the inside with every ounce of strength. The snake shoots upward, and the main character panics like he launched it way too far, so Jiro whips around and tells the guy, "It's over!" This is exactly how everything kicks off when you truly master the magic of body enhancement. You stack insane attribute effects and rip through the enemy with ease. The guy tells Jiro that anyone who can cloak themselves in restoration magic will eventually reach the same heights he's at, and Jiro just stares back, asking, "Are you serious?" The girl whips around to Lex and says, "Guess what? Turns out the demon world monsters are gone now." But Lex doesn't buy it for a second. Cursed Viper is a massive, merciless beast wrong for summoning, and it's convinced there's a gate somewhere that leads straight into the demon world. Since he can't feel that cursed viper at first, he's convinced the gate is tucked away behind some kind of magical barrier. He's sure that gate has to be close by, so he's heading out to rip it apart, then grab what he can from the damned viper along the way. Jiro suddenly yells at the guy that he's amazing, and the girl snaps, telling him to stop because his shout just scared her. I can't help it, this massive monster just pops up out of nowhere, and bro straight up wipes him out like a legend. He's seriously that cool, like a hero ripped straight from the stories. Jiro dreams of fighting just like his brother, and one day he's going to prove to everyone that he can. Suddenly the gyro starts rattling, and he can't even name what he's feeling. Then everyone else feels it too. One guy shoots his hand up and shouts that something's about to come crashing in. Everyone snaps their heads up, there's a winged silhouette looming overhead, and nobody has a clue who it is. A horned, winged demon looms upright and stares them down, watching the crowd freeze in terror as they try to make sense of what they're seeing. Suddenly he starts dropping in toward them, and the girl lunges to act. Then everyone realizes she can't move at all. Jiro gets hit with a question. Are those demons really the ones from the legend, and the girl swears they're real? So when the demon presses again, it finally clicks and understands the whole truth. While everyone else lasts forever, humans only get about 100 years at best. Magic stretches it another century, and when they finally banish those beings in the past, humans wipe them from history like they never existed. The evil demon sneers that they're a bunch of fools. How dare they forget their sworn enemies? The girl demands why he's doing all this, and the demon just cackles, mocking her for desperately wanting to save the wounded man because the reprieve is already over. Suddenly, he lunges ahead, grabs the room's attention, and screams that they're all doomed to die right here anyway. The girl spins toward Jiro, and his ears catch her voice. Then he steps straight in front of the demon, ready to strike. With body enhancement magic, he can dial in any speed he wants to smash the demon, but right as he lunges, the girl swoops in, grabs him, and rockets away as the demon blasts a black sphere at them. The demon taunts them like, "You think you can dodge that?" And then his strike snaps right toward Jara. He realizes it's a homing attack, and yeah, he's cooked. He figures, if it's really come to this, then I've got to try. Turns to Mina and begs her to blast him with her body enhancement magic. She's confused, but she nods and does it. He yanks her arm and shouts, "Hold on!" And she's so shocked she can't even figure out what he's doing. He flings the girl straight up into the sky, and she lets out a gut-punching scream while the demon just laughs. The demon blurts out that he's been sacrificing himself so his friends can get out, and the guy immediately rockets forward to attack, screaming at him not to underestimate his strength. The demon swears he'll kill Jiro before Jiro ever gets to him, so Jiro rips into him with one last strike before that fate catches up. The demon slams him with a spinning sphere, and the guy snaps his hands up to form a block. Still, he's getting slammed hard. The demon roars at him to finally vanish. He smirks and swears this is absolutely not true, then bursts forward without hesitation. The demon reels in shock, and the guy launches a brutal swing, snarling that he'll never be underestimated. Then he cracks the demon right in the face. The demon crashes down face first, and the guy yanks out his sword and steps in to finish him off. He rockets forward with a blood-curdling scream and lands the strike, charging straight at the demon, and leaving it with nothing it can do. Dust bursts along the impact as the guy fires off a question to the demon. How did it feel? The demon grins, then tells Norb that his plan totally worked. Then the girl peeks out from the tree, flashes a thumbs up, and smiles like she's fully in backing his word without a doubt. Yep. Jira saw Norbs had a plan all along. After Mina helped Meguri, he pulled a sneaky return sign, then secretly signaled again after tossing her. Norb understood the message, and when she saw him hurl himself straight into the demon's attack, it hit her. He was telling her to protect him with a spell, while that whole time the girl stayed hidden behind the tree, staring. So he pulled out the body enhancement magic his bro taught him, the Norb's defensive magic, and the faint elemental healing boost hiding in his spells, 3 safeguards in his corner. Then he charged straight at the demon, and somehow it all ends up okay. He drops onto the grass, staring at the sky, realizing his body is absolutely wrecked from everything. He gasps that he's still alive, then the demon crashes in out of nowhere, roaring insults straight at him. A demon roars at everyone, warning them not to get arrogant and act like they can actually win. He slaughtered them all, the demon launches another strike, and the guy's chest tightens in pure horror when he realizes he's still alive, and they're nowhere near strong enough to beat this monster. The demon laughs and calls their plan dumb, then swears he'll crush them so hard they'll be begging for death and begging for it fast. The guy grins and says he finally thinks they've grabbed enough time. Then the demon stares at him, utterly lost, and Jiro presses, "Did you even notice?" Right behind him, the one who'll make him beg to die right behind him. The main character is closing in fast and attacking. He slams the demon right in the back and it shrieks, then agony floods it right after his strike. The protagonist blurts out an apology for the late arrival and the gyro sensor grins, telling him to just let it all go. Everybody grins at the main character and he fires back, "Looks like I showed up just in time." After grabbing the cursed snake's corpse, Dread clawed at his gut, so he bolted back at full speed only to slam into a demon waiting there, the enemy of all mankind. He caught the moment and blasted him away, but this isn't over. He'll come back for sure because his heart won't stop worrying about his comrades. Nola and Mina are still standing even without mana, and Meguri looks like she's been healed already while Jiro's covered in wounds, wobbling on the edge and barely able to stay on his feet. He snaps to it, he's got to heal them before that demon comes back, so his hand flares with power, glowing bright as he unleashes advanced healing, and a radiant light aura wraps around him. Everyone stares at their bodies. Then they gasp as the wounds vanish like they were never there, and Jera rushes in to thank him, but the guy snaps, "Stay back, every one of you, behind me." He'll handle the demon, honestly. He wants to help tear it apart. But he refuses to be a weight on him, so he'll step back and let him handle it. The guy flashes a smile and tells them, "Don't worry," then asks everyone to trust him because he's going to take that demon down himself. The demon screeches that humans are pathetic, and that they have the nerve to do this without even understanding what it means. The main character fires off the question again, spits that he's been fooled by the very same losers, like that proves he's weaker than them, and the demon erupts in rage. He snarls at the protagonist to shut up, then fires off an attack with both hands at once. The main character shoots him down with full confidence, saying he won't let him wreck his world or bring chaos anywhere near it. Demon's signature move is Dark Flash, but when he uses it, he doesn't feel a single ounce of power. So is that supposed to mean he's nothing but a low-level demon? He watches like a hawk and then, yep, he realizes the black hole is still wrecking everything. He realizes it's a gate and it's screaming that it links their world to the demon realm, but the scariest part? This gate is even more dangerous than the demons behind it. That gate sits way too close to the city. He's got to smash the demon right now, rip the gate apart, and only then can he think through what's next. He's betting everything that if the demon is standing on the same level as the gate, he can wipe them both out in one deadly strike. He tells everyone to take things more seriously, draws his sword from the sheath, and boldly declares that it's finally time to start. The demon shrieks in pure rage, but the protagonist stays stone calm. He springs to his feet, activates the magic sword, and focuses all his power into it. Then the main character bursts in front of the demon and rips reality open with a space rupture, freezing the demon in terror before it erupts into screams from the attack. Reality gets torn open. Space itself rips apart because this magic doesn't care about the universe's rules and slices through everything in its way, shrugging off any magical or physical resistance like it's nothing. The protagonist sprints, thinking, "Man, it's been ages since I went all in with big-scale magic." And he's so relieved everything went perfectly, he throws up a quick wave and announces, "I'm done." All four stare at the protagonist. Stunned out of their minds, Jiro blurts that he remembers the time the guy bragged about his unimaginable strength. But this isn't even close to what he's capable of. The girl says killing that demon and shattering the gate took just one clean strike try. Telling that to anyone, and they'll laugh in your face, and the Confucian main character thinks the same. The guy demands to know what happened, and Elma tells him the reward for the green dragon and the evil boars is finally in his hands. So the main character grins because he's been waiting for this moment forever. The girl tells them that they even got a bonus for the evil boars from the feudal lord too. So yeah, their reward gets tallied up. Jiro grins and says Aniki's chasing riches, and he can't believe it either because the girl just sighs, points at that green dragon, and tells him not to underestimate monsters like it. She told them to head to the waiting room to grab their reward, and the guy asked, "Can we do it like we always do, but this time it's a huge payout?" So the smart move is handling it right there in the waiting room. Jiro snaps to the truth if he takes this route. He'll never find out what Eniki will get. Then the girl tells him, straight up, that even if he's Lex's closest friend, etiquette rules still bind him, and she taunts him by calling him the Dragon Slayer. The guy bursts into screams and begs everyone not to say the name because the group he invented ends up haunting him like his worst shame. Jiro isn't fighting him, and with the others standing there, the girl is shocked and demands answers again because they'll learn everything soon anyway, so she'd rather watch it all firsthand. Now Jiro's grinning because he knows them better than anyone. The girl nods along, smooths her hair like she's bracing herself, then waves them off and calls out for them to come in here. She swipes a key into the lock, kicks the door open, drags a massive heavy bag onto the table, and tells them this is their auction prize. The girl slides another tiny bag onto the table, and everyone leans in like, what's inside? Could it just be spare change? She claims it's the prize she earned for selling a green dragon and 3 evil boars straight up. 20 platinum coins in total. Gyro tells his partner that just 20 gold coins is nowhere near enough for everything. Then the girl shoots back, wait, what are you talking about? Because those aren't gold at all, they're platinum coins. The protagonist's mind snaps to platinum coins, and he realizes they're the exact kind you get when plain gold coins start feeling too complicated. These aren't just normal money, they're special. That girl magician corners Noel and grills him for the price of 1 platinum coin because she's trying to recall the exchange rate she once knew. She remembered it, blurted the truth to everyone. 1 platinum coin equals 10,000 gold coins, and the whole room went speechless at how wild that was. The prize is 20 platinum coins, meaning the total is around 200,000 gold coins. So the protagonist and everyone else stares in disbelief because that number is way beyond Gyro's wildest understanding. The girl grins and says that at the auction, they sold every single monster piece, eyes, bones, skin, organs, and even the core. Each one snapped up on its own, and the dragon parts weren't pricey at all, so almost all of it got turned into shiny gold coins. And just one dragon piece had everyone hooked. Participants snapped into vicious fights over it, and our main character can't stop thinking about what that says. The evil boars steamrolled through everything without a hitch. Then they got sold cleanly to the nobles. The guy snaps that it's still way too much money. The girl fires back that the feudal lord's reward takes the lion's share of the whole pile, and the main character presses one more time, demanding answers about the feudal lord. The prize money comes with a reward for wiping out a brutally dangerous monster, and the guy immediately asks about it because once a monster that strong crashes onto the feudal lord's land, whoever dares to kill it walks away with that matching bounty. The protagonist gets it, but even so, the feudal lord's transfer is absolutely massive. Turns out the feudal lord is the real deal. He genuinely cares about his people, and somehow decent nobility still exists then. He gladly takes the reward with a bright smile. Jiro leans in and tells him, "You're incredible," and says a normal D-rank adventurer couldn't even scrape together a fraction of it because somehow the guy is stunned too. Everyone already knows the prize is 20 platinum coins, and the money they've lined up here already covers an 8 commission. In that tiny bag, there are 18 platinum coins plus a bit of leftover change from the big bag. Together they add up to 4,000 gold. And the main character instantly gets exactly what that small part inside the larger stash really means. The girl says that huge pile of money can go straight into the guild's bank account, only for the guy to grin and say he already has a magic bag made for exactly that. If they ever set their sights on another big hunt, she pulls them aside and tells them to come to her guild with a catch no matter what. She'll still hand them a solid payday, and the girl even asks, straight up, if they're just in it to pocket the commission. She plays dumb about what she's talking, like she doesn't get it at all. And the main guy just nods like, yeah, of course we want that too, make big money, until his eyes snap to the biggest game of all. He suddenly recalls how he killed that snake, then leans in and asks if they've got anything he can sell. She realizes he's already snagged more fish, and she beams, saying, of course this is a fantastic chance to earn money. The guy gets it instantly. She's an insanely driven employee. The girl asks, if it's not a cursed monster, then why would it be dangerous? And the guy snaps back, because it's from the demon world, no, you can't just strip the curse off it. Don't stress once the cursed snake finally dies. Its curse stops cold. That curse works a lot like body-strengthening magic, just twisted with a cursed attribute. Kind of like how Gyro used healing while training. The girl blurts out, can I ask, did you just talk about a monster from the demon world? And the guy nods, yeah, revealing it when the demon dragged through the gate it summoned. She shrieks in sheer terror at the demon. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of reaction anyone with a pulse would have. The man perched behind the chair, fires questions at Celia, and she spills everything right down to that terrifying premonition. She says the prediction of that monster catastrophe is gone poof like it never happened. And she's grinning like she just won the biggest battle of her life. Both guys are left reeling by what she just said. Sure, yesterday her precognition still screamed disaster, but now that terrifying vision is gone for good. The man leans in and asks if this means Earth is finally safe, and she nods. Yes, everyone will live together in peace. He can't believe it. He bursts out laughing and shouts, this is amazing news. Just think, it all happened right after he hired that guy. John thought he'd nailed it. Then he swore the orc caught something in Melloward's words and wiped out the real cause behind the disaster. Yeah, a true dragon slayer earns his reward, so when an A-rank adventurer hears the Viscount's words and realizes something's off, he snaps and takes control himself. If he's doing all this, then he's got to be bumped straight up to S-rank. The girl stops them cold and tells them to wait. Then she swings into action and calls the authorities right now. Minutes later, Elma shoves a man through the door and snaps, demanding what the hell did she mean by an emergency. He stares straight ahead and demands to know who these kids are. and the girl snaps back that she'll finally explain everything right now. The girl tells Lex she runs the Adventure Guild, and if anything goes beyond her authority, she'll haul the guildmaster in. He's stunned. He can't believe he's the guildmaster and that some huge, important figure was really here. The man steps in and says he's happy to meet him, even if he's a bit Barkley. Lex blurts out, "It's mutual!" Then drops his name Lex, while everyone else hurries to introduce themselves too. The man beams as they meet, quizzing the girl about why she's come. Doesn't she know he's swamped with work? Elma shoots back, "So you're only busy drinking sake and playing cards." The guy's a former A-ranked venture, so based on his rank, let him keep working. And the main character can't stop fixating on that former A rank. Noelle leans in and whispers that if he wants to become a guildmaster, he'll need to reach at least A rank first, and when he hears that, the guy just laughs and says he's already incredible. Elm refuses to let the bad vibes ruin his mood. But lately the area has been hit with a cursed snake, and Barkley demands, "What is it now?" She finally admits it's a deadly, stinking rank monster from the demon world. Then it hits him fully and he gasps, asking about it again in pure shock. He demands to know how that demon world monster ended up here. Yells for her to rush an emergency request to the adventurers while the girl tells him to calm down because the snake's already been neutralized. The man gets it and tells them, "All right, then we've got to round up magicians and priests so we can figure out what this is." Barkley jerks back in shock and blurts out, "Is that really true?" And the girl just nods, saying, "Yeah, it is." They even confirm the demon world's gate and the demon itself, and the man stood there like, "What kind of demon is this? I didn't even know you existed." If it's connected to the demon world, they're telling him they have to report it to the government. She tells him the gate and the demon are already gone, and the guy freezes all over again, then blurts out, "So how did it end?" He tells Elma this isn't funny even for her, but he won't say it out loud because he's the guildmaster. Then the main character steps in and declares, "Yeah, it's all true." Gyro swears Lex never lies, and he's even ready to show you the carcass, so Barkley calls for the snake's body to be brought to the production department. Probably because it's some kind of mutated snake. This is what the production department looks like up close inside for the very first time, watching them butcher animal carcasses right there, step by brutal step. Oh. Barkley leans in and says only the top-tier teams get access to the production department because they can take down big game, so he orders the guy to lead them straight to the body. The guy swings the bag into view like, "Here it is," and the other man snaps back, "Yeah, that snake's way bigger." Right then, a monstrous snake carcass slams into sight, and the man stares in shock, demanding, "What the hell is that? Yeah, where'd he even get it from? That magic bag, right?" And sure, he's smart, but if it was lost, how did it end up in his hands? He doesn't get it at all, he's only brought it straight from home. In his village, everyone already has at least one of these, like, it's nothing, and that convenience is what blinds him. Now the man is staring at him, curious as hell about what kind of village this even is. The man gulps air, trying to steady his breathing, and when Elma repeats that it's all real, the truth finally clicks in his head. She was right. He demands why Elma didn't tell him sooner, but she insists she laid it all out right from the moment he took down the dragon, so the blame lands squarely on him for refusing to listen. The man asks, "You're the newbie who actually beat that dragon?" And the protagonist nods, "Yeah, that was me." Then he adds, "If you'd pushed harder, you'd have heard about Lex way earlier." She demands he go all in, and he fires back asking if she planned every bit of this from the start. Then he nods and fully agrees with her. If he'd solo sliced a dragon and now he'd dragged home a demon world monster's corpse too, then yeah, he'd have no choice but to believe it. Berkeley leans in and asks, "So you're Lex, right? The one who took down that demon?" Then he fires off, "Where are the remains of the gate?" The guy swallows hard and starts telling his story about the demon. He tossed the gate and the demon himself into another dimension, and the guy just stared, asking if he was really serious. Then he worried, "Is this going to cause trouble?" The demon man snapped back that if there's proof, he'll report it to the government and make them finally pay attention. Without solid proof, those top dogs won't believe a word. Nobles distrust anything that isn't backed up. And people love spinning lies just to pocket the cash he'd learned that the hard way in a past life. Jiro swore he saw it too. Lex ripped the demon in half with magic and then sucked it inside, and Minus just went, "Yep, that was real, and it was incredible." Megari swears the demon was dying to kill and that it planned to hang around here under the church's name. Noelle confirms every word, and the whole time the protagonist is left in total shock. They even hauled in the monster's body from the demon world, freeze it, hand it to the army, and boom, it'll light up the whole case. The guy starts apologizing for wrecking the evidence, but Berkeley just tells him, "Don't stress it." Berkeley insists the big takeaway is simple, nobody got hurt, and he knows everyone understands it, but he still can't say a word about what happened, because even the top brass is rattled by that demon incident. Jiro snaps, asking if this means Lex's hard-earned accomplishments were all for nothing. That's not fair, but Lex shrugs it off and says saving civilian lives matters more than anything. Barkley reassures them not to panic. he's still going to hand over the full reward and even pay them for the monster's body. And as the guildmaster, he slams them up to rank as true adventurers for wiping out that terrifying monster, leaving the protagonist completely stunned. Jiro praises him for being a B-rank adventurer. But yeah, truth is, after seeing him wipe the floor single-handedly, Jiro was already itching to promote him straight to A rank. But if some fresh rookie like him shot up ranks too fast, everyone would start side-eyeing him, so he'd push even higher right after he survived another brutal, dangerous quest. He's desperate to climb the ranks fast because once he's promoted, he can finally crash into that deadly territory. This is a danger zone. Low-ranked people can't even step into the guild sealed it off, so of course it's labeled dangerous. And there are 3 kinds only B rank and up can enter, then A rank and up, and the top-tier S rank area is for S rank and higher. Meguri snaps to attention and realizes he can't get into that zone unless he's at least B rank, so he immediately shoves Lex up to B rank just to open the door. He confirms that this place is dangerous, just like the name warns, but the payoff is so huge that the risk feels worth it. If they wipe out this area, they're basically walking into promotions. But there's one rare, brutal spot deep inside the zones they have to neutralize first because it's spreading and could become a real threat. And does anyone even know about the corrosive earths? Everybody's heard the rumors Jiro can't stop staring into the unknown, stunned that a place like that might even exist. The man swears there's a territory just beside the city and he can kick things off from there. Finish the job and the promotion will hit him officially right on the spot. Alma says they can just brush off the guildmaster's reckless claims and honestly, they're choosing to trust him anyway. But their strengths are just too massive to measure in public, so they'll stay quiet for now, still getting logged and tracked for evaluation. And the same goes for every talent that comes after. Honestly, he had no clue that deadly territory even existed yet. If he could still help somehow, he was ready to put himself to the test. The protagonist grins and says, "All right." Then they charge straight into dangerous territory. They step in and spot Ord being grilled. Is it true? And he just smirks, saying it proves he's got confidence to spare. Lex tells Org he finally beat the snake, and Org claps back that he needs to keep it up, like what's going on with Org, because he sounds weirdly happy. Org practically bursts with relief that Lex finally asked. Then he drags Lex to the spot where the animal's body is laid. Everyone keeps asking if it's some evil boar, but he hits it during a quest to wipe out monsters. That hit was brutal. Nothing could stand against his death blow, Lex says. It's straight up amazing. And honestly, he never expected anything less from him. Org claims he can take down a B-rank monster solo, swearing he's getting stronger by the day. Then his friend shoots back, "So it's your armor, huh?" Or yanks him in and snaps, "Shut up, luck's a skill too." And the main character can't help smiling, because having a friend you can mess around with. Like, that feels awesome. The main character shrugs off the gear as just a tool, and when he points out the monster was already beaten, Org backs him up saying he's right. He thinks their parents usually shield them, so catching one feels nearly impossible. Then he adds this weird tip: if you cook a baby boar's meat over the fire, it turns soft and tender. And the Org is absolutely wild. He actually tracked down the cub. He's so pumped, he can't wait to drink today's sake. A friend asks, "Aren't you going to the banquet tomorrow?" And he freezes, remembers, and snaps back that it's a big deal because when someone as high-ranking as him gets invited, the nobles don't dare miss it. And that's exactly what a real A-ranked adventurer does. The moment he realizes how amazing he is, he still hesitates invited to a banquet. He gets rattled and turns it down, but tonight he's getting absolutely drunk. Everyone packed into a tight crowd and Jiro's wailing went wild. He cried that without Lex, he'd be unbearably lonely while everyone nearby stared straight at him. Mina begs him to calm down since he's not a kid anymore, but he just can't get it. Then rage flares and he snaps. Lex is leaving. Doesn't she understand? Suddenly the guy lights up because he realizes they can just team up with Lex. Mina snaps back, "Don't be dumb, only F-rank adventurers can't enter the Forbidden Zone. That place is reserved for B-rankers and up." He gets indignant all over again. Then the girl smacks him on the head and snaps, "Stop whining." And it finally clicks for the main character. They really act just like brother and sister. The guy shrugs and says they just need to grind their rank up too. Noel snaps back that it's not nearly as easy as he thinks. They're just F-rank adventurers, so if they want to catch up, they've got to pull off something legendary, but the moment that guy says don't stress, he assures them they've already nailed the magic of body strengthening, and with more practice, they'll shoot up in power fast. Real strength never leans on talent alone, it's forged in pain. And if Jiro and those who dare to chase the dream of becoming Dragon Slayers keep pushing hard, they'll get their chance one day. Jiro leans in and grills the guy like, "Come on, do you really think you can get stronger?" The main character nods like he's 100 certain Jiro beams with relief and swears he'll catch up with him anyway. By the time he finally climbs to B rank, Mina's doubts are roaring in her chest because the guy will be waiting, and Lex is most likely already sitting pretty at S rank. So yeah, when we're talking about Lex, everyone pretty much agrees with that, but Lex can't help thinking they're hyping him way too high. Mina thanks him for teaching her magic and promises she'll train her hardest to master lightning magic. Then he grins and tells her she'll learn it in no time, and maybe even teach it back just as fast. Even if he feels lonely, he can always come back, and while he's gone, they push forward, climbing their ranks higher and higher. She swears nobody left could teach us magic better than the main character. Yep, because the local mages here only teach the basics, it's no surprise they're craving more power, so he asks if he can visit his home village. In his village, he keeps a magic textbook he wrote himself. Mina's shocked and begs to see it, but he shrugs and insists it's nothing special. He penned it for anyone chasing magic, convinced it could light a fire under them and get them moving. Mina says this village is fascinating, but the truth is, the magic in the textbook was only meant for kids, so I can't shake the feeling it won't help them much. No matter what, his village sits to the west, tucked behind a couple of mountains. Now he's ready to go, and he tells everyone to look after themselves as they crowd in front of him. Watching him take his leave, Elma tells him to be careful too, and explains that Orgo was summoned by the feudal lord, so he asks her to pass along his message. He's bummed he can't see Orgo off himself, but he still sends him off with the best wishes for a smooth journey. And yeah, the guildmaster wanted to see him too, but that man was buried in work so deep that Elmu's got the wild rumor going the guildmaster is scared of him. Jaira tells the guy, "Catch up, I'll pull up soon, just wait right there." And Minas cuts in with a quick goodbye before they part ways. Meguri demands souvenirs from him, and Noel shoots back, "Don't take my words as law, just be careful, okay?" People keep telling him, "Go on, pull off a surprise so everyone there can see each other again." And honestly, he'd rather linger here a little longer because this place feels so warm and snug like his home village. So yeah, he's an adventurer. And that life is basically non-stop chaos, and when he yells that they'll meet again and blasts off with the Windwing, everyone freezes, shocked as he rockets into the sky. Mina can't believe he can even pull off flight magic, so she blurts out, "Wait, are you really that good at it?" Then she explains, "I'm not even a mage, but I was still stunned by how unbelievable it is. People have been chasing the magic of flight for ages, but nobody can quite pull it off, at least not for real." Though there are whispers that the military and the government are still pushing the research behind closed doors. These days, hopping onto a monster's back is way easier, especially when it's ready to blast into the skies like Noel fought, and Lex is absolutely unstoppable, always pulling off wild, jaw-dropping stunts. Gyro yells that it's time to train, vows to go as hard as he possibly can to catch up to Lex, and then finally he'll be able to roll with him. Mina declares that training is the way, and she asks if he doesn't want to learn more about Laxi. Of course, he jumps in and agrees. The moment Lex brought up his home village, the whole room leaned in, eyes wide, hearts racing, dying to know what kind of place could have shaped a guy like him. Then it's settled. Mina declares they're heading straight for Lex's homeland. Noelle tells them that if it's all about the homeland, they'll find the truth behind his power. No matter what, once they start packing, they'll finally uncover the secret behind that insane power. Everyone screams and celebrates, then it hits them. Even the guildmaster is here, Mina blurts. "Wait, what are you doing here?" He figured it'd be rude to let him leave without seeing him off, but he's got no time. Plus, he needs a little screen time, so everyone knows Elma isn't some excuse to slack off. Now, Elma fires up the moment, shoves the guildmaster back toward work, and he grins, saying he's interested too. He snaps at them to spill every secret they uncover, and Elma cuts in. That's enough noise, back to work. In the Grand Palace, the man thanks Org for accepting the invitation, tells him to kick back, and orders him to enjoy the feast. Org nods along and swears the dishes look downright extravagant. Then he snatches a piece, bites into it, and his face lights up like, "Whoa, this is insanely delicious." Everyone's bunched around the table when the man drops off a bottle of wine. The Viscount gulps it down, then leans into Org and says, he heard they snagged another evil boar. Org swears it's true because the man just learned that the other one got beaten recently, and Org did it all by himself. Org says you need the right skills to take down a monster that big, but it was nothing compared to what he feared, so he actually won. If it had been bigger, it would have gone totally different. She tells him he can still wipe out a B-rank monster solo, and honestly, that's exactly what an A-rank adventurer is supposed to pull off. He insists he's not just modest, he's seriously talented, and he's thrilled to finally get the chance to know you better. With that kind of payout from the auction for the dragon and those evil boars, the reward has to be mind-blowing. So tell me, what reason is there to keep adventuring at all? How about answering the man's request and becoming a knight, then raising a glass of wine like you mean it? So my lord finally hit the real point. This man is a beast of a warrior, so skilled he could even take down a dragon. And if the knights had someone like that, the other nobles would fall right in line. If things get bad, Melord might even offer marriage just to buy his hire. And if it goes that far, Lady Celia is going to be heartbroken, so somebody better think fast about a different plan. He has no clue what kind of dragon they mean, so he freezes, staring at them like, wait, what? He brags about the dragon and the wicked boars he snagged at auction, then drops this debauched line like it's no big deal, but does he realize it's turned into a hot topic, even in the royal capital? The girl tells him, because of you, we got the dragon's heart, and the guy just can't grasp it. So the butler stops and starts thinking this man hears that the adventurer who wrecked the dragon and the evil boars lives right here in the city, and he's not picking a fight with him. He knows he shouldn't draw attention, but he also doesn't need to lie. The butler scoffs at the whole idea. Melorad said it best, he doesn't need to pretend he's stupid. But Org flat out tells them, that dragon wasn't mine, I didn't take it down. And the moment he says it, the room freezes in an awkward, heavy silence. It was him who finally crushed the evil boar, though it was his very first one, the man asks. Was it the sixth? And the boy shoots back, no. The man presses John for answers, and Celia jumps in too, demanding he explain what's going on. The guy starts wondering if they should explain what's happening, and the man in Celia stands up from the table. John lets out a shaky laugh and blurts that Org is just as skilled. So good he can crush the evil boar, then he admits he's thrilled. Mellard finally landed someone this talented, and the two of them immediately start yelling at John. The protagonist spots Hexy City and freezes in awe at how gorgeous it is, then charges straight toward it without a second thought. He's staring at this forest and realizing it's on a whole other scale, never once, not even across his past lives, has he seen anything like it? And now he can't stop asking, is there a forest even bigger than this? Suddenly he spots it. Magic made of fire and light pouring out of the adventurers who just stepped into the forest. He tells you this place is one of the deadliest territories out there. An entire forest teeming with demonic beasts. So yeah, this is a B rank zone. Just look at the name, the monsters are beast types, so he's got to land and rush through the gate because one move like that can totally blow minds. The protagonist stares forward, stunned because this is nothing like he expected, while the people on the street keep moving like everything's totally normal. This place feels way too lively for it to be empty. Maybe there are B-rank adventurers running around here, so whatever you do, hit up the local adventurers guild first. He cracks the door open with a creak, squints around, and decides this place is his new base, only to find a whole bunch of people already inside. I'd heard this guild doubled as a tavern, but seeing it in person, it felt like a whole different world. But hey, focus up right here, because over there on the notice board, he spots kids in the building. They look way too young for most adventurers, total rookies, just like him. He finally gets it quests stamped C or lower, aren't for the forest at all, they're just pure nonsense. He could stack a couple of easy rank C or D quests, but there are also jobs reserved for rank B and up, and honestly, this feels like the moment he should start there. Out of nowhere, someone steps up behind him and quizzes, "You know you can't take this quest with your rank, right?" He whips around, sees no one, and before he can even process it, they snap, "You hearing me?" Then clamp a grip on his shoulder. He whips around and spots a girl staring at him, and she blurts out, "I'm saying this to someone because there's nobody here but you." He's stunned by her beauty, blurts it out anyway, then quickly apologizes for how crude he came off. She flushes with heat, takes his apology and realizes he didn't do it to offend her at all. He was just throwing her a compliment, so she has nothing to be mad about. But then she blurts out, "No, wait, that's not what I meant." She explains how these quests tie straight into the demonic beast forest, where only B-rank adventurers can go, and tells him a newbie like him has to grab a quest that fits his skill. He insists, "I'm B-rank." Like he already told you, he's B-rank. He boosted that rank the other day, and now he's got permission to rush straight into the dangerous zones. She asks if he's really serious. He nods like there's no turning back, and right after that, her nerves start to scream. The girl blurts out, "I'm so sorry." But Lex the guy waves it off like it's nothing, saying everything's fine and that he's from Tege now. Can you figure out the girl's name? She blurts out her name, Laliara, and claims she's an adventurer who lives deep in the forest, crawling with demonic beasts. She asks if he came here for the demonic beast forest too, and he nods he'd just been promoted to rank. The guildmaster filled him in on the territory, so he rushed to the nearest city tied to it. Liliara knows every prep is already done, but the guy just can't grasp what he's even talking about. Judging by that reaction, nobody warned him what the forest of demonic beasts really is. So the boy blurts out, "Wait, isn't it just a forest full of monsters?" But nah, it's nothing like that. She tells him, "Listen up closely." Then the forest of demonic beasts hits where every single creature is a monster, and the guy's fear spikes immediately. Animals, bugs, and even trees turn into monsters. Nothing living there is what it seems, which is why it's called that. And it gets worse, monsters don't just hunt. They disguise themselves as forests, plants, and greenery, then strike like a slime that's waiting to pounce. That's why, if he wants to step into that forest, he's got to show up stocked with potions, antidotes, and those monster-made incense barriers too, because if he isn't ready, there'll be no time to loot. Only survive in a forest that's absolutely terrifying. That's why preparation matters, because if he has no companions, he'll be forced to team up with a company that already has a barrier maker, and once he realizes it, he goes, "Yeah, I'm in." She desperately hopes he got it all, and the main character freezes when she suddenly snaps at him. Then the truth hits. She's actually kind, and he exhales in relief. Her words came out sharp as knives, but you could tell it was just worry, and when he heard her out, he thanked her for everything she told him. Then she just shrugged and said, "You're honest, and that's why it matters." That's why he can actually listen to people, and it's exactly what put him on the map as a B-rank adventurer while he's still so young. The guys tell her she ignored their advice, so she had to learn everything the hard way right off her own skin, and she snaps back, screaming that it was a long time ago. She snaps that this is exactly why she despises shameless folks, yet somehow, They still look like best friends. Right there, she spots her very first B rank, almost her own age, and he leans in. Asking if she's won too, the girl shoots back with a solid yes. It feels wild knowing there's someone else around her age here because he gets it. And the scary part is that everyone around them is way older. Fate had already sealed the outcome. She offers him food with a bright smile, but he waves it off, saying he doesn't need her kindness. She presses him to take it as an apology, and when he hesitates, she finally nods and lets the moment land. Because the city sits right beside a deadly zone, traders flood in like hungry sharks, hunting rare materials that are only supposed to exist out there. And that's why adventurers are swamped with non-stop work. Now the protagonist finally gets it. Those tons of requests with rank B and below weren't random at all. Monsters sometimes crawl out of the forest, and wiping them out is a rank B quest so rare, in fact, that you almost never spot those requests on the notice board. The girl sizes him up his look and the way he talks and tells him he seems way younger than her, then asks, straight up, how old he is. He shoots back, yeah, I'm 15. Then the girl squints and goes, so you've only been adventuring for a year. And when the talk lands on the fact that he could reach rank B in just 12 months, she's staring like, no way you're seriously talented. The protagonist shuts him down, claiming it was probably just luck because luck is part of the skill too. Then the question hits, will he invite her to the next birthday? The guy just shrugs and says, that's a whole year away. The girl presses her question again, and Lex tells her next year he'll finally be 15, just barely. Everyone stares at them as the girl blurts out, asking if the coming-of-age ceremony was just recently and how long he's been an adventurer. He grins back. It's not even been a month. The girl starts shaking and snaps at him that he's nothing but a fake, then demands what he thinks she means and slams her fist into the table. She erupts, calling it disgusting, then slams the warning down, stay away from me and don't you come near me again. The protagonist asks what she's talking about. She storms off, and he's left standing there like a statue lost, wondering if he should chase after her and beg for forgiveness. But how do you apologize when you don't even know what you did wrong? One of the guys breaks into laughter and tells the newbie, don't be sad, because she's basically saying she can't stand people like him, rank hunters. The main character demands, who are you? And the man answers, Ivan, then proudly reveals he's an adventurer who lives right in this city. He thrusts out his hand, the handshake sparks an intro, and the protagonist leans in to ask what rank hunting even means. So if you tag along with some big shot party and they end up hauling him around just to farm EXP, he'll level up even while he's still weak. And yeah, that's exactly the game the Nobles kids pull. He just can't wrap his head around why anyone would do something like that. He gets it her feelings won't last in the forest anyway, and that hits him hard too. So he needs to snap out of it and start tackling quests he can actually handle with a clear head. The protagonist swears he was never part of any squad, he just stayed close while someone else handled that crew, never joining in. Then the guy gets it, and the protagonist admits he climbed up to B rank purely on his own skills. And the man nods like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. The man bursts into loud laughter and tells the guy flat out that there's no point in pretending anymore. So yeah, it's for his own good he's got to begin as an F rank. And owning up to his weakness is the kind of strength that hits hard. It's brutal that nobody believes him if this keeps going. He'll never pull off his plan to jump from city to city. So how is he even supposed to convince them? The man leans in and says, so how about it? He already has a fast way to show off his power. There's one quest that can turn it all around if he clears it. Even that frail look won't stop people from finally recognizing who he really is. This quest feels like a baptism of fire, and the main character realizes too late that he has absolutely no clue what he just signed up for. The man grabs the boy's attention and orders him to follow, then pushes him to prove his abilities right then and there. He's not totally sure what's going on yet, but if he can clear the misunderstanding by proving what he's capable of, everything will be okay because they're finally here at the place. This is the forest of demonic beasts. Everything in here is a monster, even the plants. They plant their own seeds to spread the woods, and that's why the nearby countries keep handing out the exact same quest. Those people are chopping down a plant-type monster, a mimic that pretends to be a tree, then snaps out and attacks you from behind, and it's insanely annoying. That non-stop mission hunting down those newcomers slams him with plant-fueled fights right at the entrance, and the whole place screams as tears hit the air. He'll carry that suffering in his bones until he's strong enough to rise, and that's the whole point of Baptism of Fire. In short, he has to throw everything he's got at these plant monsters, 10 of them, before they get the chance to overwhelm him. If he can't drop at least 10 in the forest, he's dead before a minute's up. He better be able to do it. They demand he use every last ounce of power to wipe out 10 plant-type monsters, because if he can't, the forest will swallow him whole in less than a minute. So the Eternal Quest is a training ground for beginners, and the man tells them, if you want to be an adventurer but your strength is weak, then stop wasting time, scrap by, earn experience, and level up fast. This whole quest is built to toughen up thieves and monks who barely have combat power because in this forest, even the rear guard has to throw down up close. And yeah, for a regular guy, that's downright brutal. The man tells him to go if he's got it all figured out, slaps a reassuring hand on his shoulder, says that there's nothing to fear because they'll step in if anything goes south. And the main character nods and agrees. The guys tell him, don't go too hard if it doesn't work out, that's fine. And yeah, they know he gets teased sometimes, but they still look out for him, probably because they think he's just a newbie. The protagonist glances around and realizes it looks like it's just Ivan's crew here, while the team they're up against is fighting nearby. He thinks he has to act now to dodge some nasty consequences, because in this forest, monsters and neighboring countries alike are all scrambling to stop it from growing. So yeah, no more holding back. The main character is going to torch everything here and burn it all to the ground. The protagonist unleashes hellfire and hurls it into a blazing fire circle, aiming it dead straight forward. Fire magic blasts scorching flames in a straight beam, and the heat is so brutal it can instantly strip the air of every last bit of oxygen. This magic fits them like a glove now. If they're not going for precise pinpoint damage, they just look around and spot everyone reeling and stunned. He fires off, "Isn't this enough?" then orders them to wait, snaps, "Stop," and demands, "So what was that all about?" It was straight up hellfire, so the man snapped, "What do you mean by simple?" Because that name alone was terrifying, but it turned out to be just magic. The kind people normally keep around the household. Then everyone erupts into celebration over this incredible newcomer, each one raising a glass of beer and toasting like crazy. One guy blurts, "Isn't it crazy that I can use magic like this?" And the other just nods because he saw it too. Then after all that time swinging his axe, the hero annihilates them in a blink. The protagonist claims, "You're overrating me, I'm nothing special." Then explains that in his village, this magic is only used to mow the grass. And the men still swear his house looks like it belongs in a demon's lair. If he's hanging with them but blanks on his own name and asks, the guy instantly tells him, it's Lex. The men brag that as long as they still have legs, they've got nothing to fear, and that soon they'll be free from working in that forest forever. They ask him straight up if it's really that dangerous there because the local monsters aren't just strong, they refuse to die, and even those trees are packed with water inside, so burning them is a nightmare. And because they're stacked with so many supplies, the market's flooded. No one's buying anymore, so barely any adventurers even dare to touch this quest. If nobody steps up, the forest just keeps swallowing more land. So, yeah, there are plenty of reasons it refuses to stop growing. Now that Lex is finally here, loaded with fire magic, whether they're raw wood or those creepy tree monsters, he'll turn them into ash in a blink. They're all sitting there, begging him to clear this forest to mow it down while the guys clap like he's a hero, but he snaps, "Stop, it hurts." Suddenly, the main character spots it. Liliara is heading straight for them again. She struts past that guy, smiling like she's savoring the moment. Then he realizes he has to fix this misunderstanding fast, and the man tells him to just calm down and stop worrying. If he hauls back the materials from the monsters he tore down in that forest, she'll finally believe his power is the real deal. Ivan's going all in, totally what you'd expect from him, because this mature adventurer has that calm, confident, stomping energy that makes you trust him instantly. The man yells for everyone to celebrate early, but the second you think about it, he's not exactly giving you a reason to trust him. The main character stands inside the house, realizing it's finally time to hit the beast forest while he's still stuck there, asking himself which demon he'll pick. Suddenly, a tall girl strides up and calls out, asking if he's really Lex. The guy insists he is, but who's even questioning him? The girl blurts out an apology for being rude. She bursts in and tells them, "I'm Marisha, assistant to the boss of the Hexy City Adventurers Guild." Lex thinks she's a big deal in the guild, so he strolls up, says, "Hello," and can't hide how thrilled he is. His name's Lex. He leaned in and asked what she needed from him. There's a task she wants his help with, so would he hear her out? The guy shoots a question about the task, right to the assistant guildmaster's order, and let me tell you, this one won't be easy. He doesn't think it's rude to say no without even hearing her out. And he tells her he's not promising anything yet. If everything feels right for her, then they'll finally get started. Mauritius insists he gets to decide whether to accept the request or not, after weighing every circumstance so the guild can't force him. Everyone stares at them, and the main character clocks it instantly, so he turns to the girl and asks what kind of task this is. Mauritius wastes no time. He tells him to get straight to work because he's demanding the forest's growth be stopped. And fast. She'd heard adventurers rave that he was a legendary fire mage. Stories even claimed he scorched part of the forest clear down to the ground with raw magic. She dispatched guild members to investigate, and when they came back, they swore the tales were real. Then they dropped the bombshell that a massive chunk of forest had been wiped out. Since he's already been baptized, he knows what's coming. So, in the middle of the forest, he asks if this is about how the forest keeps growing without ever stopping, and the girl nods back, yes. They're already teaming up with other countries to figure out a solution. But with those opponents churning out endless monsters, their strength just isn't enough to stop the forest from spreading. If that forest kept spreading at the same crazy pace, the day wasn't far off when it would choke down the whole city of Hexy, and they'd already braced for it. Then Lex burst in out of nowhere, and they practically exploded with joy like, this had to be manna from heaven. He stares at her like, what are you even talking about? She pushes him to use his magic and scorch the heart of the forest, and the bigger the area he burns, the bigger his reward. They'll hand him 1 silver coin for every square meter, and if he smashes that trap plant, they'll pay him 5 copper coins on top of it. He blurts out why she's being so generous, and the girl just smiles and says it'll save them time and effort because even a double reward doesn't come close to matching what she's offering. But the reward can't be huge, so instead of cash, they'll make up the gap by bumping his rank, meaning he'll climb the ladder instead of getting paid. The guy asks if there are any rules about torching the forest, and the girl bites back a grin, saying if he can do it, then he should burn the whole damn place. If the forest gets warped beyond recognition, they just write that whole patch off, and since it's got nothing worth mining, the monsters keep sowing fresh seeds there, twisting the land again and again until the forest keeps growing. The protagonist clocks one crucial thing. If that form gets even slightly warped, the adventurers will instantly lose interest, and yeah, it's dead on. If the forest stretches into a long snake, it could swallow the whole city, so he plans to torch it along the edges and stop it at the perimeter. If neighboring countries ask for it, they'll line up transportation too. Push hard to make sure the whole bill gets subsidized by the country, and the reward is seriously worth it. But he knows everything. Flips the moment they strip him of the freedom to act, he pictures himself swinging a plain sword, then wonders, if he takes this request, will he still be able to accept other quests? The girl grins and says, of course, when the forest gets burned off, I'll still take any other quests you want. When he even thinks about moving to another city, the girl snaps that he's free to go, then swears he'll only be healthy after he sets the forest on fire first. If he can treat it like any other quest during his adventure, then he'll take their request, and the girl breaks into a grateful thanks right after. Once he's raised the forest, make him report back to the staff, she'll snap to attention and instantly confirm the request is done down to the girl's size. The protagonist realizes he made the right call the moment he decided to listen in the first place. He's stuck in his head, weighing which request to accept until Ivan storms up and asks straight if he's taking the quest. The guy snaps back that he looks like trash, so what the hell happened? Ivan just looks worse, like he's had way too much. In the bee-steaming forest, the man peppers him with advice, and he charges ahead like nothing, no matter what plant-type monsters try to throw at him. He's completely stunned because aren't living creatures supposed to be people, not monsters? Still, here's the twist. These plant monsters can't move the longer he takes, so the more time he buys, the better it gets. If he thinks he's in danger, let him bail because anyone who can't read that moment gets himself killed. He'll be slipping in and out constantly, and he's got to learn to back up in time, every single time. The main character got it all in an instant, then shot the man a heartfelt thanks, even as the man urged the guy to look after himself. He's stuck thinking about monsters when bam, he spots a quest to wipe out forest wolves, a B-rank extermination job. The extermination target bolts out of the forest, slaughters livestock, then slips right back in. This standoff never gets solved, and in the end, the guy goes after him. Because he already wiped out every last pest in the village, they're calling him to do it. This is going to be his first quest in the Beast Demon Forest. A squad of soldiers marched out of the castle toward the forest, trading rumors about how solid their rest had been last night, checking in on each other's well-being as they went. And honestly, they all felt pretty great. Like for a cause like this, good sleep was absolutely possible. I even grinned and told them, thanks to the doctor, things are going great. And man, that felt amazing because now we were finally in the clear. Then boom, one of the soldiers' faces snapped into pure shock. Right in front of them, stretched erect forest branches snapped. Grass mangled, Ivan spun an axe over his shoulder and blurted, stunned, that the plants had been smashed to pieces. They couldn't make sense of it. Who could have done this, and why were they cut off so cleanly? Honestly, at first I even thought it might have been Lex. Then he stopped and told himself he couldn't because he was a magician, and he knew he'd just scorch everything in sight, and he had no idea why someone had chopped the branches on purpose. After they checked everything all the way through, it didn't matter anymore, so they shoved forward together, and the group pushed deeper along the path, weaving through the cut branches. In the deep forest, Lex decided it was time to launch his journey, slipping through the trees and chopping away every branch that stood in his way. When he looked at everything he'd left standing, he realized he couldn't underestimate them right then. A tree monster lunged at him. After he finally shrugged off the attack, he pushed forward because here's the trick. Don't waste time trying to beat them. Just neutralize the threat and keep moving. After a while, he barreled through the brush, snapping tree branches as he went. Then suddenly he stopped near the fence, sagged with a heavy breath, and admitted, I'm so tired. He wrestled with whether to follow Ivan's advice, but it felt pointless to run back and forth. Militia had already told him to do whatever he thought best, the way that suited him most. He pondered for a beat, then a brutal plan snapped into place. If every monster in the area lunged at once, the job would get way easier, so he shut his eyes and poured everything into his magic. He scanned the area and made sure nobody was close, then he roared that he'd set every tree ablaze. Everyone get out of here and hide now. A magic ball sparked into existence in his hand, and he realized too late that he'd already warned everyone and ordered the hellfire to roar. Then a blinding flash erupted, and the nearby vegetation instantly burst into raging flames. After a while, he stared out at the wasteland, where all that's left is smoke, and he decided the world was better like this. Now adventurers don't have to keep sprinting out of the forest just to catch their breath. And with a grin, that guy thinks it's perfect. He should take the exact same route to the city. Leaning by the fence, the guy grinned, waved his hand, and declared, "I'm done here." Then he bolted off to hunt for forest wolves. From the forest's darkest depths, a long, chilling howl tore through the air, and the boy snapped to attention. Knowing he'd finally arrived, he sprang up fast, then climbed to look around from high above. Hanging in the air, he scanned for the source of that sound then. Out of nowhere, he spotted a small village on the side, its gates torn wide open. Leaning in, he realized the little ones were wolves, and the big ones were adventurers holding the line to protect the village. Then he saw it for what it was, a full-on fight exploding right in front of him. The protagonist dropped to the ground, his landing blasted stones and dust everywhere, and the wolves that spotted him charged straight at his way. They closed in on him with a vicious growl, and when he spotted the howling wolf at the front, his stomach dropped. This one was the pack leader. Deal with him first, he told himself, and worry about the rest after. He yanked his sword free, locked eyes with the roaring beast charging at him, then lunged forward and swung clean, fast, and deadly as he finished the fight in one slick motion. When the others saw it, they wailed and backed off, terrified then. The boy sucked in his mana, blasted them with a spray of sparks, and those wolves actually trembled as pain tore through them. It was only a B-rank quest, but the forest wolves were C-rank, so they weren't scary on paper. Yet they slammed you in a pack, and the main character was staring down a huge number of defeated foes he'd have to handle next. With a calm flick, Hailing slid his sword back in and said they'd need it for a quest, so it had to be carried in perfect shape. And those tales were exactly what would fit the bill. While he quietly gathered them, a shout cut the air. Breathless adventurers from before sprinted up and demanded to know if he'd really wiped out the wolves. Lex snapped back that all he needed were forest wolves, so he launched into magic on the spot, and when the beasts showed up, everyone stared, stunned by his raw power. The woman told him that it was awesome how fast he handled them, and as he shoved the tail into his bag, the guy snapped back that it was all just nonsense. The adventurer couldn't stop praising his timing, saying it was awesome Lex was there, then grilled Lex on whether he was an B-rank adventurer. Lex nodded, proud and straightforward, admitting he'd only just earned the rank recently. The excited girl gushed that he was amazing, so young, yet so insanely talented, and he just scratched his head, blushing with embarrassment, because the main character had no idea what to say back. Then he blurted out jittery, "Did I mess up your work because they were hunting forest wolves, and what if that meant they were supposed to wipe them out?" The man grinned at him and said, "Don't sweat it. Our only job is to shield that pasture from every attack." The girl told them, "You've got to understand, tracking down forest wolves that bolt into the woods is brutal." Then she added, "But if we do our job right, you'll report back that you've managed to calm them." As they headed out, they waved at him and swore the villagers were finally safe, begging him not to fret, promising they'd never take credit for what he'd done. And the boy just burst into laughter back at them. With a sly little grin, he said his job was done now, it was time to head back. Staring at the photo pasted in front of her, Militia froze, words wouldn't come out, not even a whisper. One moment it was a forest, and the next a wide road stretched out in its place. She got the news on the spot. Lex had burned the forest. Then one of her subordinates shoved urgency into her ear and told her to hurry, because that's exactly why she was here. And when he finally told her about the road that had appeared in the ashes, his voice shook with raw emotion. It was so wide a whole cart could roll right through it. So the assistant snapped in shock, asking the girl who on earth could have pulled off something like that. She didn't hold back her feelings for a second, because deep down she knew only Lex could do something like that. Suddenly, they called the main character's name. He snapped his head around, panic rising, and demanded what happened. Malasha burst up to him, all eager eyes, asking if he'd managed to carve a new path through the forest. He answered in a steady voice that it was him, and told the adventurers they could head there safely. Even as her nerves screamed, the girl fought to stay calm long enough to thank him. At first she went stone-cold silent, then blurted shocked, almost shaking, that she'd demanded they tear up part of the forest around the perimeter, biting her thumb hard just to keep her emotions from spilling over. She slid up to the blushing guy and murmured, "We'll handle this later," flashing her job frame, and the main character stared back at her, totally baffled. She leaned in and spilled the real request, dropped where she was operating from, and promised she'd pay extra for it. Later, the main character showed up to report the job was done, and they told him he'd really tried hard. Then the guy smirked and said, "Today, I burned this whole patch of forest and paved a brand new road over it." He also snapped that someone had ordered him to wipe out the 6-armed monkey, and the girl shot back that she'd already studied every part of the monster, then said that about widening the road, the one running things would go check the spot. Then they'd hand him his reward plus a 24 gold arson fee. She'd toss in 30 silver coins too for today's job. And the protagonist shot her a thankful smile. The boy cracked his arms, bragged that he'd nailed it, then froze because all he could remember was setting the forest on fire like it was nothing. and that awesome luck somehow still felt like he'd missed something big. Then it hit him he'd completely forgotten to show Lilier the monster. He dropped to his knees, drained to the bone, and figured this was his only shot to set the misunderstanding straight. That's why he stepped up to obliterate the monster, grabbed the exact gear he needed, and got to work. He slumped and groaned that tomorrow he'd be stuck with a brand new assignment, then decided he needed food to shake off the gloom because all around him, people were shouting that everyone had to eat. Suddenly, Even grinned and waved him over, then slapped him on the shoulder and asked, loud and cheerful, if everything was all right. Lex said he was in agony, and the man boasted they'd raked in a fortune thanks to him, but the guy had no clue what he was even talking about. Ivan winked and said he'd already carved a trail through the forest, making everything we did way easier. And now, things finally started going our way. If things start getting dangerous, step out onto the road to catch your breath. Then dive right back into the forest. Now you've got room to roam, explore, and grab whatever loot you find. The sad guy burst into a shaky laugh and swore he was glad he could help, while the man just stared confused, trying to figure out what had happened to him and why he looked so downcast. Then she beamed, wrapped her arms around the guy, and told him the old man would give him advice after they ate first. Later, once they were seated at the table, Ivan leaned in and pressed him, so they still hadn't cleared up that whole misunderstanding. Lex admitted he couldn't pull it off that morning, so he planned to swing by with the loot that evening, but before he even realized it, he ended up handing the items over by mistake, and the guy just burst out laughing at the whole mess. The boy sobbed, begging him not to mock him, and the man immediately apologized. Then he waved it off, told him not to worry, and asked what would happen if he actually pulled it off, leaving the main character stunned. Ivan bragged that he was a famous adventurer in the city, and if he put his name on it, the girl would believe him for sure. Lex just couldn't help thinking he seemed like a genuinely good man. The man shot back that he was helping too, so there was no issue, and the men nodded hard like, yeah, that's right. He was finally relieved to clear up the misunderstanding. He said she was the one who got there late, and the sky had already turned pitch dark outside. Ivan pushed the idea of spending the night in the forest because as long as that barrier stayed up, they were safe. He told everyone not to fret, and promised they'd pull over on the main road at the square. Convenient, right? In just a couple of days, everything flipped suddenly. A man called them up and grilled them about whether they'd talked about Lilier. Ivan swore everything was right, and the adventurer snapped back, a couple days ago, I heard her say she was going deep into the forest. Then she vanished without a trace and never came back. Those words hit the protagonist like a punch to the gut, because once he steps into the forest, he learns he can only carry so much. And the deeper he goes, the more monsters swarm in, crashing right through the barrier. Ivan's voice cracked with worry as he warned that going deep into the forest was pure danger. Then Lex's eyes widened, realizing the girl was now in deadly trouble. The man admitted they'd pushed it a little too far and plunged straight into the deepest, darkest part of the forest where they finally spotted the zenzoi herb. Just as they were celebrating, the girl stormed up, stared them down, and demanded menacingly where they'd found it. Ivan stared in shock at the super rare herb they'd stumbled on. This thing was said to heal, and the protagonist immediately suspected it was the key ingredient for a top-tier medicine. He even said he never imagined that after they returned, the very next day a whole road would cut straight through the forest, and when he finished, his face dropped into a dark, grim look. He said the town is 2.5 days northeast on the road, but when they went looking, they didn't find any healing herbs, only brutal, way too strong monsters. So they spun around and headed back to places where the beasts were weaker. They pitched camp there first, then headed back. Lex leaned in and grilled Yvonne. Hapai, miss. How far is it? And he shot back. This stretch of forest is way off the road. It won't be easy to reach now. Then jabbed the spot on the map where they needed to go. Later, the protagonist pressed her, should we go look? And I snapped back, no, not now. The sky was already going dark, and if she was on her way back, we'd miss each other, and we'd both land in trouble. He warned them not to underestimate the beast demon forest because out there, everything is out to get you, and it's far more deadly at night than in the daylight. And yeah, the little girl and her team aren't rookies either. They're B-rank adventurers. They swore they wouldn't pull a single stupid stunt even if the worst struck them, because that's the curse carved into every adventurer's life. I even back up what they say. If they're hunting trouble, they'd better be ready for what comes next. So first protect yourself and move smart. He clenched his fists, knowing he'd have to bite the bullet and wait for dawn. Liliere was a B-rank adventurer, and she'd been doing this longer than he ever had, so he better play it smart. He chose to trust her. Ivan flashed a grin and offered, sure, we can join the search if you need us. Right after adding, don't expect it for free. They immediately started calling him petty, and Ivan shot back, we're professional mercenaries. Just as the tension spiked, knock knock, the door burst open, and there stood a line of exhausted people on the threshold, so the whole tavern went dead silent as everyone stared, stunned. Seeing how wrecked they were, everyone panicked and demanded to know what hit them. Then they started yelling for someone to throw healing magic at them. One of the guys passing by spilled the whole story once they threw up barriers and set camp. A pack of blade wolves came crashing in, and everyone panicked hard because those weren't just any monsters, they were a rank. This is what they're called, creatures that hurl razor-sharp bones that slice straight through their prey's flesh, and those bones are ridiculously tough on top of that. They swarm and hunt in packs. They couldn't stop wondering where it all went down, and the guy swore it was about a day's drive from here. Then the moment camp was set, they struck without warning. Everyone in town froze because it was way too close. No one had ever heard of monsters showing up in that area before. But then the guy leaned in and said, "Wait, it's not all." One of the monsters was black, and they'd never seen anything like it in their lives. The adventurer swore he was the one who coordinated the pack's moves, and they snapped back that it was probably a mutant, since its behavior was totally unlike any ordinary monster. People were whispering like crazy. Turns out that monster has mutated, and now hits as hard as rank S, and if that's true, they might just slap a special cleanup job on someone. Lex demanded answers, and I told him the truth. If we didn't clamp down on this fast, the city would pay the price. When monsters like these show up, the guild wastes no time. They hit you with a mission of absolute urgency. Once that quest gets announced, every rank C and below adventurer gets locked out of that territory, while only rank B and up are allowed to touch it because this job is so important. It's basically the top priority. We should plant her foot. Blare it to everyone? Our guild is rolling out a special cleansing mission. It's got two parts. First, the pack-led purge under the Black Wolf. Second, we guard the road to the Beast Demon Forest until the cleansing is finished. If those merchants dared to camp on the road and some pack tore into them, everyone would slam the door on that route forever. So the guild has to wipe out the monsters causing all this chaos. Ivan finally got it. They were proving this road was safe, and the girl declared that for every wolf they wiped out during the cleanup, they'd pocket 150 gold coins. They promised a reward of 600 gold coins for whoever took down the leader, and the crowd went wide-eyed at how massive it was because it was 1.5 times bigger than anything like this ever had been. I couldn't even stop thinking about how many there were. Then the main character looked totally lost, like he had no clue what the guy was talking about, and the man finally said the pack had around 50 individuals. Individually, they were nothing special. B-rank monsters, but with that many on the move, it was obvious they were setting the stage to crush the guild adventurers with one massive, coordinated raid. Turns out this pack is 10 times bigger than the evil boars because the A rank is assigned by numbers. So, just how brutal is this mutation? Bad news. The info they already have won't save them. Lex could tell that this mutated monster looked like the usual one, but its skills were completely different, and it was probably stronger than normal too, so they were walking into a losing fight. People erupted into loud shouts. "We've got to head to the square and wait for the departure." And right after, minds raced over another idea. Should they scout the forest from afar with magic? Ivan leaned in and demanded, "So what are we doing next?" And after they'd just wrapped the last job, everyone seemed to skip going, leaving the protagonist staring in total confusion. He said the pay was great, but chasing it just to grab more was pure greed, and even if they took the job, that cleanup wasn't going to wrap up fast, so they wouldn't run late if they left tomorrow. But right now, they had to rest. Ivan got exactly what he meant. Of course he did. He isn't lost in the moment. He knows where he stands. Still, he's worn out today, so it's smarter to listen in the morning than wait until night. Right then, the man being treated started begging anyone who'd listen to save Liliera, because she was still out there in the forest, trapped and alone. The boy's eyes went wide with horror at those words, and he blurted out as he rushed up to the man, "What's wrong with her?" He admitted he was hurt, and that she had pulled them off just long enough for him to slip away, and the protagonist froze, wondering whether the girls made it out in time. People started whispering that with how long it took to arrive, it was already game over too late. Yet if a barrier stone existed, then survival was still within reach. But the pack burst through anyway, so that meant everything was wide open and defenseless. The guy clenched his teeth hard, thinking about that misunderstanding they never really cleared up. Lex spun around like he'd been yanked by fate, ready to rush in and help her. I even told him to wait and not to sprint, because charging into the forest right now was pure danger. But all I saw in his eyes was panic, as he couldn't stop thinking about the girl. The man yanked him close, barked that even so, who in their right mind would wander off alone, and made it clear he understood just how massive that forest really was. Lex turned his face and snapped that he had no teammates, but the man jabbed at his own chest and insisted, and the boy just couldn't wrap his head around it. He blared that the little girl was protecting her comrades and got trapped in the forest, so if you spot her, please go with her. The crowd latched onto his words and burst into cheerful agreement. And before he could even breathe, they all decided it was time to head out, leaving the protagonist genuinely stunned by how fast they turned. The man declared, "Every adventurer is a comrade, nobody gets left behind when trouble hits." Then grinned, "And this is the perfect moment to stack some extra money. Plus, it's not even that hard to track down the baby." One of the men snapped at him, saying he wasn't cut out for speeches like that and demanding he shut it down, and right after, Everyone in the room geared up, grabbing their weapons and packing the supplies they'd need for the journey. When Lex saw that, his eyes nearly spilled with tears. Ivan then barked that they were moving out too, and ordered everyone to slam mana back into their bodies with a potion. Sure, some folks complained. It didn't taste great, but they snapped back, no time to be picky. The man downed the medicine, grimacing at the bitter taste, and just like that, they were all set to leave Lex headed out with them. As Ivan neared the forest, he ordered them to cut straight through and warned them to drop glowing crystals behind them so they'd never lose the way. Everyone was told to leave the monsters alone unless they stepped into their path. So the whole group swallowed the fear and marched out. That eerie light cut through the dark, and everyone stared, thinking, "Who? What is that?" Then a brutal roar ripped the air, and they knew it for sure, an ogre bear. Besides, they were a man and a woman, absolute tanks built from non-stop muscle, and their skin was so thick that even a battle axe couldn't break through. I even told the magician to cloak them with magic so they wouldn't have a second to react. She obeyed fast, but the main character snapped that with time running out, he'd handle it himself. Then he surged forward without warning. He lunged hard and shot straight at the two giant bears' faces, blasting up clouds of dust. Then the bears locked onto him with savage, furious glares. The main character hacked into the monsters one after another, swinging his blades in a vacuum while the beasts roared and tried to dodge, but every single attempt failed. Standing beside the fallen monsters, the hero declared, "That's it, I'm done," and told them to move on behind him. The adventurers hesitated, wondering if he'd even needed them in the first place. As the whole crew pressed deeper into the dark grove, they sprinted through the night, tearing apart every attacking monster they ran into, and Lex couldn't help asking if they always came this hard after dark. I told him, "Not always." It was the first time he'd ever felt pressure like this. It was probably a mutation. Then bam, a monkey-shaped monster screeched and lunged at him, but the main character hacked it to pieces, shocking the guy into silence. Ivan was right. The monster horde tore past every expectation, so he fired up his flames and blasted a path straight through them. I even yelled at him to push ahead. He fought it at first, but the man snapped that everything they did was only weighing him down and that he didn't have time to wait because they'd come in from the other side. Once they tracked down the baby, he told Lex to fire off a powerful spell into the sky, and if they'd found her sooner, the magician would have flashed the signal. With monsters everywhere, he figured it was smarter to split up and widen the search. Then he sprang up high and shouted that he was in. Then he unleashed hellfire. Everything around him erupted into brutal light, and Ivan froze in shock, mumbling that this guy really could have taken them down all by himself. The boy kept slinging his magic again and again, blasting monsters as he went, while sweat dripped, and he desperately wondered where the girl had disappeared to. Suddenly, a savage howl ripped out from the thicket. He spun toward it. Scanning for where it came from, he figured there were plenty in the pack, and if he tracked one of them, he could finally reach the girl. Suddenly, it hit him. What he'd found was only a piece of the pack, and they weren't just roaming, they were hunting something together. He shot toward the noise, sensing huge monsters closing in. Then he sensed one person nearby right now. The girl was crouched among the trees, covered in fresh wounds, and once he locked in, he finally pinpointed exactly where she was hiding. The adventurers couldn't make sense of it. Broken tools littered the ground. One archer lay badly hurt, and the girl realized the monsters had smashed right through the barrier. If the archers covering fire and the healers keeping the barrier up get wounded, they won't make it to the city. Even if they slipped away right now, the girl couldn't stop panicking. Someone had to stay alive, so she gripped the torch and started baiting the monsters with fire. She blurted at the others to grab this moment and bolt. She swore she'd catch up and they'd have to push ahead, even as they warned her they might not call for backup. She snorted, snapped her eyes down, and muttered to herself because reaching the city meant a full day there, and even if they bolted there and back, it still dragged into 2 days and she wasn't sure she could last that long. Then she just watched her comrades march off. But she doesn't get to drag them here by force and walk away clean. She'll pay for it, because she pulled the others into this mess just to chase her own goal. Staring down the monsters, she shrieked that she'd never give up her life until she found the grass. After that, she had no choice, just survive. She sprinted like her life depended on it, forcing herself to stay standing no matter what. But the monsters kept coming, slamming into her again and again, until her face contorted with raw, unstoppable pain. The girl finally crumpled to the ground, wiped out and unable to move another step. She stared at the walls closing in, trapped and surrounded, and felt like her story was over. The girl sat beside a tree, surrounded by monsters. With a wounded leg that wouldn't let her move, she couldn't run anymore. All her potions were already gone, and even healing wouldn't take. The girl cringed, choked back a sob, and begged everyone for forgiveness, while the black wolf beside her tore the silence with a furious howl. She just knew they'd fought so far, and now only a little bit remained. With a lifeless stare, she confessed she wanted to end it with her own hands, then realized her weapon was dead. And right as a monster closed in, it would rip her apart, and she still craved to become a real adventurer. Right then, the monster caught something. Then a blazing flash, like fireworks, burst overhead. The girl stared in pure shock, frozen by the question. Could monsters really pull a stunt like this? Then a voice snapped through the air, and a freezing spell guided icy spears straight toward their target. In the blink of an eye, a brutal hit slammed into every wolf. None of them could shake it off, and the girl's mouth flew open in raw shock. She spotted a man closing in fast, and it was Lex, stepping forward with an outstretched hand and telling her he'd come to save her, making her face light up instantly. She stared at him, stunned, as he inspected her and said she was badly hurt. Then he seized her hands and poured ancient healing magic into her. The girl's breathing steadied, and her face finally looked at peace as the wounds faded away. The guy, now totally calm, promised he'd be done fast, then told her to wait inside. Then he slammed down a reinforced barrier, and a protective dome snapped around the girl like a shield, yet she couldn't even figure out why he was saving her. The boy thumped his own chest and declared that every adventurer was, in a way, a comrade. Helping each other just came naturally. Then he spun off, laughing, and grinned to himself that he sounded exactly like Ivan. He strode straight into the snarling monsters and barked for them to get ready, because they hadn't marched out of their territory willingly. Someone was steering them. And the true threat was the pack leader calling the shots. Take that one down and he'd be facing the main monster hiding behind the rest. He leaned in and studied the mutated monster. This thing screamed doom. He refused to believe it, spawned on its own because in every past life he'd lived, creatures like this never existed. Lex already figured these monsters were weak, and he thought simple skills were supposed to impress until this mutant refused to bow the way he expected. The guy had no clue what was happening. Then the leader suddenly let out a terrifying howl and he snapped into action, knowing thinking wasn't an option right now. A pack of monsters came crashing in, closing the distance fast, and the protagonist snapped that they'd chosen the girl on purpose because they thought it would leave him fighting on the back foot. He sneered at their naivety, snapped a magical barrier up around them, and that guy somehow dodged every single attack. They swarmed him from every single direction, and he juked, dodged, and struck back at the same time, every hit landing exactly where it mattered. Suddenly, one monster lunged right at the girl. Then the barrier smashed it so hard it literally twisted in mid-collision, and the girl just froze, staring in shock at what she'd witnessed. She couldn't even figure out how it happened. Then the guy said, "This barrier is the strongest defensive magic there is. And once she was inside, it would shove back every single attack those monsters threw at her." The girl couldn't believe it. How could this possibly be happening? Lex insisted everything was fine and swore he'd drive them away. She didn't need to panic, just stay put while the girl pressed him again, and another monster clawed and gnawed at her barrier. Liliara finally saw it. He actually does work. Then she warned the boy to watch out for the black one because it's nothing like the rest. The boy just smiled and told her, cool as ever, that he already knows everything. He'd convinced himself she still hated him, but then her face shifted, worry flooded her eyes for him. Yeah, there was that misunderstanding between them, yet deep down she was still a genuinely good person. The boy steadied his focus and snapped his gaze at the main monster, saying, "Our numbers are slipping fast. Isn't it about time you let me jump in myself?" Then the other wolves all turned, eyes on their leader. The top dog just growled again, and the whole pack surged forward to smash into him just like the boy feared. They were being controlled by that mutant. If that was true, fighting them was pointless, so he turned and charged straight at the leader. He lunged to stab him in the back, but the wolf whirled and drove a spike into his back instead, yanking the tension tight as the creature trembled. And the protagonist finally realized just how strong it was. Then the mutant slammed him with a brutal hit that nearly tore the protagonist apart, and with a rage-soaked swing he charged straight at the guy, while the girl shrieked, terrified of what was coming. Against all odds, the protagonist snatched the razor-cutting spike with his bare hands, stopping it mere centimeters from his face, his veins bulging as the edge hung there inches from disaster. The mutant snapped around in shock, and the girl followed. Clueless because he was staring at his own back where one of the spikes was missing. The wolf and Liliara both screamed in the exact same moment. His hand literally shook. He snapped that he'd poured his heart into forging that sword, so how could anyone break it? Rage darkened his face, and the girl could barely believe he was this furious over it. He tore toward the monster like a creeping black shadow, roaring that he'd pay for this, and the wolf's eyes went glassy with terror, actual tears streaming down. Frozen with shock, the girl just stared as the mutant got brutalized from the side tail tucked. The wolf scrambled to bolt past the boy, but he didn't let it live easy. He tore off his second spike, grabbed it in his hands, and swung for another vicious hit. With one move, he wiped the enemy out, then slid a little to the side of the fallen foe and bragged that his spike was brutally sharp. The last wolves bolted off the battlefield, and the boy swore they couldn't be chased. So he turned to the girl crouched behind that tree and told her, "Now you can come out." He rushed up and asked if she was okay, but the girl couldn't get a word out. Then he declared he'd already beaten their leader, and everyone scattered in a panic. He yanked the monster's head into view, and her courage shattered instantly. Then he reached out, told her it was late, and urged them both to go back. The girl stared at him with a heartbreak-struck face, and he couldn't figure out what was wrong or why she was looking at him like that. She screamed, demanding to know why he'd saved her, and he just answered, cool as ice, that adventurers help each other. Then she clenched her fist and snapped back, "I meant it like that." She kept wailing, demanding to know why he'd risk everything, and why he'd walked into the forest alone at night, only for him to try calming her by insisting he wasn't actually alone. But the girl ignored him and kept going, claiming she'd unloaded a whole pile of nasty words at him, calling him a fake and slamming him with insults. He dropped his eyes, told her everything was fine now, and urged her to calm down. Then he pulled her into a hug and told her, "When I heard you were in danger, I dropped everything and came running to save you." And that's when it all hit them at once. Only them all. Liliera opened her mouth to say something, but the guy cut her off fast, declaring that an adventurer never leaves friends behind or ignores trouble. Then gently stroked her head. He told her the great swordsman once said that a real man's job is to rescue a girl in trouble, and when she pushed back that he was just a legend, he leaned in and admitted he wanted to be just like that legendary adventurer. That's why he stormed in to save her when she sobbed and called him stupid. He just kept doing what he does, saving people and taking that legend at face value. But somehow, that's exactly what she wanted, a real adventurer, just like him. The protagonist froze when she said it, and he had no clue why she suddenly started crying mid-conversation. He spun around, panicked and clueless, unable to figure out how to comfort the girl sobbing her heart out. Then a voice snapped from behind, telling him it was his Lukey that made her cry, and somehow he made the girl cry. The guy snapped around, stunned, and I told him, "Looks like you saved the baby." But the other guy shook his head and said, "No, it doesn't." Then I pointed at her. She was right there, eyes brimming with tears. The first guy just stared back and insisted, "I didn't do anything." The protagonist couldn't figure out why they were there at all until Ivan said someone had witnessed him cast a signal spell, and that's exactly how they tracked them down. Rewritten line, but come on, the trail he carved out was impossible to miss, and that thunderous roar shook the whole area. They swore you could never lose him, because it was hot in every way. And even as they smirked at him, they were drenched in sweat. Then the guy finally clocked what was going on. Ivan told him they'd been watching for ages, and the guy's face instantly flared red. He threw his hands to his head. Mortified, Ivan leaned in and asked if he could just leave everything exactly as it was. And the guy repeated, shocked, as if he couldn't believe it. The girl kept sobbing like her heart would break. Then he turned to Shyly and asked if his comrades could pass on the elder's wisdom, teaching him magic strong enough to shut those tears down. They started slipping away calmly, telling everyone they could head back anytime, but exhaustion hit them hard as they seriously weighed whether to sleep here and move at dawn until the guide snapped, refusing to let them go. Ivan answered so calmly that it made everything feel wrong. He said the baby's comfort was being handed to him, and the protagonist froze in shock, stunned. He couldn't figure out why they'd do something like this to him. The man snapped back that he couldn't wait to rescue the princess, so he'd take full responsibility for escorting her while the boy just slumped in silence. Then it hit him, yeah, they were really walking out for good. He hadn't even checked with them whether that super barrier was safe inside still. He forced a grin, wished them good night, and blushed hard. He said the old men were pulling away so they wouldn't get in the young man's way. So the main character just stared in disbelief, begging them to stay while the girl kept breaking down in tears. By dawn, she was still crying, and he, dead drained, mentally wrecked, dragged them back to the city, where she finally conked out in his arms, worn out from every sob. All day, people strolled through the city, and our main guy sat down to lunch with a pretty girl smiling across from him, so he figured the girl's been found. The mix-ups are finally cleared, and suddenly his food tastes even better. Then, out of nowhere, someone asked if he could join them. It was Liliara when the guy told her, "Sure, come on in." She tried to join at lunchtime, but every seat was already taken. Then she snapped back that she wasn't here to snag a free spot. She slid over to the table and sat right across from him, then went silent. The worried guy leaned in, asking what was wrong, because if she kept freezing up, their food would turn cold. She blurted out, thrilled that he was right. Then the hot food hit her mouth. She stuck out her tongue and shouted that it was scorching, and the guy instantly clocked that she couldn't handle that kind of spice. He finally got it. That's why she kept waiting for it to cool down, and he'd messed up by rushing her. So he slid his finger to the side, asked for her okay, and the moment she nodded, he cast healing magic on her. He said it was fine now, and the embarrassed girl finally thanked him while the guys at the next table all went beet red, swearing it wasn't just hot. When it was that hot, you begged for something cold. He whipped his head around and just couldn't figure out why they were talking like that straight-up exaggeration in his eyes until the blushing girl stepped in and decided to strike up a conversation with him. With her hands full, she thanked him again, right for the magic of healing. And then she shifted right into yesterday's rescue. The guy brushed it off as no big deal, since they're both adventurers. But the girl wouldn't let it go. She lunged up, shrieked that they didn't even know each other for real, and snapped that she'd been rude to him, yet he still rushed in to help her. Then the night swallowed them in the Beast Demon's forest, where no adventurer goes past the first-class ones. This isn't some small thing. She clocked him as a total fake. The worst partner for the Avant Luiers, a guy who cheated his way up but still couldn't back it up. And she felt vindicated even though she had no clue what he could really do. The guy felt like that girl had poured pure hatred into the word, And he suspected she'd been hurt by people like that too, so he decided to ask her straight up if she'd been dealing with them. Tears stung her eyes as the guy's face snapped with horror. He knew he'd messed up the moment he brought up that topic. And the girl only shook her head, saying it was a long time ago. She told me she got played by men who swaggered in, calling themselves a rank adventurers, and they nearly cost her her life. Now her face tightened, tears clawing at the edge of her eyes. The protagonist was stunned that people like this even existed. And Liliera explained she was born in a village near the Beast Demon Forest. It wasn't exactly rich, but no one went without food or shelter. One day, she heard the real fear behind the adults' faces. Demons were supposed to crawl into the village, and the Adventurers Guild couldn't stop getting one request after another to wipe out the forest before it spread. But they kept wiping the outskirts of big cities clean, and not a single one made it to that village, sitting right on the edge while the adults watched the forest inch closer day after day, panic gnawing at them the whole time. They scraped up every last coin they had, fired off requests to the guild, and prayed it would slow the forest's advance. Lex's heart sank as he realized adventurers really did show up even in villages miles away from the city. Then the girl leaned in and said, "Rank B costs a fortune," but everyone dug in, pooled their money, and somehow scraped together the exact amount. They figured this would finally slow the forest's march. Everyone was celebrating, and she was smiling too, even if she was small and didn't get a single thing about it. That's how those days went. A brand new monster everyone had never seen before exploded onto the scene and raged through the village, leaving people bleeding. Then everyone scrambled to the neighboring village while her father got wiped out right in front of her. And she could barely choke back her tears as she tried to explain what happened. The last adults hauled themselves to the Adventurers Guild and begged them to smash the forest and wipe out the monsters, but the place went dead silent, like no one even heard them, and the boy couldn't make sense of it. The village got slammed by an A-rank monster, and even though they barely scraped together rewards that matched a B-rank request, the nightmare didn't stop. Lex just listened, heart heavy with sadness. After the monster struck, the townsfolk started falling ill overnight, and the doctor snapped that the poison was what was wrecking them. So many villagers were forced to quit work and helplessly watch their strength drain away. Her world shattered when she lost her father. And when her mother couldn't work anymore, she truly believed it was the end until those scoundrels showed up. They begged for help. Our village was getting torn apart by monsters they'd never even heard of. And then sickness started spreading too, and they claimed it to be easy because they were A-rank adventurers. The old man shot back that they couldn't hand over a rank A prize since rank B was all they'd go up to. Then the man nodded like he got it. The man begged them to keep this chat under wraps, saying this time they'd take the job for a B-rank reward as a one-time exception. And with tears streaming down his face, the old man choked out how kind they were because no second chance like this would ever come. They handed over the whole pile without blinking, maybe rushing out of pure instinct because everyone was desperate to believe things would work out for the best. But hope vanished by the next morning. Every adventurer was gone, money in their pockets, and the job left unfinished. They stormed into the guild, spilling the news that adventurers had just come to their village, asked to handle a monster, then snatched the reward and bolted, leaving them high and dry, so they demanded the guild finally give them at least some real help. But the girl leaned in and said she truly felt for them, then shut them down hard, saying the guild wasn't the one footing any job that wasn't in her hands, and the crowd instantly went pale, horrified by what she'd just said. Maybe those folks figured out nobody ever answered their plea? Maybe they weren't adventurers at all. Now the village is broke, jobless, and empty-handed, and they're left with no clue what to do next. At that moment, the girl caught bits of talk, realizing the so-called fake adventurers had swindled everyone. Luckily, they crashed in the next village, right where my mom's older sister lived, and she opened her door and took care of them like family. The girl is honestly grateful, and you can feel it in her every word. When she's grown into the future version of herself, she decides no excuses to cure her mother and save every last villager too. And yeah, she can't be brought back, but the rest is still salvageable, and they can still carve out a happy ending. So that's exactly why she decided to become an adventurer. He set out to earn cash for medicine, rebuild his strength, and rescue the village until he could finally call himself a real adventurer who could protect everyone. Lilia said the tale was a long one. Then she grabbed the boy's hands and thanked him for still being alive, glowing with pure joy. The blushing guy muttered that it wasn't worth overthinking, then caught her dazzling smile, and his answer tumbled out awkwardly. For a moment, both of them went shy because they were sitting there holding hands, and then the girl yanked her hands back fast, waved them like, "Sorry," with one hurt palm. He ripped out healing magic again, and it clicked. Those wounds came from his nails grinding into his own palm and from her squeezing her fist way too tight. But the girl couldn't even wrap her head around how it all went down. She apologized again, and you could tell he was probably stunned, like the past had grabbed her by the throat. The memories came back on their own, and she didn't even notice she was hurting herself. Then he finally realized that those memories weren't just haunting her, they were weighing her down, crushing her from the inside. He leaned in and demanded if it was true she'd dashed out for that herb just to get the medicine. And she nodded, saying it was the key ingredient they used to brew cures for the disease. That cursed sickness. Esther's name had wiped out the villagers, and when the girl spoke up, she said it wasn't magic at all. It was called Arza. The boy staggered from what he heard, realizing the herb really could help with the disease, but something still felt missing, like a puzzle piece he'd dropped. Then it hit him, and with his eyes going wide and his jaw hanging open, he finally understood. In a daze, the girl pressed him again, begging for answers, and the guy shot back that the sickness could be cured even without grass, yet Liliara couldn't wrap her head around how that was even possible. The boy blurted out that they had to move right now, then demanded where the village next to theirs even was. The girl snapped back that they'd have to skirt around the forest of beast demons and head southeast for 2 solid days. He told her it was good. She had to leave right now, and she couldn't believe it. Why now, when it was already noon? Because if they split now, they'd only crawl into the intermediate village by nightfall. With a cocky grin, the guy thrust his hand toward her and told her, "Don't worry," then pitched the idea of a journey, so they set off and slipped out of the city. She pressed him hard. Why were they heading out of town when the carts were right on the other side? He shrugged and said they wouldn't need them, so they'd leave together. But she snapped back that if that's the plan, the trip would chew up a whole week. He shot up his finger and told her, "Don't worry, we're flying." And the girl's eyes went wider than ever. Then the main character scooped her up in his arms and braced to launch. Once the boy unleashed the Windwing spell, they shot up over the city like they were being pulled by the sky itself. Up high, they could take in the whole settlement at once, and the girl stared in pure, blown-away amazement at what she was seeing. The girl snaps into panic and clamps her arms around him, and he, blissfully clueless, thinks how soft it feels and how good it smells. Then his thoughts spiraled and he snapped himself back to reality, saying he couldn't dwell on that stuff since they were crossing the forest by air. He needed her to lead the way. But the girl clamped her grip even tighter on his head and erupted, yelling that they were truly flying while the guy stayed cool and said it was just the magic of flight. And Liliara snapped back, insisting she wasn't talking about that at all. She panicked the second the world started moving, and the protagonist scrambled to explain again that they were flying because of magic, only for that explanation to hit her like a punch, and she broke down into tears. He blasts attack magic that wipes monsters out in an instant, throws up brutal barriers, even heals people, and on top of all that, he can fly. She couldn't stop wondering who he really was. Lex shrugged that he was only a B-rank adventurer, but the girl shrieked she didn't buy it. Then a blinding flash ripped the world open and they shot over the forest. After a while, they finally slammed down at the village entrance, and the girl lit up like, "This is unbelievable, we actually made it." With a grin, the main character told her, "We've got to go, let me treat your mom." The girl stared at him, shocked and not buying it, then asked again if he really could. He leaned in, dead confident. "I can..." And just like that, she grabbed his hand and they took off. She strode up to the wooden door, rapped hard, and declared, "This is my home," then pushed it open and the woman snapped, "Who's here at this hour?" But when she spotted the unexpected guest, joy exploded in her chest. She blurted out that Liliara hadn't shown up in ages while the girl beamed just as hard to see him. I told her she never saw this coming, that I knew she promised she wouldn't come back until she had a cure. Yet all these years, she'd only been sending money and letters. Then the girl looked me dead in the eye and said, straight-faced, that she'd found someone. The woman stared, then demanded to know, was she really serious? The girl nodded and said, "He's promising he'll cure everyone." The woman scoffed, saying there's no way a child could do something like that, and the girl just looked her in the eye. "I know he saved me, so yes, he's for real. He's a brutally skilled adventurer. He wiped out a whole pack of ferocious monsters all by himself. If he hadn't slammed in to save her, she'd be dead already. Yet she still doesn't trust a word he says." Then she burst into laughter and told her, "Looks can fool you." The smile vanished in an instant. Pure menace took over. She swung and smacked the girl on the head, spitting, "You're just awful." Lily clutched her head and cried that it hurt like hell, and the woman snapped at her not to whine. She told Lily to be grateful, because without her, she wouldn't feel a thing. He figured it was smarter to stay silent and mind his own business, because jumping in without thinking could drag you straight into trouble. She snapped her focus to him and told him it looked like her daughter had thrown him into nothing but chaos. Then the guy just grinned and said, "Don't worry, you shouldn't." She stepped forward and introduced herself as Alicia, and Lex answered by blurting out his own name. Then she bowed deep, thanking him like it mattered. That hit him like a punch to the gut then. With a heavy face, the woman told him she was truly thankful for how he'd protected their girl. He gave her a quick thumbs up, insisting there was nothing wrong with it. She was his guildmate after all. Alicia leaned in and asked, "Is that really true?" The guy asked if he could meet the girl's mother, and she told him that if it was really about Arza's disease, they could cure it without the herb. Then her face lit up as she remembered their earlier talk, realized she'd forgotten it, and without hesitation, she waved them inside. They stepped into a room packed with a tiny kitchen and scattered tools, and she immediately admitted it felt painfully cramped. She jabbed at the door and blurted that her mom was here, then demanded, "Call her. Tell her her daughter's back with her boyfriend." The boy and girl froze, cheeks burning with mortified embarrassment. Alicia cracked up and insisted she was only joking, then shoved them forward to enter. On the bed, Leah called out for her daughter, and Leah bolted toward her. The aunt told everyone to wait as she lit the lamp. Liliera slid beside her mother's bed, and all around her sat a chaos of baskets and boxes, plus a little heater warming the room. He said nothing, just stared at everything like it was screaming secrets. And when Alicia admitted she felt awkward too, they didn't exactly have room to breathe anyway because the girl kept noticing her mother had lost weight again. Masha tightened her grip, clutching tight black spots smeared across the woman's face and hands. Then she demanded, "Who are you?" Alicia swallowed hard and said it was her younger sister and Liliara's mother, Mario. He figured, just by everything he saw, that she'd been battling the disease for ages she was wasting away. Drained of all life, and those pale purple blotches crawling across her skin screamed, "Arse disease," loud and clear. Once those spots crawl over her body, the monstrous poison swallows her whole. "She's dead. No ifs, no buts." Meryl snapped and asked if the guy was her daughter's lover, and the protagonist blushed hard all over again. He blurted, "That's not true, I'm her friend." And the girl snapped back by screaming, "He's just a friend!" He introduced himself and said Liliera had filled him in on everything. Then he stepped in to heal her, and the moment the woman heard those words, shock hit her like a punch. She cleared her throat, fired another question at him like she couldn't believe it, and insisted he was so kind, but the guy knew that didn't look like a seriously ill patient at all. It smelled like a performance meant for the audience. Anyone who catches this disease endures pain nonstop from the instant they're infected to the very last breath. And even so, she powers through and smiles like everything's okay right in front of her daughter. She spun toward him, tears spilling down her cheeks, begging him to cure her mother. Then the women just sank into a miserable silence. The protagonist told them to trust him, and with their go-ahead, he gently clasped her hands and unleashed the ancient's healing magic light flaring around them as it worked. The girl's face and the aunt's froze in shock at what they saw. Maria stared at her own hands, stunned, because the guy swore she was now completely healthy. He forged the healing of the ancients, an all-powerful spell from his past life when he was sick of hunting for brand-new cures and spells to stop the poisons and diseases. Monsters kept coughing up. Of course, that means it gulps way more mana than any other spell, but for a panacea, it's a price worth paying. Then the guy sucked in a breath, swore once more that the treatment worked, and every woman in the room stared at him with stunned, wide eyes. He couldn't even make sense of what was happening because all around him, everyone was trembling, and after a moment, cries ripped through the area, demanding to know if he really had done it all already. Later, the villagers swarmed outside, and the aunt, clutching a drink, pulled the boy in close, then asked him, "So, are you having fun?" She never once expected the little gift the girl brought would wipe out everyone's problems in the blink of an eye. Yet even now, she can't make herself believe it, because she watched it happen with her own eyes. The boy muttered something that barely even mattered then. At Liliera's and the others' urging, he stepped up to treat every villager who was sick. And at first, he got nothing but confused stares and hard, distrustful looks. But the moment they saw Mario fully healed, shock hit them all at once. Then trust rushed in like a wave, and joyful laughter erupted everywhere. The second he wrapped up the treatment, the former village chief burst in out of nowhere and announced they were throwing a feast like it was the whole point. The old man grinned and thanked him for saving their families. He rallied everyone to toast their mighty sleeping youth and to cheer Liliera for snagging a groom, and the boy just mumbled that her match was nothing but a misunderstanding. Everyone was buzzing about how huge the joy was. People were begging to celebrate it properly because they still couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that their family had made it back. Happy faces surrounded him then, out of nowhere. Who did they think? One of the kids finally stood up and walked on his own. Grandma admitted she didn't think she'd ever bounce back. It felt like a dream come true. And the guy couldn't stop staring, thinking, everyone's actually happy and it's amazing. As night swallowed the sky, Lexa asked Liliera if she could sit beside him, and turns out she'd been hunting for him for ages. Just like her mother sat down beside him, the girl said she'd come back home with her aunt because she'd only just fought her illness and finally recovered. He was sure he'd fully cured her, so he told himself she didn't need rest, but the truth hit hard. Her body still had to recover from the disease, and the girl thanked him again with a grateful heart. She burst out laughing and told him, "All I did was say thank you." He brushed it off, telling her not to worry, but she shook her head. "No way, you saved all the villagers and you saved my life too. I owe you everything." She told him, "You've done so much for me already that I can't possibly repay you." But she still insisted on rewarding him because if she didn't, it'd be unfair for him to keep showering her with gifts. In this era, real kindness still lives and breathes something he'd never even dared to dream in his past life. And now she came right up to him, closing the distance fast, asking, "What happened?" He jerked back and snapped that it wasn't like that at all. Then the girl burst into laughter and promised she'd come back for a little while. Under the night sky, they just sat there together. The old village elder swore it was still an honor to welcome their savior. then set a feast right in front of the main character while the grandmother insisted the meal was plain, she still urged him to dig in and eat more. He thanked her and shot back, "How are you feeling?" She flashed a shaky smile and said, "I'm fine thanks to you." And for a moment, it felt like that illness had never even shown up. The old man swore this was real joy. "Thanks to the master," he said, and the villagers had finally found their strength. Once they were able to work again, they wouldn't be a burden on the locals anymore. Lex fired the question again, and the man snapped back that locals didn't recognize them because they'd come from a totally different village before everything started. And if it weren't for that disease, this whole mess never would have happened. By the grace of the gods, they were allowed to stay here, but when all the working men fell sick, they couldn't make a decent living, and the whole village watched debts pile up on everyone. Because of him, everything flips everyone's back to work. The people who borrowed money start paying it back, and anyone staying with relatives finally starts earning for a home of their own. The guy asked about the house, and the old man snapped back that it's still wrong to waste the trust of the people you love, at least. That's what they swear. The old man and woman were set on staying right here until the end of their days, and the guy couldn't blame them. Everyone was finally healed, but their hearts still ached for a homeland they couldn't ever go back to. So Lex flashed a smile and decided to ask them something. A guy was cruising down the street when a girl barreled up beside him, demanding where he was headed. He shot back that he was going to the Beast Demon Forest, and the moment she heard it, she immediately said, "Then I'm coming with you." As she bolted into the distance, she begged him to wait just a little. Then a few minutes later, she came back, breathless, and apologized for keeping him waiting. She slipped into her combat suit and told them to move out. But the guy just shrugged and said there wasn't anything here that could help them. He said he just wanted to widen the road a little, then she stared at him, completely baffled. And he realized right then that Lil Yara didn't even know the road existed. Racing to the fence, he snapped, "Easier to show you," then stepped before the forest, scanned for anyone nearby, and unleashed Hellfire Wham! A blinding flash exploded through the trees. He waved at the girl from a distance and swore this was exactly how he'd carve a road straight through the forest, but the girl just couldn't quite follow what he was doing. He barked at her to never move past him, no matter what, because the danger ahead was brutal. And then she froze in terror, staring like she couldn't believe he could even wield hellfire. Later on, they were strolling down the road when the girl asked how far he planned to go. He shrugged and said it would take a while, telling her she could head back first. She shot back with fearless confidence, saying no because this forest is crawling with beast demons, and if they're going to take him by surprise, it won't be on her watch. She'll protect him until the monsters stop circling. The protagonist nodded along, promised her, "Then I'm counting on you." And the girl beamed like she'd just won, "Leave it to me." With a busted sword held up like a shield, the girl swore she'd use it to cover his back. Then both of them gasped when they realized exactly what had happened to her weapon. The girl went stone still. Lex muttered that it looked like something had shattered. Liliera snapped in outrage. The guy reckoned he probably broke it when he hauled her away from the wolves. The girl panicked, not knowing what to do next, so the guy thrust his sword into her hands. "Are you sure you don't mind?" she asked. He nodded like it didn't even matter, and she snapped back a grateful thank you. Blazing with embarrassment, she hurriedly blurted out that he could count on her again, and this time the guy shot back asking her to take care of him once more. The protagonist announced, "We're here," and the girl froze in shock because they'd stepped into her own village, and a brutal stretch of wrecked buildings slammed into view. She couldn't wrap her head around why they'd come at all. Then the guy shrugged and said the old headman had told him there was a village here where they used to live. Yet she still couldn't figure out why he'd shown up on purpose. He said it was only natural to dream about going back to their homeland because once everyone finally shook off their illnesses, the pull to go home hit them full force. He also figured he still had to pave the way. But right then, tears streamed down the girl's face as she fought to say what was on her mind until a terrifying roar ripped through the air and fear twisted her expression. The guy said it in a dead serious voice. He was sure he was close by, and the stunned girl instantly recognized that cry because it was exactly the same as back then. The protagonist asked her, "Is the monster here?" And the girl snapped, "Yeah, it's him. He raided our village, infected my mom, and tore everything apart." He snapped his head up and realized he'd just been caught. Venom Rex was here, a mutant that stomped into view like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, all jagged short front legs and a massive muzzle. True to its name, this dino-like monster wields a deadly poison, and it rockets across the battlefield on two legs, yet somehow, it was still him who slaughtered the most warriors. To stop this poison, you need either top-tier priest magic or a high-ranking antidote, and if you delay even a moment, the victim, just like this village, will start dropping sick. This monster is pure terror. Her face contorted, she saw he was still standing there, and she bolted forward to strike at once. Lex shouted for her to stop, but she snapped back that he had no business interfering. The guy smugly assumed she couldn't handle poison, and right then, jumping into that fight felt wildly reckless. He barked for her to hold still and promised he'd cast a poison protection spell on her. Only she ignored him and sprinted straight at the roaring monster. He shoved her into hiding, but she slipped past him. Then the guy lunged to block her, The monster's poison wasn't just in its claws, and it struck again, blasting fear straight into her heart. With a brutal roar, he lunged for another strike at her, but the protagonist snapped into motion, cutting him off and telling him to stop roaring. He leapt up into the air, landed right on the monster's back, and drove a kick into it, cracking off one of the Rex's spikes. The protagonist threw magic at the girl and told her he'd cast a detoxification spell, then she lit up and thanked him right back. And at this pace, she'll keep swinging recklessly at that monster. Someone's got to step in and teach her how to fight it. Even with a detox spell in his hands, he knew charging straight at that monster was suicide, so he rocketed forward anyway, fought back, and showed the exact way to beat it. And the thing kept shrieking. He told them the truth. Those needles were poisoned, hiding in his hands, his clawed front paws, and even his tail, so you can't fight him until you smash every last one, and right then his strike slammed the monster hard to the ground. Venom Rex lumbers on two legs, so if one gets shattered, he can't move anymore. And then the guy rips in with a brutal strike right into one of the monster's paws. Then you could spear it from far away, rain arrows with a bow, or blast it with magic to end it for good. That's the whole game plan for taking down this monster. With a grin, the guy wrapped up his explanation. The main character grinned and said, "If you fight smart, everything falls into place." The girl snapped her finger toward him, stunned, and demanded, "Where's the easy part?" Because every step ahead was brutally, painfully hard. The guy shot back that if the monster's packing poison, the smartest move is to shut it down fast, and the girl nodded, agreed, and said it was still best to end it quickly. He leaned in and asked if this was what she'd been fighting for all along, and when her face sank with disappointment, she marched straight toward the hissing monster and snatched the sword from her own grasp. Then she rammed it into him, and the protagonist screamed that he was still breathing, so she pounded him again, because Liliera couldn't wrap her head around why it didn't feel like revenge at all. She kept pounding the monster until its growling finally died down. Then the guy stepped up to the heavily breathing girl and told her she'd done an amazing job. She thanked him again, and he waved it off, saying it wasn't worth dwelling on then. He urged them to hurry back and cheer the villagers up. The village elder couldn't even process it, and everyone else just stared in stunned silence because they finally recognized the exact same monster from before the old man. Then dropped the bombshell Rhodes had magically appeared in the forest, and that monster was already beaten. The protagonist declared that Liliera was the one who crushed the monster that wrecked their lives. Then she glanced down, shook her head, and whispered, "No, it wasn't me." And he grinned and added, "If you sell the monster parts, you'll have the money to rebuild the village." The villagers froze, then blurted, "Wait, is that really true?" Stuck for words, the guy shot the girl a look, and when he finally answered, he told her it was her idea to heal people, then come back to the village, and the cash from selling monster parts would patch up the village. Then she finally understood that was why he'd handed her the job of finishing him off. The guy just laughed back. If he'd wrapped it up and walked away from the reward, it would have looked like some arrogant stranger handing out pity. But Liliera isn't like that at all. She pushed to return to the village and finish the monster off. With that hard-earned money in hand, she kicked off the restoration work, and then she looked at him like, "How am I even supposed to thank you?" But once again, the guy waved it off, saying it wasn't worth all the praise because honestly, she had every right to claim that reward. The village chief told them straight, no matter how hard they rebuilt, they couldn't keep the place standing anymore, and even though he thanked the two, every time they tried, the village still got hemmed in by that roaring forest of beast demons. Soon, the forest will yank them back into the shadows because you can't predict when a monster like that will strike again, and they'll be forced to run from home all over. He flung his arms wide and declared he had a plan. Why not build a whole station town right here? The old man stared at him, shocked, and asked again. And the guy snapped back that the guild had kicked things off right now. They were building a highway to link the other villages to the city. Camping in field camps doesn't just wear you out, it crushes your spirit too. So if there were city stations inside the beast demon forest, everyone would rush there instead of building up their camps. The elder pressed them again. How in the world were they supposed to be trees from the forest of demonic beasts? And they shot back the truth. They've got zero money, so they can't even pay the guild to cut them down. Lex told them not to panic if they set up a safe spot deep in that dangerous forest to rest in peace. The guild would back them up too and help keep it protected. Skipping a brand new bus stop build will slash the budget, so just save and protect the one that's already there. The boy figured he'd need to fix the village before anything else, and to do that, he'd have to go straight to the Adventurers Guild. Since Marisha said she wanted to carve a road through the forest of demonic dawns, she'd probably jump on his plan, so he went door to door, asking the residents what they thought. He clenched his fist and demanded, "Do you want to live in our home village? One we'll rebuild." And at first, the villagers just went stone cold silent. One of the men blurted out that he wanted to. Then the rest immediately jumped on board, shouting that they wanted to live here again, refused to leave their village, and were desperate to tell their ancestors they'd finally come home. They cheered like crazy, yelling that they were finally going to live here together again when the guy grinned and told the girl it was awesome. He saw her downcast face and figured she was mad. Then boom, she snapped her head toward him. He thrust his hands out and shouted for her, and she flew into his arms, pouring out her gratitude. Yet he refused to believe it was starting up all over again. The villagers started urging her to hold on and not let him go, and the terrified boy's mind raced as he tried to figure out how they could stop him. The girl's mother couldn't help but wonder if she'd soon be a grandmother. While the guy snapped that they had to shut it down, stop their daughter first, then start cracking jokes. Meanwhile, the girl burst out with heartfelt thanks, and in the end he wrapped her in another hug so tight she started to cry. And then her eyes finally fluttered shut as she fell asleep. Local residents watched the young man leave, their hearts sinking, and they all knew they'd miss him like crazy. But he snapped back that he couldn't keep abusing the locals' hospitality forever. And then he insisted they sit down with the guild representatives to talk through the chaos that just hit the station town. And yep, next on his plate was a huge duty. He had to report to the guild leadership that the dangerous mutant had been fully exterminated because he'd already wiped it out on the last mission. Auntie looked Lex in the eyes and begged him to stay a little longer because it wasn't just her and her sister who were grateful. It was literally every single villager. The grandfather's heart sank at the boy's departure because it was his own responsibility to pay off the debt that was still sitting there. Paid. Lex spoke with a warm smile to his new friends, telling them to drop the worry about any debt. Then he made it crystal clear that Grandpa and the whole community should never think about it again. Even with the locals showering him with real love that warmed his heart, he finally understood the truth no matter what. He was still an adventurer at his core, and he just couldn't stay put for long. Aching to roam and explore the world, the young man smirked to himself, savoring his own words as he bragged that his talking sorted the way a legend like Raggard did. That charming girl, right by his side, suddenly murmured that she'd soon do the same as her companion, then vanished to roam far beyond her homeland, and everyone there went wide-eyed because the boy was utterly stunned. Lex leaned in, eyes soft, and asked her gently but carefully if she was truly ready to hit the road again after barely making it home. After all, just recently, she'd finally stepped back onto her native land, found her loved ones again, and sank into her mother's arms to feel peace. She got trapped by fate, and it wasn't just her nerves getting wrecked. Her personal stuff was still stuck in Hexy. Her frantic rush back shattered her friendship with them so hard she didn't even get a real goodbye. Besides the guilt she felt for fixing her old mistakes, she couldn't ignore the bigger truth she owed her companion with every breath. He stood there stunned, then blurted out his take. Why shouldn't the girl stay with her family now that her mother's health has improved so much? And as for his comrades, he pushed for them to meet in person and hear the truth behind why his girlfriend vanished. That night, pure maternal panic pushed her to take drastic steps because the mother couldn't stand the thought of her daughter's future. So she marched right up to the young man, fretting, and begged him honestly, straight from the heart, to go with her child on the journey. The young man leaned in, heard her cries, and asked carefully, like he couldn't afford to mess up if she truly felt ready to make a choice this big, that mother had been poisoning her daughter's mind with anxiety for years. Overcome with gratitude to fate for giving her back her health, she finally saw life in a whole new light, so when she looked at her own journey, she chose to let her daughter live freely, pick her own road, and learn the hard way if she had to. The caring sister swore she'd keep showing up to see her recovered relative and look after her, which gave the woman the peace to finally send her daughter off on a long journey, knowing her family would always be there to back her up when things got rough. Her mother slid a gentle hand onto her shoulder and asked for just one thing to let her daughter slip back to her parents' home sometimes, because more than anything, she wanted to unburden her from the responsibility that had been forced on her before and finally let her choose her own heart. With her doubts finally crushed and her mind made up, the woman hardened her resolve and handed the young traveler over to a trustworthy companion. She finally snapped into certainty, strode up to her beloved daughter, Liliera, and declared the news with a heavy heart he'd agreed to come with her on the road. The hero spotted that spark in the girl's eyes, gave her a bold nod, and urged them to jump into their journey right now, ready to smash the trials ahead and chase what's waiting for them. Lex froze when those alarming sounds blasted through the city streets, and the boy's mind raced as he scrambled to figure out what had kicked the whole neighborhood into chaos. The young man clenched his focus and roared at the villagers to protect themselves, then sucked in a deep breath and unleashed the wind's wings. Suddenly, that raw, crushing power surged upward and yanked everyone off the ground. The crowd gasped in stunned awe as the boy shot up into the air so fast it didn't feel real, and not a single person had ever witnessed anything like it. Everyone just froze, staring with mouths agape and eyes bulging in pure disbelief. The woman slapped her hands to her chest, stunned to the bone. Then she literally froze, unable to process what she was seeing. Her daughter screamed that no ordinary adventurer could pull off a miracle like that, let alone repeat it. With the residents gathered in front of him, the young man raised his hands in a heartfelt goodbye, then wished everyone nothing but happiness and a safe, successful journey. After that brutal long flight, the heroes touched down safely right in the middle of a packed city block. Bodies trembling from exhaustion, yet pure victory lit up every nerve like fire. Lex snapped his head toward his companion and swore he'd rush straight to the Adventurers Guild's central headquarters, reporting every detail about the full admission right away, while Liliera chimed in that she'd use the moment to go catch up with old friends. The girl slipped out of the city fast and silent, never telling a soul she was about to vanish on a long journey, and now her friends had no clue why she was gone. So loneliness and worry hit them hard as they feared for her safety. The heroes traded heartfelt goodbyes, swearing they'd link up again soon after a quick chat. The young ones split off, diving straight into the worries and duties waiting for them in the big city. The guild's secretary declared she'd summon the senior advisor any moment. Then someone shouted at the young man. Turns out it was Sam all along. He blurted, "Is it too late to show up this late?" Then practically shouted to everyone there that the new recruit had made it back. He demanded Lax tell him, did he run off with the girl, or did she turn him down, and the kid just couldn't figure out why this whole mess even started in the first place. Everyone knew the young man and woman had only just met a few days ago, but now people were already spinning wild romantic fantasies, hissing rumors, whispering behind hands and staring as they walked off together into the sunset. Roman wasn't there then. The senior guild advisor faced Lex with a bright smile, warmly welcomed him, and rushed out a sincere apology for making him wait. She told the young man he was perfectly healthy, and the boy standing right in front of her was ready to spill everything about his deadly fight. But she cut him off, told him to wait before reporting it, and pulled him along to the reception room first. The young man dropped the mutant onto the table, then reached for a special blade meant to melt it down and forge it into a sword. Lex demanded the guild's senior advisor hand over the blade, and she agreed, then ordered him to follow her straight to the reception room. The woman couldn't stop asking why that boy even showed up. Then it hit her. He'd come to report the recent killing of a terrifying monster and hash out the details with her. This deal looked ridiculously tempting for the guild, but once you dug into it, problem after problem slammed the brakes. The guild jumps in to help them build a station town, but first they've got to pull together solid, trustworthy protection against nasty, beast-like monsters that won't back down. When a foe closes in with a mobile monster right by the city walls, they'll cut the creature down before it can wreak havoc. Then the guild can finally fire off the command to destroy it. The young man said it felt like a demon trap, and the woman nodded hard. If the monster stayed pinned to the village, they could set up protection with way less trouble. If there are only a few beast monsters, you can handle them with ease, but once the numbers blow past that limit, everything gets messy fast, and you'd need real, hardcore effort just to take them down. This cursed forest, where demon-like beasts stalk the shadows, is locked off to adventurers B rank and up, so only battle-hardened high rankers can push through its brutal trials and come out alive. But this plan is nowhere near doable, and it needs a serious overhaul to fit the real situation. The senior guild advisor leaned in and said, "The real magic of adventurers isn't their strength. It's how they stay light, never rooted anywhere, because once they've settled in, they can't possibly remain in the same town for long." The boy recalled how the legendary adventurer heroes were famous for never stopping their journeys. He pitched the idea to slap a protective barrier right over the whole station city. You can slap up a protective magic barrier and lock in the city's safety. Monster attacks won't stand a chance, and this plan won't trip you up. The woman flat out said that option wasn't possible, and Lex couldn't stop himself from digging into the real reason why. They're strapped for mana, so they can't slam up a proper barrier. Wait, the young man snaps back. The senior advisor got it wrong. All they need is to sketch a magic circle for an unbreakable barrier, so there'll be no need to lure monsters for protection anymore. She demanded to know what this unbreakable wall even was, because she'd never heard of anything like it in her entire life. The boy told him that the unbreakable barrier was powered by a special spell that never runs out, quietly drinking in mana from the world around it forever. That spell was meant to shield huge cities, and everyone treated it like no big deal until the advisor heard it and shouted, "No, this isn't ordinary at all. Absorbing power from the world itself lets someone defend themselves forever. An ancient magic no one remembered anymore." Lex got hooked on the idea of lost magic, and when he asked what it meant, the woman's outrage flared right before his eyes. She said the lost magic was once blazing through ancient civilizations, but now it's nearly vanished from memory, so rare and legendary it might as well be the same class as flight magic, the one the young man can use so freely. The boy leaned in and asked if the lost item they'd found earlier was tied to the lost magic because the master, back in Togai, had warned them about something just like it. The woman nodded, confirming those lost items really were forged in ancient times, and then she leaned in and asked the young man if he had any artifact like that. Lex shut down the whole exchange, refused to explain himself, and walked off, leaving the question hanging there unanswered. Either way, the spell behind that unbreakable barrier is officially gone for good. The woman demanded whether he could trigger the spell of the unbreakable barrier, and the moment he nodded yes, astonishment hit her hard. She gasped and demanded to know where he learned this magic, because even the Royal Laboratory's top specialist couldn't put it back together. The boy tossed the question out like it didn't matter. He kept going, promising that together they'd carve out a whole station city inside the demonic beast forest, protected by an unbreakable barrier. She leaned in, hungry to know exactly what it would take to forge an indestructible barrier. Then the young man said they'd need a set amount of special materials, and she immediately pushed for a sharper, detailed list of every single component. To draw a magic circle, you'll need special paints, a stack of gems, and a monster core. Monster cores are special crystalline minerals forged inside the bodies of insanely strong monsters, and as they grow, they cram enormous amounts of mana into one deadly stone. turning it into a blazing catalyst for powerful magical rituals and spells. She pointed out, with zero hesitation, that getting a core like this is brutal and trying to forge it out of thin air is flat out impossible without a powerful magical monster to help. If that young man had moved sooner, the guild might have snagged the needed core at a capital auction, but even then, their budget probably couldn't stomach the price. Out in the surrounding lands, you'd only find weak monsters, ones so pathetic they couldn't even grow the core they needed. The young man leaned in and promised her that the right crew would be found inside the mutant the delivery brought. Then a man burst in and shouted that a magic core had spilled out of the dead mutant. Like the boy predicted, the cannonball was already sitting there, waiting. Then the woman's mind reeled, wondering how he could have guessed it all ahead of time. The boy blurted, "Isn't it obvious strong monsters have cores?" And she shot back, "Nope, not obvious at all." Then the guild's senior advisor leaned in and asked what monsters he kept fighting, and the young man shrugged it off as nothing but his special, adventurous instinct. He pushed the conversation forward and asked, "Can we really use that mutant core to forge a protective barrier around the station town?" The woman snapped into action, racing to reach the guild leadership right now so they could lock in the next move. A few days later, with both the state and the Adventurers Guild throwing their weight behind it, they finally decided to turn the village of Lilirasun into a real booming station town. Marisha, right-hand senior advisor to the Adventurers Guild in Hexy City, held the kind of power that could swing every quest. The guild's subordinates rushed off and summoned the senior advisor, who met Lexan again, sure. She'd invited him before, but this time the meeting had a whole new, urgent reason. The woman instantly knew this wasn't ordinary. It had to be something rare and truly incredible. She stared in disbelief as they decided to cram the station town right in the middle of the demon beast forest. Yeah, she thinks it again something totally unbelievable, way beyond anything normal. That kind of solution was totally within reach, and the Adventurers Guild had been cooking up a very similar plan for ages. She replayed her own words how the guild had been chasing a project like this for ages. Yet they always fell short because they couldn't summon the mana energy it needed. Misha figured the boy was just spinning stories, so she assumed there'd be no real conversation between them. He had to get a magic stone, but those things cost a fortune, and everyone guards them like gold. She froze at the message from her subordinate. He'd confirmed there was a magic stone inside the monster they'd already killed. She just had to figure out who that mysterious boy was because he'd cracked the mystery of why a magic stone was inside the monster, and somehow he held the secrets of long-lost magic arts. With full confidence, Marisha could only spit out one truth. Messing with a kid like this was asking for trouble. That demonic beast forest they'd been silently watching for years got slowed down hard by the youth's move, and he even pulled off a huge feat, carving a real road straight through the thick wilderness. If the guild botches his pay or runs him into the ground, his temper could tip, and he'll vanish from their city, maybe even jump to a fresh settlement. And if it gets really bad, he'll pack up and emigrate to another country entirely. With that kind of strength in his bones, he's gonna crush it wherever he goes. With the power he's got and the future he's headed for, it's crystal clear. The guild's best move is to back the young hero's plan, not try to twist him into something that serves their own greed. So Marisha pushed with everything she had, determined to turn the boy's proposal into reality and open it up to the whole public. The young man gladly took the woman's help, and she made it crystal clear as long as he handled everything the plan needed with his own effort, she would have zero reason to say no. And if everything clicks, she could finally land the spot as the next guild leader, an earned reward for the drive and skills she's proven again and again. Lex lit up with hope for real cooperation, then politely stepped away with a warm goodbye. The woman leaned in and asked the boy straight up if he had a girlfriend. She just figured it was harmless to joke about it because the guy was charming, and it felt like the future was already lining up for him. That question was pointless, but Marisha's heart still screamed for one thing: reel that promising guy straight into her business. She strode up to him and tossed out a casual question. "Got anything urgent to handle, or are you booked?" The woman nudged the boy to grab dinner together. Then right in the middle of it, Lilira burst in, bright-eyed and practically glowing with curiosity. The girl demanded to know if the negotiations were finally done, and the young man grinned, then tipped his hat and walked away, bidding Marisha goodbye. It was the girl he'd saved just the other day, and now he was sitting with her at lunch laughing, talking like it was effortless, with this warm, cozy vibe hanging in the air. The women stared at the love-struck couple, then caught the truth she'd left her career behind, and they all quietly wondered if these two kids would ever make it to marriage, because losing that chance at real happiness hit them like a heartbreak. The very next day, the boys sprinted straight to the Adventurers Guild. The secretary spun toward the young man and declared, in an official voice, that his application to form a group had been approved. The girl met the young man's eyes with a gentle smile and said, "All right, now we've got to find the perfect name for the group." The boy thought Jiro-kun's pick for the Dragon Slayer team sounded straight-up legendary, but his nerves got the better of him, so he stayed silent, backed away from the group, and let the team sit there without an official name for now. He leaned in and asked the secretary if the group had to have a name, and she just smiled and said, "No, it's not required unless you want a catchy title to blast the team's fame everywhere faster." Most teams picked names because the rumors spread faster than lightning, But Lex wanted zero spotlight because he didn't think that flashy route was right for everyone. The boy locked eyes with the secretary and demanded, without hesitation, that she leave their team no questions, no name. And the girl simply nodded, already satisfied with the answer. Their application to form a team got approved just like that, and the plan was finally officially happening. Now, only teams of 2 or more could unlock special quests. Solo adventurers were left out in the cold. That young man demanded to know if the ban covered temporary teams, and the secretary said they usually could take those jobs unless the mission was a big one, in which case only battle-tested permanent squads were trusted. And just like that, the boys suddenly had way more missions to take on, and they wasted no time thanking the girl for every explanation and bit of help. The secretary flashed a bright hope for the boys' mission because their whole squad was stacked only with seasoned Class B adventurers. But the kid had only just earned rank B, so betting the whole team on 2 fighters felt wildly off. The weight of those skyrocketing expectations crushed down on Lexus's shoulders, but now they were finally official, a real, full-fledged team. A bunch of adventurers band together because they're ready to throw themselves in front of danger for each other, sharing hard-earned skills, teaching everything they know, and building their bond on trust and fierce friendship. They say even the legendary swordsman Rhaegar, staring down the brutal truth that no one can handle the whole world alone, forged loyal friends and with them at his side, he racked up feat after unforgettable feat. Liliara admitted it was her first time stepping into a seriously competitive team, and nerves were sparking in her chest. Then the boy leaned in, intrigued, and asked if her confession was really true. Ivan's sound blared out that the lady had finally run into her true match, the gentleman she'd been waiting for. The man admitted it was wild to watch them dig in their heels like that, so set on their own path, and he insisted that their urge to change wasn't random at all. She stood right beside the fresh face everyone had been whispering about, and somehow she owed that newcomer her life. The girl snapped back with furious indignation, shouting that she hadn't fallen for anyone at all and that none of it had ever happened. Lex had just saved her life and the whole village along with it, and she knew, deep in her bones, she'd owe him forever. Liliar dove into the team to clear her debt and pressed for a blunt, no holding back opinion from everyone. The guys heckle her, laughing that she didn't join the team to pay off a debt at all. She did it because she's secretly desperate to stay close to the hero. One of the men snapped that it was all pure speculation. Then she snapped back, furious and offended. The adventurers closed in on the newcomer and demanded he spill the real reason he joined their team. Of course he was ecstatic. This girl was his battle girlfriend, and every dangerous adventure they survived together made his heart race. That reply hit the group of adventurers like a thunderclap. Total shock, no warning, and absolute disbelief. Marisha teased the young man, asking if he actually liked all those girls who wouldn't let go, clinging to him and screaming for his attention. No matter what happened, he wouldn't back down. He was dead set on becoming a real adventurer. The guy begged Liliara-san to pour her whole heart into their journey together, and her face lit up with pure joy. She beamed like she couldn't wait for what was coming, and the young man, feeling that excitement, reached out and tugged her close, gripping her hand tight like he wasn't letting go. They shot each other inspiring looks, then sprinted toward adventure, itching to dive headfirst into a brand new world packed with fresh challenges and mind-blowing discoveries. The young man waved Liliella over, calling her name like it was an order. The girl hurled her spear like lightning, and it nailed the target dead on. Then the wolf crumpled to the ground after that brutal hit. The girl's side flowed on its own, and she soaked in pride and sweet satisfaction like it was pure victory. Liliero blinked at how terrifyingly sharp that blade was when it slashed toward her. And just as the boys shouted that they were about to be attacked again, he still tore through the wolf in a flash. They spun around, and there it was, a pack of wolves, hungry as hell, spilling out of the dark like gray shadows, closing the circle tighter and tighter. A little earlier, on one of Hexy's streets, a bunch of young travelers strolled ahead with bright smiles, chatting like they couldn't wait for what came next. The young man asked if his comrades would mind, but the girl was so locked on finding a cure for Alza that she never ended up with a permanent squad. So she broke away from her comrades once more and struck out on her own. No one beside her, just one burning goal driving her forward, saving Alza. Lex shot back that everything was totally fine, like nothing had just happened. Instead of going solo, the young man rallied his own crew and hunted for B-rank buddies to team up with. Then that girl finally gets to breathe easy, no more debt to repay. Today's team mission was to take down the Wolf's Blade on the highway after the boy just crushed the mutants. The terror still clung to everyone's lives. The young man figured that now the wolves had slipped free from the mutants, they'd be hunting for a whole new place to take over. Now she won't face this alone because everything changes from here. She totally missed the one thing that mattered, checking whether she had a weapon. Liliera lost her weapon on the spot right after the hack as the mutant attack erupted. She had to grab a whole new weapon, there was no other way. The girl pushed into the store and immediately demanded, "Is anyone in here?" Every one of those so-called samples fell short when real battles started, and the Master Gordov's weapons from the city of Togay blew them away with ironclad reliability and brutal efficiency. He refused to compromise because that weapon's quality mattered. and he'd rather forge it himself than settle for anything less. He stormed into the shop and straight up headed for the blacksmith. Lex burst out saying he wanted to forge his own weapons and run his own rental workshop, leaving the guy working there stunned. You threw your gratitude their way and promised them the wolf blade right up for grabs for 100 gold coins as a reward. The blacksmith froze in stunned disbelief, eyes wide as he stared at the wildly generous gift. The man told the young guy he could stay in the workshop for as long as he wanted, and the kid thanked the owner with all his heart while the girl stared at Lex, totally baffled, wondering why he still had to burn time in the forge. With the master's blessing in hand, Lexi started forging a brand new weapon right away, and his companion couldn't believe what he was seeing. He leaned in and asked if she'd started her life as a swordswoman, pointing out that she fought with a broken sword. She was forced to fight with a busted sword because she had no money. And yeah, still, that didn't make her any kind of skilled swordswoman. Liliera had to keep pumping money to her aunt, so she hunted down the cheapest swords she could find, grabbing plain, everyday blades simple to use and perfect for the job. The young man questioned the sense of fighting with cheap weapons, but he knew it would sharpen his instincts and combat skills fast, exactly what he needed to climb to the next rank, because there was no quick fix and swinging the wrong weapon could spell disaster. Lex pushed the girl's side to figure out the exact kind of weapon she needed. They picked up this massive two-handed sword only to realize it was so impossibly heavy that she couldn't physically haul it on her own. Next up was the bow test, but it totally collapsed, crushing every hope and delivering nothing that anyone wanted. Next, they swung a heavy mace too, but even that brute force failed to meet what the girls demanded. The girl sank into despair, convinced there wasn't a single weapon type that could ever fit her. Then the young man leaned in and pushed, "Let's test the spear." She hoisted the spear like it weighed nothing, brimming with certainty this was exactly the weapon she needed. That spear ended up being way more convenient and way easier to handle than Liliara ever expected. With a spear, you can hit way harder than with a sword. Its long handle lets you keep your enemy back and line up your shots with deadly precision. He nodded along with the blacksmith and they kicked off making a spear. Right away, no delay, especially for the lady. The girl frowned and thought, going into all this is just asking for trouble. What I already bought should have been more than enough. She should have picked a weapon that fit her skills like a glove, not something she couldn't truly handle. The kid basically said, yeah, the whole "a real warrior can win with any weapon" thing is pure myth. Because garbage gear can wreck a fighter's power fast, once they made up their minds, they wasted no time and forged the weapons they needed right away. To forge a spearhead, you need a small but tough blade that can take the hit. The girl begged him not to burn those pricey materials on her weapon, and just give it a little time, but the young man refused to back down, going hard against her request. The killer plant's wood was carved into the body's core with brutal precision, and the young man sealed it all with a secret hardener he'd pulled from an ancient dragon's scales, turning the whole thing razor hard and nearly impossible to break. The boy mumbled something so confusing that Lil Ira had zero idea what he meant. And with a grin, he basically reassured her, relax, I'm not saying anything complicated at all. Then he coated the metal fittings with a special compound laced with venom from a rare poisonous viper, and the girl erupted in a scream, insisting this was priceless stuff she'd never even heard of, while the young man just stayed cool and said it was nothing special. The spear's design packed in special reinforcements to stay rock solid, resist bending, fight off rust, and keep the blade razor sharp. She didn't understand a single word, yet she could feel it. This weapon being forged was different, loaded with something special. At the same time, the young man finished the forging for good. Liliara's spear was finally ready, and the smiling boy urged the girl to grab the new weapon and use it with joy, then make sure she puts it through its paces. She hesitated to lay a finger on the new weapon, its beauty was stunning, but the power behind it felt terrifying, filling her with pure awe and sure, it isn't magic at work at all, it's just the top-tier materials and insane craftsmanship. With what he'd painstakingly learned and those rare ingredients nobody else could get, the boy forged magical weapons all by himself and packed each one with special powers that could totally swing the battle. She stared at his skills, totally stunned, and couldn't stop wondering who was he really. He claimed he was just an ordinary villager, or maybe an adventurer, and that whole idea made her stare in disbelief. She screamed that no regular adventurer could reach B rank in just a month, and there's no way someone with skills like that is ordinary. Rage surged inside her, flooding every inch of her body, and no matter how hard she tried to hold it back, irritation burst out in quick, sharp breaths. The boy practically short-circuited from her words. He froze on the spot, staring at the student with eyes blown wide, utterly lost. In his village, everyone was packed with mind-blowing skills like it wasn't normal at all, and the whole place hid secrets and wonders waiting to be uncovered. He fully believed that out there in the world, tons of people shared the same talents and the same chances as him. Lex shot the girl a stunned look and blurted, "Wait, what you're saying is actually true." The young man realized Liliela was the real deal, a self-taught master with not a single teacher in sight. They drilled into him that real independence means you can handle any task no matter how brutal by yourself. She had nobody, no teacher, no guide who could show her how to do this. The crew kept showing up again and again with the senior adventurers, training side by side and swapping battle stories like it was the ultimate school for survival. The boy finally got the truth behind Liliela's struggles. She'd never had a real teacher to teach the basics and the core skills, so she had to claw her way forward with nothing but grit, strength, and gut instinct. Self-study always tempts people to drift off the basics, and that's just heartbreaking. She's got real gifts and massive potential, but without the foundation, she can't show her true talent or reach the kind of success that actually matters. To the guy's own shock, he suddenly decided to become the girl's teacher, and as he tried to pass her the skills and knowledge she needed, she was stunned to realize their talks were exactly what made everything click. Because this news hit her like a total surprise. He explained why Liliela couldn't cast both restoration and strengthening magic at once, and the answer was brutal. Her old life as a swordswoman trained her magic to choose one path. To climb into the ranks of a true first-class adventurer, she had to master the magic, he explained. And get this, he even knew someone who could cast two magics at the same time and pull it off. The boy leaned in and begged her to trust him. He swore he'd help her crush every single difficulty that came her way. The girl locked eyes with the guy, inhaled like she was bracing for impact, and after a brief pause, she gave a slow, certain nod, ready to accept his help. The girl saw it instantly. If she copied the boy, she'd build real strength and swagger for sure. She caught on and slid in beside him, chasing bigger heights and finally proving what she was capable of. Liliola stared the young man down, voice steady as she declared she'd accept his offer and become his master. And with that single choice, her life kicked into a whole new era, packed with brutal challenges, wild opportunities, and the path that could finally forge her into true mastery. She grabbed his attention and begged him to teach her how to fight. He didn't hesitate, he said yes. And before long they forged a bond so strong it felt unreal. They became a deadly fighting team, then stepped into the teacher and student roles, pushing each other to grow while turning their days into something bigger, louder, and full of purpose. Seeing his student's success, the master's eyes lit up. He decided to forge a weapon of his own, and from the last rare materials he crafted a strange, beautifully designed sword with jaw-dropping craftsmanship and top-tier power. And with a brand-new, terrifyingly powerful blade in hand, Liliela strode out with pure confidence, ready to hunt her next adventure. This weapon didn't just boost her strength, it lit a fire in her soul, making her fearless and side by side with her teacher. They pushed into unknown lands, shattered every trial that stood in their way, and tore through enemies until they finally broke through. During the campaign, she clawed her way to confidence with her new weapon. Even while fear and doubt clawed at her at first, the power slipped through her hands, but little by little she got control until she swung it in fights like she'd been born to use it. With a seasoned master guiding her, the Venetian woman honed her spear fencing skills until every thrust looked effortless and fate itself seemed to have chosen her to rule this ancient art. Honestly, the guy just handed the girl what his friend had taught him. And that's it. No wow moments, no brand new ideas, just a real teacher who came off pretty average. This move was called Root Rukusosu, the Heavenly Dragon Emperor's technique. The girl grinned and said, the name sounded way too bulky and stuck up, like they were praising the tech way more than it deserved. Once they finally mastered the spear technique, they turned back toward home, feeling like the whole world had just leveled up because the journey paid off with fresh skills and memories they'd never forget. Even with a magical barrier sealing the forest off from the outside world, you still don't want to hang around because the real danger isn't what's coming in, it's what's already inside. So don't gamble with your life, get out before it's too late. The young man practically exploded with joy, shouting that they'd pulled it off, and then he vowed they were heading back right now. Their sights locked onto the mysterious heart of the demonic beast forest. Her face drained of color the moment she heard it, and she blurted out again. Was it really true that the journey's destination was the very heart of the demonic beast forest? The teacher's voice went stone cold as he swore their target was the very heart of the demon beast forest. The master broke it down. Skipping the heart of the demonic beast forest is way more profitable and practical because you can head straight from there to all the nearby cities and villages, letting the whole group reach their target faster while burning far less time and resources. Lex spilled that Mr. Ivan's stories lit a fire in him suddenly. He had to get to the center, drawn in by the romance and the wild spark of adventure. The girl swallowed hard, forced out a tiny nod, and admitted through shaky courage that they were marching straight into an insanely dangerous center. Her face went deathly pale, betraying the terror hammering in her chest as the test loomed. Lilial is blasted with the news he's forgotten to ask her opinion. Completely. She clung to him hard and blurted, "Why do we even have to fly up there? Why can't we just stay on the ground?" The master calmly told him that the new weapon was already tested, so there was no reason to slog on foot because once you take to the sky, you move way faster and cut out all that wasted time. Deep in the forest, there was a secret zone almost nobody was allowed to enter, But brave adventurers kept pushing in, charming their way past the guards with promises of glory and discoveries beyond imagination. Magvair's magical forest kept spreading, swallowing more and more land, while the people in nearby towns couldn't stop panicking and wondering what dark secrets were unfolding deep inside. Ivan Sans swore the adventurers were digging for the forest's real secret, convinced hidden treasure was lurking there, something so powerful, magical energy or pure wealth, that it could flip the fate of countless people. She couldn't stop worrying about how much longer she'd have to stay in the air. This flight was draining her body and her mind, and all she wanted was to reach her destination fast, collapse, and finally rest. He urged them to stop and catch their breath. This long flight had drained every last ounce of strength, and a quick rest would refill their energy for what came next. Lex locked in, pushing his poem forward, then a second later, a razor-thin ribbon of bright fire tore from his hand, lighting up the space with a gentle flicker as the flame danced with every breath, spilling cozy warmth and turning the whole area into a relaxing haven. Liliela let out a shaky sigh of relief the moment her boots hit solid ground, and a smile lit up her face. She'd finally earned that long-awaited rest after the brutal flight. And as the exhaustion drained away, calm comfort flooded in. The girl burst with real joy at finally standing on solid ground again, the place she loved and truly valued, and the boy had smartly set up a protective barrier around their camp, locking in safety if anything unexpected came their way. Even though lunch wasn't here yet, the young man insisted they take a break, freshen up, refill their strength, and shake off the heat of that brutal escape so they could keep going with their spirits still high. The young man unfurled a soft blanket on the grass, laid out a spread of treats with careful hands, and instantly turned the whole ground into a gorgeous, mouth-watering picnic, fresh fruits, and every delicious delicacy made just to make the day feel perfect. The students slid in beside him, eyes locked on the treat, pure amazement on their faces because that little bag somehow spilled out a crazy amount of food, and her eyes lit up with excitement, already picturing a snack that was both delicious and filling. The boy chuckled warmly and told him this magic bag was a total cheat, packed with way more inside than anyone would ever guess just by looking at it. After offering her a cup of hot tea and a mouth-watering lunch, the young man motioned for her to sit, then told her to kick back and enjoy the moment. He swore by it: hot tea plus a solid lunch is the fastest way to bounce back after a brutal trip, and all that physical grind warmth in your chest, good food in your belly, and suddenly you're fueled up and ready to push even harder. They sank into their seats and dug into the meal with real comfort, and Liliela thanked the young man from the bottom of her heart for all his care and attention, because this warm, peaceful rest left her feeling refreshed, calm, and ready to hit the road again. She admitted it felt amazing to have something warm in your hands on those brutal long trips. The young guy grinned and said, "It didn't take much, just a tiny spell to heat the water and cook the food, and yeah, it was those little tricks that turned the whole journey into something easier and way more comfortable." Yeah, he insisted spark magic is one of the go-to tricks for beginner magicians, because almost anyone can pop out a tiny spark strong enough to kickstart a fire. The girl said magicians guard their magic like gold, barely wasting it on everyday stuff like cooking or heating. Most days, they stick to old-school methods and save their spells for the moments that actually matter. The teacher stared in shock at the way he handled it, realizing those mana costs for such tiny spells were almost nothing. And that careful, stingy discipline was exactly why mages were famous for being so sharp with every scrap of magic. The master nodded like he was copying the pros and announced he'd start saving his mana from now on. Then the student grinned, saying it was way too soon for that because he still had more than enough energy to burn. Liliela leaned in and asked how long until they hit their destination, and Lex fired back that they were only about 2 hours away. Then he warned her the closer they got to the heart of the forest, the taller the trees would tower, making the place impossible to miss. Both members of the expedition couldn't stop wondering what was lurking at the heart of that forest. She burned with curiosity, and the master was hooked on the chance to crack an age-old mystery because the closer they got, the more the air itself buzzed with pure, trembling anticipation. After they stuffed themselves and recharged their strength, the heroes launched back into the air while the student groaned and reluctantly agreed because just the idea of another flight sparked instant irritation in her gut. Her legs buckled under her, and doubt chewed at her like fire, so she swallowed her fear and timidly begged the young man to hear her out. With her voice shaking, Liliela blurted that he must realize he was actually holding a real princess while heat crawled up her face from sheer embarrassment. Seeing her fired-up excitement, the guy tried to suggest another way to move her, but Liliela shut it down fast, refusing to budge until he stuck with the first plan. The young man caught the princess's feelings instantly and chose to leave everything exactly as it was, because getting to watch her from up close filled him with joy, soothed his heart, and lit real hope for what came next. Before long, they realized they were closing in on the heart of the forest right there. A massive monster of a tree towered ahead, impossible to miss, and every sign screamed that this huge trunk was exactly the center they'd been hunting. At last, they pushed into the forest's heart, the deepest, darkest part where the air felt alive. A colossal tree loomed ahead, its branches stretching for hundreds of meters like a natural monument, and a heavy, sacred silence hung in the air, packed with secrets from ancient times. That colossal tree, roughly 40 meters tall, towered like a legend, and the heroes stared in awe and respect after that. They decided to scout the area up close, smoothly descending and touching down just a short distance from the trunk. With a hard, focused breath, the master chanted the spell formula to trigger Prime Inferno, and when the one of his strongest spells flared to life, fiery magical power burst from his hands, blazing the room bright while a massive ring of protective symbols snapped into place around the group. The Prime Inferno spell was built to rip through forests on a massive scale. The girl made it crystal clear this magic is meant to wipe out trees, not monsters. And if anyone dares to use it on living beings, the fallout won't just be bad, it'll turn unpredictable and deadly. In his village back home, people used this magic the old-fashioned way, burning back the wild, unwanted weeds until thickets got wiped out fast and clean, clearing land for new fields and pastures. My dad told me that, back then, people had to farm the land with their own hands or lean on animals, no magic in sight. And only after magical science took off did powerful new spells show up to make clearing the fields way easier. He was so lost in thought that he barely noticed the world around him. Could those repeated blasts of a deadly spell have twisted his body and supercharged his power? Maybe that magic was exactly what forged his wild stamina and endurance. The master had always thought every village practiced magic in its own unique way, and he was starting to realize the real truth behind magic ran way deeper, far more tangled than he ever imagined. The forest's heart burst into view, one colossal tree stabbing higher than anyone could have imagined, and the heroes knew this moment mattered. So they pushed forward, slipping into the mysterious depths, where their next challenge hit exploring the central zone. Right then, something twitched nearby, and it wasn't prey, it was a killer plant usually stuck in place, but with bark so tough it could outlast metal. The killer plant's branches ended in razor-sharp leaves, and the second they felt even a tiny twitch or irritation, it ripped them off like blades flying straight at the enemy, so the heroes knew they'd better move through there with absolute bone-deep caution. The girl snapped that a clean win was nearly impossible. Those sharp leaves would catch anyone off guard, so she urged him to back away from the danger at once and save their strength for what came next. The young man flashed a confident grin and promised her, "With your special spear, we'll crush that monster for sure, because that weapon's built-in tricks made every threat fall fast," giving the whole crew an edge and letting them stride through deadly territory in total safety. Even with those metal hard leaves holding their own, everything flipped in an instant. Her eyes snapped to a different tree, and shock hit like a wave. Without a beat to spare, she lunged sideways, dodged the danger coming for her, and saved herself and her friend on pure instinct. She tensed every muscle and poured her whole strength into that strike when the spear tore through the air and slammed the massive tree. It sliced the trunk clean in two, and the giant crashed down with a roar, kicking up a thick cloud of dust. The master slammed a powerful magical shield onto Liliella, locking in absolute protection, then leaned in and swore she'd be safe, even if the strongest dragon came for her, turning the whole mission into something they could actually pull off. The young man leaned in and reassured her. Tell her that all that brutal training and hard-earned skills had her ready for anything. Yet she didn't hesitate, saying she'd never, ever let herself be beaten, because losing was simply not an option. The master always threw full support behind Liliella's wins, cheering her on, pushing her forward, and proudly tracking every step of her progress, because each girl's achievement filled him with real joy and proved, without a doubt, that his teaching and guidance were working. She knew at first her moves might look awkward and shaky, but she also believed that steady practice and training would sharpen her flexibility and precision until her skills finally hit perfection. The young man realized that when a student picked something up fast, the teacher couldn't help but step into the fray, so to match the student's energy, he jumped in beside her, fighting side by side, and together they sharpened their skills and learned from every move. He snapped his eyes to the danger and fired off one razor-precise, bone-crushing strike, slicing through the massive tree's branches in a single swing. Then the limbs crashed down hard, sending dust clouds roaring up and proving just how strong and agile he really was. The girl figured the young man had soaked his weapon in special magic, then let it rip with that brutal power, because without some extra help, there was no way he could pull off a hit like that. She was busy mulling over the master's tricks when her focus slipped, and she didn't sense the danger creeping in. Then the ground lurched under her feet, groaning with warning, and she yanked the spear by its handle, ready to fend off whatever came for her. When Lilielis started trembling with fear, the boy rushed to her side and shouted that this wasn't a normal earthquake, it was something else entirely. Turns out the giant trees of Elder Planta were freaking out. Panic hit them hard when strangers crashed into their territory, and when the fear kicked in, they lurched into action, shaking the ground and roaring like an earthquake. From the looks of it, the heroes had stumbled into something far worse than they ever expected, something mean, hungry, and violent. The moment they showed up, the whole forest snapped into chaos, and every creature woke up in alarm. Now they had to move fast, forge a defense strategy, and figure out what exactly was driving that threat. The moment everything flipped, the young man snapped into action. He scooped the girl up and shot upward through the chaos. Just as the ground buckled, the trees whipped side to side and the roots ripped open the earth like a trap, trying to drag them down forever. The ground split open under their feet, and chunks of earth rocketed toward the heroes like bullets while the raging blast of air whipped up debris and turned every move into a risk, forcing them to strike fast and make the call before it hit them. Fear slammed the young man's will to the ground, but he kept his head and made the one thing clear. The forest's owner was furious about these uninvited intruders. Now it was time to face the chief guardian of the forests head-on. Then the lord of the forest strode out with pure authority towering, bark covered and carved from ancient strength, while mist curled around his roots like the world itself was holding its breath, proving he owned this land and spoke with the voice of nature. She couldn't wrap her head around it. This ancient plant was real, no legend tricks, and once doubt started creeping in, everything shattered the moment she spotted it with her own eyes, an unbelievable tree blooming into existence right before her. Even the toughest hunters trembled at this legendary S-rank beast, an S-rank nightmare known as the living forest, because once it awakens, it swallows every living thing within kilometers. And all that's left behind is nothing but emptiness and silence. She studied the boy closely, then asked softly what had him so worried about this in the first place. What sparked his thoughts, and if he'd be willing to tell her what he really feels. Lex said she'd never once heard of monsters so terrifyingly high-ranked existing before. Lily Ella snapped out, "That's not what I was saying at all." She demanded to know how the forest had swelled so huge, when the so-called Lord of the Forest and Beasts was supposed to be untouchably high-ranking. The master's mind was locked on one thought: nothing was different, nothing had changed, everything was exactly like this. That ancient brute, the king of the forest, is a demon that summons a whole swarm of monsters by way of the fruit from its magical tree. He knew it because, in his past life, he'd battled that ancient plant as a hero, but he'd never once imagined a whole forest like this could just sprout into existence. Honestly, he'd never laid eyes on an ancient plant before, so when he had all those skills, it only made things worse because the monster was spiraling out of control and he had to report it to the guild right away. But he couldn't resist. This rare chance was exactly what he wanted to seize. That ancient plant could yank its roots like legs, and if it decided to flee, it would drag itself straight to the city by following those legs all the way, only the movement was painfully, brutally slow. Even though it crawled at a snail's pace, its roots stretched so far that it could outpace a horse by 10 times. They moved to intercept him. The boy made it sound effortless, but that tree turned out to be absolutely gigantic. He could have scorched it with fire magic, but he didn't have the right stuff, so he shrugged it off and went for his sword instead, thinking he'd make faster progress alone. The girl shrieked that this was flat out impossible. She demanded they lower her down to the ground. The master kept begging the student to stay, but she just kept shrieking at the top of her lungs and refused to leave. He smirked and promised he'd crush the fight with that tree in no time. Lex snapped into motion and unleashed a brutal physical attack. Then he slammed the Hydro ability to life, Hydrofence, special trade, and weapon enhancement, one after another. A root lunged and smacked his face, and Liliella shouted, "Run, get out of there right now!" He had no reason to dodge that hit. His blade was forged from mutant fang alive enough to take on mid-level enemies. And with that brutal advantage, the master snapped into action and struck the tree without hesitation. Turns out the sword's material was crazy tough and still flexible, strong enough to fight the monster head-on and actually work in combat. He briefly wrestled with what the word soft even meant. The girl leaned in and demanded, "So what happened?" The young man went as pale as a ghost in an instant, realizing he'd wrecked the material, and that meant he'd just ruined everything for good. Now they're going to handle every last bit of the remaining material like it's one wrong move away from disaster. Looks like the monsters finally clocked the guys and decided they're enemies. But now it was game over. These monsters were turned into easy prey for the couple. The girl begged him, "Don't pull me into this." But the master calmly laid it out because they were chasing the same goal. The young man charged into strike, then slammed his fingers down and activated Oblique Beam. He tore straight through the tree's roots in a flash, and his student's jaw dropped in pure disbelief. The master hammered the tree with relentless attacks, never once letting it breathe. Lex thrust his hand forward and let out a sharp exhale right after the attack. This was the easiest way to get rid of big specimens, while Lilila shrieked at him, begging him not to drag her into it because she'd never witnessed anything like this before. Yeah, the master was a swordsman, so she barely had a chance to glimpse his magic still. He was convinced that the future would keep revealing even more wild magical sparks from him. She wasn't talking about some few wizards or anything like that. She made it clear that wasn't the point. The boy pushed for an immediate end to the whole mess. Maybe the monsters are finally tapped out, so now they're scrambling to tear the bark off that tree and launch it flying like a weapon. This is wildly out of the ordinary. Monsters only pull moves like this when there's no way out, when all hope is gone, and somehow the master has completely forgotten that. It'd be so much easier if the monsters actually thought this was a handy way to strip the tree bark. But if they tried it, the boy would be doomed and die. Nothing terrible happens as long as nobody goes and smacks it. He begged Liliella not to step back from him. yelling that even one small shaving of the tree trunk as it sped up could slam into her and wreck her badly, and she snapped back, screaming she wasn't going anywhere. Now he didn't have to worry about what was chasing them from behind, so the boy lunged straight at the monster, fearless and ready to strike. The master dodged every attack with pure confidence, then lunged straight for the roots again and again. He just kept hammering blow after blow, refusing to let that monster even breathe. With every brutal sword strike, the air tore and the space around him seemed to suck dry, and now the boy was about to end it all with one crushing blow aimed at the tree. The master swung with everything he had, crushing the roots with a brutal, perfectly placed strike. The colossal monster crashed to the earth with a roar so loud it made your ears ring. This fight was the easiest win the boy had snagged in ages, and the student couldn't believe his eyes. He'd just taken down an S-rank monster. To him, it felt just like plain chopping wood until the wood bit back and started attacking people. He yanked the monster parts up and shoved them into his magic bag. Liliola figured that this magical bag was packed with all kinds of jaw-dropping surprises. The magic bag's capacity is only as big as the very first formula you nail down, get it right. And this one can swallow an insane amount of stuff, like hauling a whole mountain inside. If the craftsman had better materials, he could have forged a bag with even more storage, and the girl wanted one too, begging for it with all her heart. He swore that next time he'd whip up a bag for her because for him, it was done in a matter of moments. Both of them walked away sure that the plant would come out of the whole mess totally fine. Now the boys only had to sweep the area clean, and then they could finally head home without a worry because the girl had had enough chaos for one day and was practically itching to get back. In the last few days, it felt like more miracles hit her than in her entire life up to that point. And the craziest part? That massive monster just sat there calm as ever in the middle of the forest. The student leaned in and said, "If a monster that huge actually makes its home right in the forest's heart, then there's no way you're finding any real treasure here." The guys were fired up to fix the mess. First they cleared the land, then they went straight to filling that massive, gaping hole. The young man slammed his palms against the ground and demanded she wait. Lex slammed the button and unleashed earthquake magic that ripped the ground apart. Ella landed back on the ground, terrified by another violent jolt, and that's when she realized the boy was literally reshaping the earth by force, like he was manufacturing earthquakes on purpose. The ancient plant's roots punched deep into the earth, ripping out hidden cavities, and when the soil rushed to fill them, it shook the ground like a brutal earthquake. The girl clocked it instantly. If the ground was shaking that hard, there was no way it was anything but a real earthquake. Out of nowhere, a lone egg popped onto the surface of the earth. The master sprinted toward the scene, desperate to know what that discovery was. There, he stumbled on eerie white lumps he couldn't explain, like they'd appeared out of nowhere. Lex spun around, hunting for the white lumps, but they'd already slipped below the ground and vanished. Then right out of nowhere, an egg suddenly popped up on the surface of the earth. The boys shot out their hands and snatched the egg on instinct, totally clueless what it even was. With a forest full of magical creatures, that egg might not just be an egg. It could be a special creature of its own. If it really is a monster egg, smash it right now before that opening disappears forever. The egg started spinning like crazy, and the kid's eyes snapped to it instantly. The girl stared at the egg, completely baffled, like she had no idea what was about to happen. The egg looked seconds away from cracking open. If it was about to hatch into a newborn, there was no reason to panic. Dragons can usually strike the moment they hatch, but these dragon eggs are massive, and the boy is certain that this one isn't a dragon at all. It's something else, another kind of demon. This demon didn't just show up, it unleashed insane world-bending powers. The eggshell locks in serious protection for the life inside, and it doesn't just split open. It takes time before it finally cracks and the baby bursts into the world. The master looks into the future and declares that this monster is going to grow up into a terrifying, world-shaking force. The young man leaned in and carefully told Lily Ella to step aside. A tiny, fluffy little creature finally burst from the egg, and right there beside the girl, it looked absolutely adorable. The monster was so insanely cute and dangerously attractive that it felt impossible not to stare. The little monster looked like a fluffy stuffed sheep made of wool, but the boy could feel it. This thing was alive, and that's why the boys were totally stumped, just standing there clueless about what to do next. Because the baby was born right in the forest's heart, the odds were brutal he'd grow into a dangerous monster, and the young man knew he had to strike now before that thing got stronger. The kid didn't even look like a threat. He was totally calm, almost cozy, like nothing could touch him, and the boy had never seen anything like it in his life. The tiny monster tripped over its own feet and crashed hard onto the ground. As the monster closed the distance, the boys realized in a jolt that everything around them was perfectly, disturbingly orderly. Maybe that baby looked up and mistook them for his real parents. Just like birds latch onto the first creature they spot as parent, some demon types work the same way. There are even specialists who raise them and study their every move. The kid grabbed at the boy's leg, and the boy dismissed it as not so dangerous, so he pushed for a closer, deeper look. Turns out those guys finally gave the monster the okay just like that. If he learns from childhood that he must never attack other people, his future will be trouble-free. The kid's aggression spiked out of nowhere, and Lex snatched him up, demanding where he'd go, staring like, "What the hell happened to you?" He snapped his teeth down on the boy's finger, and the girl instantly went lost in thought. Turns out the kid seriously thought that guy looked like a perfectly good snack. No, this wasn't about strength at all. His bites were pitiful, barely there, weak enough to be nothing. If they're treating this like a real attack, that baby's not surviving a second in that monster-filled forest. It's totally possible the truth was simple: he was starving, and all he wanted was to fill his stomach. Then it hit him. He had zero idea what they even fed a baby demon. So when he spotted two fleshy cannibals, he boldly suggested they throw a tiny feast. He said he was about to start making dinner, and, with a polite smile, asked me to wait just a minute or two. The master lunged to strike, and in that split second, he threw the monster completely off balance. Pure shock hit it hard. He charged into the fray, launching an all-out assault on the massive bears. That baby got absolutely terrified as everything started spiraling out of control. The young man held out food for the monster, and then the girl snapped in fury. No way were they wasting it on anything but the bears. They'd eat themselves. He dropped to his knees, apologized to the monster for the shock, and swore he'd try giving it bear meat instead. Cracks in the darkness jolted him awake, and he realized he was a superior being, born to conquer this world and rule it. Born with destiny blazing in his bones, the king of all beasts, an unstoppable predator, arrived to seize his crown and rule as the supreme being. The monster perked up at the voices in the distance, but these weren't from his tribe. They were the screams of potential prey. He was born into instant meals, and that alone screams he's the real deal, a true ruler. And once he understood it, he vowed to burn it all away, even the heavens themselves, just to prove his existence wasn't some accident. The air had a faint, singed stench, but the breeze swept in and wrapped everything in something sweet and comforting. The fresh awake creature already knew it was born to hunt, and its whole body shivered with raw, primal predator instinct. A sharp tremor hit him. His body suddenly felt heavy, and he just shrugged it off like, yeah, that's normal. Not worth stressing over. Nothing could survive his fangs. Each bite tore through anything in his path, and his claws finished the job with ruthless speed. The very first one that fell was thrilled to replenish his flesh and blood. He lunged to sink his teeth into the guy's leg, but then, crushing disappointment, he realized he couldn't even chew through the fabric. The creature stared in pure shock, refusing to accept that what was happening was really happening. The monster couldn't make sense of what was happening to its own body, but one thing was crystal clear: it could feel that insanely powerful prey right there closing in. But taking on all those brutal opponents at the same time could spell disaster for the guys. That kid had zero clue what the young man was planning, and he was totally, completely lost. The master slammed down crushing punches with earth-shaking force, mowing the bears down in a single brutal sweep. The monster went rigid with shock, staring in disbelief at what was unfolding right in front of it. The monster stared in disbelief as every monster around him vanished in an instant, obliterated by one brutal hit from the boy. Then the boy smiled and fed the baby something delicious. The baby realized he'd stumbled into some total disaster, and the sheer panic hit so hard his eyes started to flood. When he finally stepped into the guild, he tried to drop off the demonic material for evaluation, but the worker told him to set it on a special table, only for the specimen to be way too huge to fit. And the secretary shut it down with one solution: ship it straight to a special dismantling site. Lex stared at the monster and realized it was way too massive for the demolition site, and the woman gasped, asking if those guys had truly crushed a demon that big. They couldn't just haul that ancient plant straight to the guild, so they yanked in the organization's assistant leader while the secretary laid everything out in full detail, blowing her out of the water with how massive the whole incident really was. Turns out the VIP everyone feared was none other than the one Mr. Lex recognized: big name, road builder in the demon forest, and just hearing that made the guy's stomach drop. Marasha rushed up and apologized to the big shot guest for the staff's mess because the hall was absolutely massive, and she wasted no time. She knew they were here to sell those demonic materials, so she whipped up a full evaluation and sale plan on the spot just for them. The young man leaned in and told her he'd fought a class-ass Naga monster himself right in the forest's core, and the woman just stared, stunned. The guild's chief advisor swore she must have misheard it, but the boy stood his ground and slammed the truth in front of her. Marisha was genuinely stunned. The woman froze in pure shock, blurted out the boy's words again and again, and just couldn't wrap her head around what she'd heard. Hearing that talk, the others jumped in too, shouting his exact words, stunned, speechless by the wild story they'd just heard. The woman pressed the young man, asking if he was really sure, and Liliella stepped in fast, confirming his claim and saying she'd been right beside him during the battle. She saw it firsthand as one of the group's official members, and the guild's chief advisor couldn't stop asking how they even reached the heart of the forest. Turns out they flew there, cutting through the air like they owned the sky. She shoved the grind of that brutal path out of her mind and demanded they show her the monster they'd already beaten. He said that monster was way too huge, so they'd have to flee the city. Then Marisha swore she'd call in specialists to dismantle it. Everyone there stared in stunned awe at the giant they'd just brought down. The thing was once a towering tree. The legendary ancient plant, the living forest, stood in all its glory, and Marisha-san and Liliella's sons were totally on the same page. Back in his past life, the hero played a demon and unleashed a brutal wave of giant weeds. Then he wheeled on the boss and asked for a proper evaluation. And once he got the guild's chief advisor to sign off, the specialist started tearing the whole thing apart. The workers stared in total disbelief. Like their brains couldn't process that a tree that huge was really standing right there. The workers' blades snapped and went dull, failing to bite even past the top layer of the wood. Then the young man dropped the truth. This monster's bark was harder than any steel, and ordinary weapons couldn't cut through it, leaving Marisha reeling in utter shock. At first, she brushed off those tales about ordinary tree bark having super strength as pure fantasy, but then reality hit, and she watched how that bark crushed the limits of steel. That woman grilled Lex about how he even survived the tree. He finally confessed he'd used a special weapon and boosting magic, and she still wouldn't believe him. So she demanded another explanation, and Lex just kept calmly laying it all out again. The young man slammed his fist in frustration, realizing he should have enchanted his tools with extra strength back when he had the chance, because now he'd have saved himself a ton of time and effort. The worker stared in shock because the material snapped off so effortlessly it felt like the blade was slicing through slime even with that bark being rock hard. Now the worker could chop into that giant trunk with ease. But the guild's chief advisor still frowned. There was too much wood left to cut. The advisor pushed for leaving some of the supplies outside the city with guards, then dumping the rest into an auction, and the young man fired back. "Were you even there when I beat that green dragon at auction?" The boy's words hit the woman like a shockwave again. Then he even added that the green dragon's rank was low. Risha didn't want to dig into the details, so she went straight for top-quality goods and lined them up for auction. If the young man felt at ease, the guild's chief advisor promised to fire off a messenger to the capital right away. And that plan fit the young man perfectly. Then Lily Ellis hesitated, worried she might not be right for the team, since doubts were already circling. He couldn't believe what he was hearing after all those years as teammates. The girl was about to face those monsters, and somehow she kept thinking he was just trying to cheer her up. Lex swore she'd get stronger for real, and the girl actually took him at his word, so they rushed to see what was going on. The worker had never laid eyes on a stone that massive, and he couldn't stop wondering just how much value something like that could bring. Liliala and Marisha both admitted it never once in the guild's whole history had they seen stones this massive and priceless. The young man practically froze because back in his homeworld, stones like that were everywhere. The stone sat there as rock-solid proof that the towering tree was no ordinary beast, it was a real monster. At the same time, the assistant guildmaster strode up and officially told Hexy's city that the B-rank adventurer, Lexon, had wiped out the S-rank menace, the ancient plant. The townspeople erupted in cheers for the hero, showering him with praise and chanting his name, and he couldn't help but stare in happy disbelief because the girl told him that the whole town was celebrating for one reason only. Seasoned adventurers or an entire armed army could ever hope to bring down a monster that strong. She was so blown away by the event that she completely forgot to thank her mentor because the fact he managed to beat an enemy that strong was just too incredible to believe. Lex thought his victory was a piece of cake. But the girl shot back that something was seriously twisted in how he saw reality, and that the real problem had nothing to do with a simple duel. Marisha said that with those kinds of wins, she'd get promoted, and there was no reason to call a meeting, and before she could finish, Liliela cut in. "Hold up, wait a minute." Liliela demands to know why they only bumped him to A rank, because if he just took down an S rank monster, why in the world isn't he being treated like an S rank? People started buzzing about it, and the girls' side won them over until one of the guys blurted out that it was weird to push him up to a rank with nothing else to back it. And that's when the substitute guildmaster finally overheard what the adventurers were saying. Mearsher shot back that it was the Adventurers Guild's rule ranks only climbed one step at a time. And sure, exceptions existed for everything, but not for the jump to S rank. The girl demands to know why there are no exceptions, and the woman snaps back that it's to keep the guild from handing out S rank to too many adventurers because S rank is the very top, earned only by people who've already pulled off legendary heroic feats. Pushing a hero straight to S rank is dumb. It cheapens the title and drags its shine down. The crowd erupted into murmurs, and one man snapped, "So what do you mean by lowering the greatness of the title? Adventurers don't chase greatness at all." Mersh lays it out: if adventurers want to climb to the next rank, they've got to rack up a crazy high success rate on their quest, prove it with their skills and their personality too. And she's basically like, come on, everyone already knows that. The adventurers stumbled on the rumor out of nowhere, and the main character had zero clue what it was even about. These rules don't feel like a big deal until you meet someone who has none of that decency, because they'll struggle to climb the ranks. Like, even if she's certain an adventurer can handle an escort, she won't risk sending him if there's even a chance he'll pocket the client's stuff. Top clients. They're usually nobles and filthy rich merchants, and they don't want to hand those people an unproven adventurer, because a bad pick would shatter their trust in an instant. So when they push adventurers up to higher ranks, they're insanely careful, all to keep them safe. Still, she was dead sure Lexon would need only a little time before he could climb up to S rank, and the young man nodded, proving she was right. She nodded and straight up said his promotion was getting pushed back because he'd racked up too many wins in way too little time. Lex flashed a grin and bragged that he only beat some ancient plant, then shrugged like, Yeah, any other top-tier adventurer could crush it too, and S-rank guys would probably finish the job with a single touch. The woman leaned in and demanded to know who the S-rank adventurers were, then let out a heavy sigh. Yet the protagonist just stayed silent. Marisha told him to hang tight while the ancient plant got chopped down and tossed into an auction, and she said their reward for wiping out the wolves and that mutated monster would be figured out. So he'd better swing by the counter later. 604 gold coins? Liliello nearly choked on the shock of seeing that insane pile of money. The girl behind the counter announced the payout: 600 gold for smashing the mutated monster, and 450 gold for taking down 27 wolves. Then the heroine whipped her gaze to the guy. Lex told them he'd only managed to take down 10 of them. Then the worker snapped back that part of the prize was coming straight from Ivan Son's team. So that meant this was Lex Son's cut, and the reward for wiping out the man-eating bears was already baked in. Ivan said the heroes were busy flirting with Liliella, so he shoved them toward him, then told him, next time, he better treat them to something, and Lex just stood there thinking, wait, I'm not even flirting. Still, he had to thank Ivanson and the crew for boosting the reward then. The staff started throwing out prices for the mutated monster materials, and Lex snapped that she'd already said the prize was 600 gold coins. She shot back that it was nothing more than a win reward, but the mutated monster's materials are insanely valuable since researchers crave them. And Lulela immediately pressed, asking if the prize could get even bigger. They buy 1 skin, 1 big blade, 4 small blades, 1 skeleton, and 1 magic stone, plus all the internal organs and meat, since that's part of the research too. The grand total hits 1,500 gold coins, and then again totals 6,150 gold coins. And if he can stop the demonic beast from spreading in the forest, he gets a reward plus. Building roads inside the forest earns him another 420 coins. Turns out the total was 6,570 gold coins. Then the worker yanked out a giant bag packed to the brim, and Liliello's jaw dropped in pure shock. He thanked the worker, and his companion just stared ahead in a stunned trance, drowning in all those gold coins. He dug in and ate the meat with pure, joyful hunger. Lex asks if he likes it, and the tiny creature chirps with pure joy, so the protagonist can't help feeling this guy's attitude just flipped into full-on 180 degrees. Lily Ellis slumped at the table. Staring at her food like it had betrayed her, she didn't even touch a bite. The old man clocked it instantly and asked Lily Ellis straight up if she was all right. Then she sucked in a deep breath. Then she blurted out the question, did he really think she was a burden? His eyes widened at her words, and he shot back, why would you even think that? All of a sudden, she tells him straight in the face that she's nothing but a weight dragging him down, just a fragile thing. He only feels pushed to protect. Lex tries to fight back and prove her wrong, but she cuts him off, insisting she understands herself better than anyone ever could. She suddenly realizes she can't keep up with him if she stays by his side. She'll only drag him into more trouble. The young man couldn't figure out what he was supposed to do. He didn't see her that way, but how was he even going to tell her? Lily Ellis flat out said she'd already promised him she'd repay every last debt. He saved her mother and every soul in that village, and not only that, he rebuilt their hometown from the ground up. She's not about to break her promise just because people tell her nothing can be changed. She shot up from her seat and demanded he train her, because if she's going to keep up with him, she refuses to be the one dragging behind. She'll grind through any training they throw at her, no matter how brutal it gets. Lex weighed her words about training. Then the girl swore she'd do anything, and the young man snapped that she'd just made that promise out loud. Lily. Ella locked in her words. Lex got it at once, but the moment the truth landed, the girl started trembling, completely clueless about what was happening. That guy figured the girl chose this on her own. So he nodded and agreed to train her while the monster had zero clue what was even going on. He's going to put her through real, no-excuses training because her determination won't be ignored. He'll drill her into a top-tier adventurer, and the protagonist's mind is set on it, no matter what. It yanked him back to his old life the moment he became a master's apprentice to crush the demon lord. Then the training got so brutal he regretted every word, and now, today, Liliella swore she'd do anything. Rage started to rise in him, and Liliello snapped that she'd feel better if he'd be a little gentler because she could already sense danger creeping in. Lex laughed it off, told her, "Don't stress, I've got you," and insisted he understood everything, then promised he'd push her until she was ready. And the protagonist was convinced she was already mentally prepared. Until now, she'd been hunting for a way to rescue the people back home. Crushed by that deadly disease then. Lex San crossed her path by pure luck, and just like that, the whole crisis was gone. He didn't just save her life, he lifted her family, rebuilt the city, and to her, he's a walking messiah. Because she owed him so much, she chose to stick with him and pay that debt back. Lexan welcomed her as a friend too. Since he wasn't just strong, he was genuinely kind and truly noble. She tried being helpful and tagged along, and on their very first adventure together, he wiped out an S-rank monster all by himself. She felt it in her bones. He was far stronger than her, and when he stepped in, he flattened the mutated A-rank monster with ease, then mowed through the trees in the demonic beast forest like they were nothing. Even then, she still believed she could save him. But it didn't work. She failed. The heroes were headed for something, and the girl trudged along with her eyes on the ground. Liliella tossed her dignity and honor aside, begging to be his student anything so she wouldn't slow him down. Lex tells her they have to smash the dragon first, and the girl can't even believe it. She tried to brush it off, then demanded to know why he cranked the difficulty up that fast. The boy told her, "Don't worry, because it was only some wild green dragon flapping through the sky nearby, and the girl still had no clue what was going on." Lex tells the lady this dragon isn't that strong, and she snaps back, "Don't you get it? He's a dragon." But the young man tells them both to chill, insisting dragons are easy to beat. Just slice through his neck. She fires back that it's actually a whole lot harder than that. Lex is totally lost on what to do with her, and Liliella snaps that the real problem is her then. Just like that, the hero steps in to show Lex how to take down the dragon with ease, and the very next moment he slams healing on him. The green dragon burst to life, ripped through the air with a ferocious roar. He yanked himself free and snapped that dragon's soar way up in the clouds, so she has to blast him out of the air with magic or a throwing weapon, and the girl's left totally stunned. Lex gripped the explosive hammer, then hurled something straight at the dragon. He keeps laying it out, telling her to strike him right. As he's dropping, then the boy bolts. She lunged in and started pounding the dragon. Then she froze in shock because somehow he was already beating it. Lex touched down and told them, "When the dragon hits the ground, you just slice its neck done." He smirked, asking, "Easy," and the girl shot back, "Easy, not even close." Liliella looked at the guy and thought, "There's no saving you." His training was so far above anything she'd call training that it felt more like a different world. At this rate, she's not making it past one of his training sessions, and Lex basically told her, that's the easy way out. The girl's patience snapped when the guy used easy the wrong way. She didn't want him to tutor her on some easy trick to beat a person. She needed him to show her an easy method to take down something even a weak person could handle. Lex said he finally understood the girl, and the way he laid it out felt like a truth with the same core. Liliella just shrugged and called it the heart of all humanity. She's got no spell that can bring a dragon to its knees, and she can't even swing to hurt it. Either among B-rank adventurers, she's basically the weakest link. The boy didn't buy a word she said. He insisted she had solid fighting instincts. Then the girl snapped back that thanks to him, she'd been bumped up to B rank. And it wasn't just her sword skills, it was her crazy high mission completion rate, plus all the materials she hauled back for the guild. She hunted for a herb strong enough to cure Elsa's illness, then sold nearly everything she found to the guild, so they slapped the title of B-rank adventure onto her as a specialist in material gathering. She sold every herb she didn't need straight to the guild, especially the pricey ones until they finally promoted her. So yeah, she may be listed as a B-rank adventurer, but her real strength doesn't match up. Liliella figured that once she said it, the happiness drained out of her like someone cut the lights because an adventurer's rank isn't decided by strength alone. And the guy standing in front of her didn't even feel like a normal B rank. Lex picked up every detail like it was nothing. Then he decided to train her for real combat so she could finally learn how to fight. But the girl couldn't even wrap her head around how he jumped to that conclusion. He slid his hand onto the girl's shoulder and told her, "Don't worry," because this time he was finally going to show her the real way to fight. The second she figures it out, he pushes her straight into monster fighting so she can master it for real because nothing beats training with real teeth in real battles. Liliella snapped to the truth this was it. He was about to teach her something right now. First, they'll grab everything from today's era and train body enhancement magic, no spells, no casting. Then the girl blurts out, "I've got a swordsman class." She drops her staff and Lex leans in, telling her the key to mastering it is simple. She has to feel the magic energy coursing through her like it seeps into every inch of her body when she imagines it. The boy tapped into enhancement body enhancement magic, and it was like the girl immediately got it. Wait, could she really pull off magic just by doing that? Doesn't it take brutal training to master that? He said it all comes down to the magic's special traits because for her to use that kind of complex spell, she's got a mountain of lessons ahead of her. Say, you could use body enhancement or healing magic, no spells at all, and it clicks for swordsmen fast because they can pick it up naturally, just like he told everyone before. And the adventurers he knows managed to learn it the same way through his teaching. So she can learn for real when the girl says she'll try. The guy's instantly impressed by that grit because it's always smarter to go for it and regret later than to choke on what if forever. A few hours later, the girl pushes herself into exercise mode, trying to work her body back to motion. Lex swears she's trying to push the magic power through her body, but it just won't take. So he begs her to use the restoration magic again, and the girl nods and agrees. She failed. Then the creature lunged onto the guy and the hero's shock hit like lightning. He asked if the guy really wanted him to use recovery magic on him too, and the second he said yes, the guy shouted with pure joy as recovery magic got cast on him. The creature snapped awake and burst into a furious dash, tearing back and forth across the scene. Liliella demanded to know what just happened, and Lex realized he'd just used body enhancement magic without even thinking. Holy wow, this monster can transform and sling magic like it's nothing, no question about it, and it's even powering up with body enhancement spells. The guy burst into applause and yelled that it was incredible while the monster's terrifying face stared them down and it came swooping straight toward the main character. Then he clamped down on his own finger. Lex clenched his power under control and let out a weak bite on his own finger because this guy is scary. Capable. Then the monster lurched up and staggered, barely holding together. The monster sprawled on the ground, and the guy leaned in to ask if it was finally tired of messing around. Then he burst into tickling him, and Liliella's jaw dropped, because even a fluffy little ball of fur just learned how to do that. The monster strode up to her and slammed his paw down on her leg. Then he flashed a calm smile, and right after that, the girl's anger snapped into place. She swore she'd do it no excuses, no waiting. She'd learn right here today and prove to them all that she could use body enhancement magic. Lex still has no clue what happened, but he can't help smiling now that Liliella Sound is finally fired up and pushing forward. The girl begged the guy to cast restoration magic on her again, and he shot back that part of it was already on its way. They kept casting magic on the girl over and over and over again. After what felt like an eternity, the girl finally cracked it. She pulled it off and did it for real. She knew exactly what that felt like when magical power floods her whole body, and the guy turns around and praises her. She still can't push all the magical power through, sometimes it snaps and breaks, but once she nails the rhythm, she'll start controlling it like it's hers. Lex pumped Liliella full of congratulations, and Liliella shot back her gratitude because if anything happened, it was all because of him. She lunged in, wrapped him in a tight hug, and poured out her thanks. The girl gasped that magic felt unbelievably amazing. Then Lex nodded like he totally got it and told her to back up a bit because she was way too close. The girl shot her eyes up and finally caught what he meant. Then, at that exact moment, she yanked herself back from him. She blurted out, "I'm sorry," and the hero waved it off. It's all good, because this time she'd finally cast magic for the first time, and joy burst all over her face like fireworks. Meanwhile, the monster just smirked to himself, proud as ever. Lex pushed for the next stage, and the girl nodded, vowing to keep training at the same relentless pace. They stood back to back, both taking a hard, deep breath like they were about to hit the moment of no return. The hero told her that her next training was simple. She'd hammer that dragon with body enhancement magic. Then Liliella exploded, yelling that it was impossible, and the guy just snapped back, "Fight not win!" At the very edge of the demonic beast forest, Liliella pants hard, like the danger is already chewing at her lungs. Then, in the blink of an eye, she fires her eye shot. A slick layer of ice clung to the nearby tree like it had frozen in place. Lex urged the student to keep pushing, and the girl couldn't stop thinking about Lex San, who somehow even burned down the forest while teaching her how to use magic without spells, and yeah, it worked. But she was completely wiped out. The hero swore he could bring back her strength by swapping mana, but she snapped back that even if he managed that, he still couldn't mend her shattered mind. Then the young man pushed the training to the finish line and promised something delicious at the tavern, and the girl instantly felt her shoulders drop with relief. Huddled behind the reception desk, they were handed the news after smashing 29 trap plants. Their reward was just 2 silver coins, and the girl snapped back that it wasn't nearly enough. The employee snapped back that those materials are everywhere, that's why the reward exists, and Liliella gets it. After all that effort, it's no shock that run-of-the-mill adventurers refused to quit the forest's expansion. Then the employee snapped her focus onto Lex, asking straight up if it was true. He'd halted the forest from creeping forward and pushed the road deeper into it. He nodded and told her that today he'd torched this stretch of the woods and widened the road right through it. The employee said he'd tallied the cost of that ancient plant and the elders the guy wiped out the other day and promised to pay him the full amount. The guy thanked the girls, and only then did he realize he'd completely forgotten all about it. He smashed 20 elder plants and pocketed 1,800 gold coins. Lil Annette's jaw dropped at the sheer amount, and the young man admitted it was way more than he'd ever expected. Turns out, it paid out big because they'd crafted solid wood material. It was Mauritius and Lex leaned in and asked if they truly used those plants for wood, and the woman nodded, confirming it was all real. Plant monsters can be turned into wood, but if you grab weak ones, you basically get run-of-the-mill tree material, no big deal. Elder plants are different, though they're high-ranking, so their material is top-tier quality. Moreche realized it was a blessing they'd hauled in so many. Since this is wood, a tiny handful won't do a thing. When you're raising a house or forging a ship, you'd better stick to one material, same stuff all the way through. And the young man nodded, saying the strength would stay exactly the same. Elder plants are rare, terrifying monsters that lurk deep in the forest, and they're brutally hard to take down. These things refuse to die, packed with stubborn strength. Unlike regular monsters, every single piece of them is wood. So even when you win, getting materials is a nightmare. Lex finally got it. This thing was priced like a fortune for a reason. Mirsha just nodded and confirmed every suspicion. And because Lex hauled in a huge pile, she even tossed him an extra reward. Now the wood from rare monsters is getting pricier by the second. A dude needs top-tier monster wood, so he heads straight for an auction, snatching that ancient plant before anyone else does, and you bet it'll rake in a fortune. The young man demanded to know why, with all this info in hand. She still told him to sell him at auction, and she pressed a finger to her lips, warning the guy to shut up. Then she shrugged and said, "Look, I'm the guildmaster's assistant, so yeah, that settles it." The Adventurers Guild grabs a cut of the auction money from every item that sells. So, yeah, they're cashing in too. In the tavern, Liliella digs into her food and downs her drink, then lights up and says, "This place is unreal because it wipes out her fatigue the moment she takes a sip." The guy said she picks up water magic fast, like she's got crazy good compatibility, and Liliella didn't even realize people could match with elements. Because he's not just helping her, he's training her until she can master all 4 basic elements. Liliella pointed out this would take forever, and Lex couldn't wait to settle the whole reward mess they'd created. He yanked out a bag of coins and shoved it into the girl's hands, insisting it was her share. Then the lady's eyes went wide, because right then, the monster was busy munching on a chunk of bread. She told me there were tons of them, and Lex shot back that at least she'd helped him crush the elder plants before he even faced the Ancient Plus. Most of those elder plants were wiped out by the Ancients themselves, not them. He just gathered what was left. It was Liliella who pushed for bringing them if he'd been alone. He would have shut her down, but his magic bag made the choice possible, and that's why they got these plants. He offered to split the reward, but warned her she'd end up blushing, because without him, she couldn't even reach the middle of the forest, so they pressed for answers. A few minutes later, Liliella grabbed the full payout 1 elder plant, and for the ancient one, they split 8 down to 2. The hero leaned in and asked if that was really enough, and Liliella just smiled, saying, "For me, this is already a great reward." After the meal, the girl stepped out onto the terrace, stared into the distance, and blurted out what they were supposed to do next. Lex had no idea what she meant. No. She said she was talking about their future plans, then they hit the heart of the demonic beast forest and wiped out that S-rank monster, and it was all thanks to him, so there was no way they were sticking around in this city. Lex admitted he finally got where the girl was coming from. She was dead right. They'd already knocked out most of what the forest demanded, but Miri-Shasan told her to keep the forest from stretching any farther and carve secret passages inside too, only if it didn't make it hard for him. And the best part? He could stop whenever he wanted. The young man figured she'd been looking out for him all along, so he decided at the very least he'd push through and finish the roadwork. Lex told them that once the auction for the ancient plant wrapped up and they finally grabbed the money, it'd be the perfect moment to move on to the next city. When she heard there was a next city ahead, her eyes widened in shock, then joy burst out of her, and she practically declared that everything was settled. Now she had to grab new gear for the trip coming right up. The hero stared in shock. She actually wanted to buy new equipment. She admitted she'd been scraping by in the cheapest armor and hand-me-down junk, and the guy had no idea she already had armor. He can't even recall her wearing armor the first time they met Lily. Ella swears she owned just one piece, and when they ran into each other, she was only watching a quest, so she never put it on. But she didn't wear them to the party either. He only remembered seeing her in them once, back when they fought Venom Rex, so Liliella glared at the guy. She leaned in and asked him straight up if he had any idea how pricey that armor was, even if it wasn't brand new. And yeah, getting the armor to fit a woman like her would cost even more, too. After all that, she planned to test the new sword, then head straight home. Who would have guessed she'd be shoved into the forest on a dangerous expedition and forced to take down an S-rank monster? Lex scratched his head and admitted he had no idea. Liliella shot back that she didn't know because taking on an S-rank monster doesn't scare an average adventurer at all, and the guy immediately looked crushed with regret. He didn't stop to wonder what Liliella was thinking. Of course, she'd be furious at him, so he offered her a brand new set of armor, and she shot back asking if he was truly serious. He didn't hesitate. He confirmed he meant every word. Lily Ellis broke into a smile and said, "All right, I'll take it." And the guy finally exhaled with pure relief. Lex leaned in and told her he'd found a killer store nearby, then insisted they hit it tomorrow. The girl nodded right away because if the place he picked was anything like he promised, it was going to be amazing. Lily Ellis admits she never saw it coming. She got lifted into the air just to go shopping. She crouched on her knees beside those massive gates, staring like they'd explain something because deep down she couldn't stop wondering where they even led. And the answer felt nowhere near here at all. The hero snapped back, "We're in Togai City." The girl made it clear the two guys were 5 cities from Hexy, and Lex nodded to confirm it, so imagine her shock when they still arrived in the blink of an eye. Because Liliella knew it usually took nearly half a day. The monster sprawled on the girl's hands, shaking like it couldn't believe it was caught there, and she stared, saying, "The guy even freaks him out." Always rude, always pushing his luck while Lex scratched his head and shrugged. "We just zoomed past nothing special." Liliella can't believe it. He just called it a wyvern attack that flew right past her, and the monster is so furious it's practically spitting rage. Lex shrugged and said it was only a bunch of wyverns because none of them could ever keep up with his sky-blazing speed. The girl clocked how badly the guy needed a dose of common sense, and the monster immediately backed her up. The young man muttered that the girl was talking like he never had a clue, And when she heard him, she snapped back that she'd been on that same thing from the very start. Normal people can't fly, and just that one fact screams how different they really are. Now that I think about it, he hadn't seen a single soul fly in this era, so when he did, Togai City's people went wide-eyed, stunned that he was actually in the air. Lex realized this era's people can't fly. The girl's jaw drops. She can't believe the conclusion he just landed. She told them, "Even a decade back you couldn't do that, so no one living in the cities in this country can fly." The hero heard that and decided to lock it into his head. Somehow thinking it meant something else, Williella felt it instantly he was about to misunderstand again. Pushing into the city and weaving through the noisy crowd, the girl called out, "Where are we headed?" Lex told him, "Don't worry, I know a forge around here." Then smirked, because everyone in the city knows his name. The girl leaned in and asked, "So you're really that famous?" Like she'd heard his name somewhere, and it still didn't feel real. The youth swore Gordofson's fame even reached Lillylison, who didn't care about gear at all, and Lex finally blurted, "We're here." He pointed out the gun shop they'd been hunting, and the girl immediately went, "That's it?" recognizing the place on site. This was the gun shop that handled all his gear for him. A young guy burst into the shop, flashed the owner a friendly greeting, then spun around and asked who would be coming, talking like they were old buddies until his eyes caught the main character, and both of them lit up and greeted each other. Gordoff told him he'd heard the guy was headed for another city, so how was he supposed to help this time? The young man grinned and said, "I've finally got new material and I need to borrow your workshop." The man practically beamed, thrilled to finally show him fresh techniques. Then he shut the shop up for good and told the boy to do whatever he wanted with it. Lex told him he didn't have to shut the store, but Gordoff grinned. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and he couldn't afford to blow it. He just didn't want customers pulling his focus until Lillila stepped in. She said she figured they'd come to buy gear, then blurted out why that dwarf kept calling him master. And the young man finally realized they still hadn't properly introduced each other. He brings out a man, Gordoff, a blacksmith who runs his own workshop. Then he shifts to the next person in the lineup, Lillila-san, right there in his group, and yep, she's also his fluffy little pet. The man kept repeating the line about the master's friend, then guessed she must be insanely strong, yet she looked startlingly young, like something special was hiding in plain sight. The hero only nodded and swore she'd absolutely crush it and reach huge success in the future. Lilia leaned in and asked if this was really Gordov, the legend from the city of Togay, the famous Gorilov. Lex nodded, and the blacksmith even admitted he was just a regular rookie compared to his master. Gordov clocked the guy's weapon and demanded whether it was truly the master's work. Lex swore it was, and the blacksmith practically begged, "Let me take a closer look." The hero shrugged it off, then leaned in and asked Lilila if she minded too. She didn't hesitate. Next thing you know, both heroes raised their weapons and stood their ground. After Gordov checked the weapons, his mind snapped. How could tech like this even exist? And what kind of forging magic could produce it? The man flashed a smile, thanked the master, and burst out that he was just so happy he got to witness these masterpieces. He told the boy he could tear into the workshop as much as he wanted, and Lex snapped back a grateful thanks. Then Liliela turned to the hero and demanded answers. Why the hell did Gordov call him a master? She remembers what he promised. We're going to a great store. So why is he now scrambling to get past the workshop? The boy shot back that Gordov-san's workshop blew the Hexy City one out of the water, and the girl instantly got it, because she knew what a truly great store felt like. The blacksmith's face went bright red as embarrassment hit, and he stammered that the master was just flattering him. Lex told everyone it was all good, then vowed to start up immediately. He yanked the exact supplies he needed straight from his inventory. Gordov pressed, "Is it really wood?" And the guy nodded, grinning as he said it was the material from an ancient plant. The man stared in shock because this was the same legendary ancient plant. Then the young man said, "Gordov, hit it with a hammer." And the blacksmith froze for a second, but he swallowed his doubt and went for it, grabbing the hammer and swinging with everything he had. He slammed into the tree and nothing. The blacksmith stared in total confusion, like he couldn't make sense of what he'd just witnessed. This wood won't snap or splinter, and it hits like iron, just way lighter. Lex realizes this stuff is tougher than iron, light as a feather, strong as steel, then imagines the armor it could forge, while Gordov can't even wrap his head around a material like that. And he trembles straight through with pure delight.